What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Join my Discord if you want to chat and share your thoughts, the link is in the description. Pirate Mythical Beast Cultivator 1 MB Chapter 1 Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. It is 1520 in the Hyuan calendar, Marine Headquarters. For the male compatriots here, their daily pastime is watching Cheng Cheng practice swordplay. Of course, it's not appreciation, but it looks similar to watching a monkey. For 10 years, this stupid boy only knows 2 moves after practicing every day. Extremely boring, extremely boring. Especially in this situation, the female Marines still flock to Cheng Cheng's side tirelessly. Who gave Cheng Cheng a pair of white and tender skin? Cheng Cheng is the grandson of Marine hero Garp. Although Marines dare not mock him in public, they can't help but make some sarcastic remarks in private. It seems that only in this way can their heroic spirit be highlighted. On the training ground under the scorching sun, the sun was shining brightly and the ground was as hot as fire. Cheng Cheng walked forward with heavy steps, waving the broadsword. The movement of swinging the sword was slow, as if the broadsword in his hand weighed tens of millions of kilograms. His narrow eyes were just staring at the blade of the sword, turning a blind eye to the warblers on the side who came to watch him practice his sword. Cheng Cheng, who was covered in sweat, had just turned 18 this year. He had a slender figure and a head of silver-white hair that shone in the sunlight. His facial features are so handsome that they are almost unreal, especially his pupils, which have a faint golden color if you look closely. The favorite thing of those female Marines is to stare into his eyes at close range. In their words, Cheng Cheng's eyes are so captivating that he faints just by looking at them. However, Cheng Cheng was always very cold towards them. There was only one person whom Cheng Cheng was willing to say a few more words to. Every time he takes a step, the bluestone floor will vibrate slightly. Sweat falls from his forehead and rolls onto the hot bluestone. It evaporates instantly and a trace of white mist rises. 30,001, 30,002. Swinging his sword 30,000 times a day has long become his unbreakable habit. Sweep and slash vertically. He has been practicing these 2 basic and simple moves for 10 years. So most people in the Marine headquarters looked at him as if they were a mentally retarded person. There is a Marine hero grandpa. What kind of advanced swordsmanship does he want to practice that he can't learn? What's the point of practicing all this hard, if not for the sake of sensationalism? Why? Cheng Cheng always sneered at this and dismissed it. Advertisement: you laugh at me for being stupid, I laugh at you for being a scumbag. What's more, he can't tell others that he is checking in and doing a task, right? Among the crowd in front, Dasky took a deep breath, took a step forward, and blocked Cheng Cheng angrily. She handed over a bottle of ice-cold bottle in her hand. Drink some water and take a rest. If you keep practicing like this, you will become dehydrated. Aren't you afraid of practicing to death? Cheng Cheng stopped and said with a smile, didn't I tell you? You can't drink water immediately after strenuous exercise. This is not good for your health. Dasky snorted coldly. Drink water when you are thirsty. It is a natural thing. There is nothing wrong with it. Cheng Cheng was a little helpless. How could you, a 2-dimensional person, know the modern scientific knowledge of that world? I cannot tell you that after strenuous exercise, the body will consume a lot of salt due to excessive sweating. Drinking a lot of water will not replenish salt. On the contrary, it will reduce the osmotic pressure of the blood, destroy the water-salt metabolism balance in the body, and affect normal physiological functions. Muscle cramps may even occur. If he really said this, Cheng Cheng guaranteed that he would be treated as a madman. Yes, Cheng Cheng is a modern person who has traveled through time. 12 years ago, after he traveled here, he awakened the sign in system. Initially, he became sworn brothers with Sabo, Ace, and Luffy in Windmill Town. He is the oldest and naturally becomes the eldest brother among the 4. Later, the first task released by the system was to sign in for 10 years at the Marine headquarters. As a young boy, he could only ask Grandpa Garp to take him to the Marine headquarters. He was the first of the 4 brothers to leave Windmill Town. In addition, the big gift package given by the system also rewarded him with a broadsword made of sea stone. As long as he swings his broadsword every day, his power will be strengthened. This broadsword was named Zhenhai by him regarding the origin of this sea tower stone sword. Others did not question anything. After all, the person who led him to the Marine headquarters was the Marine hero Garp, the man who once forced One Piece Roger into a desperate situation. Wouldn't it be very reasonable to give him a broadsword made of sea tower stone? It is precisely because of this that no matter how others treat him as a fool in the past 10 years, no one who is short-sighted dares to provoke him. Today is the last day of his 10-year check-in mission, and the system unexpectedly rewards him with an armed color hockey and turtle-style qigong, as well as another golden seed. Armed color hockey can turn the body or weapons black to increase attack power or defense. The most important thing is that it can also cause damage to the entity of devil fruit users. Cheng Cheng is most familiar with turtle-style qigong. This is Son Goku's classic move in the Dragon Ball world. This is a skill he has dreamed of learning since he was a child. He is so excited that he just wants to find a place to test it out and see how powerful he is with turtle-style qigong. Advertisement more importantly, he still wanted to shout that exciting slogan. As for the golden seed, Cheng Cheng was shocked after reading its detailed introduction. The Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. After this tree blooms, the Phantom Beast Devil Fruit will grow. The place where it can be cultivated is unknown, and the cultivation method is unknown. You must know that the Phantom Beast is one of the most powerful devil fruits. The Warring States period is strong enough, the giant Buddha form of the Phantom Beast species. The nearly invincible Kaido is the Blue Dragon form of the Phantom Beast species. And the Son of Destiny, his younger brother Luffy, is in the form of Nika, a Phantom Beast species that destroys the world. If he could cultivate an army of 800 Phantom Beasts that would obey his orders, it would be easy to overthrow the rule of the Tianlong people, not to mention the top war that would break out in half a year. Akainu, Sengoku. When that happens, I don't think any of you will dare to touch Ace. It's just that in the morning, he was excited and used the system to test all the geographical environments of Malinfondo, but none of them met the conditions for planting the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree. He even dived into the depths of the sea unwillingly, but still couldn't meet the planting conditions. So he could only put this matter aside for now and talk about it later. After feeling that his breathing had stabilized a little, Cheng Cheng took a sip of ice water and felt instantly refreshed. I may have to leave Marine headquarters tomorrow. Leave? Are you going to go to sea to perform a mission? Dasky was full of doubts. I haven't heard of any missions you have recently. No, I'm ready to quit Marine. Cheng Cheng explained with a smile. Dasky's eyes widened and asked. Why? There are too many pirates out there now. The only way you are safest is to stay here with your current strength. Cheng Cheng smiled bitterly. This year is 1520, and if I remember correctly, the Ding Ding War broke out around July half a year later. At that time, Marine headquarters will be the most dangerous place. With Cheng Cheng's current strength, he will definitely still be cannon fodder in the war on top, so his best way now is to stop Ace before Ace can pursue Teach. However, with the sign-in system and the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree, he is confident that it won't take long to reach the heights of the Four Emperors. By then, it won't be a big problem to join forces with the Whitebeard pirates to rescue Ace. Seeing that he was in a daze, Dasky continued to persuade him. What's more, since you have joined Marine, there is no reason to leave just now. Those majors and senior colonels quit. Marine calls for resignation. You are a small soldier. If you leave, you will be a deserter. Even if your grandfather is a hero garp, it is impossible to make an exception. Cheng Cheng raised the corners of his mouth, smiled quietly, raised the Zhenhai sword and swung it forward, and the invisible sword energy tore through the void. Then let's become a major first. Advertisement Chapter 2 Marine Hero Garp. Dasky stood blankly on the spot, looking at Cheng Cheng helplessly, not knowing what to say for a moment. Cheng Cheng's strength is not weak. When she was a child, out of curiosity, she tried the Zhenhai sword in Cheng Cheng's hand once. It didn't matter. At that time, she lost her balance and fell down, leaving her in a state of embarrassment. Because this Zhenhai sword was too heavy, she estimated it weighed nearly 100 kilograms. And her famous sword, Shigur, only weighed less than 3 kilograms. Later, Cheng Cheng personally admitted that the Zhenhai sword weighed 108 kilograms. But there was one more thing Cheng Cheng didn't tell her. Every time the sword was swung, the weight of the sword would increase by 10 kilograms. Once the sword stopped swinging, the weight of the sword would return again. From then on, she never looked down upon this handsome boy who only knew how to practice 2 sword moves. Dasky took a step forward with a strange expression and reached out to touch Cheng Cheng's forehead. You don't have a fever either? Why did you start talking nonsense today? I know your strength is not weak, but at most it is about the same as mine. If you want to become a major, it's definitely impossible. But I believe that with your hard work and talent, there is still hope within 2 years. Cheng Cheng did not hide, and allowed Dasky's slender fingers to touch his forehead, and said with a gentle smile, Don't worry, I know what's going on. The bright smile immediately caused the other girls around him to fall into a state of intoxication. Not only were the eyes above him flowing, but also the inside of their bodies was rippling. Dasky said helplessly, What a fool you are. There is still half a year before the next major assessment. Isn't there another way? Cheng Cheng smiled slyly and winked at Dasky. It is not that he has not understood these regulations before. Ordinary soldiers in the Marine Corps cannot leave at will once they join the Marine Corps. Otherwise, they will be deserters and will be punished by the Judicial Department. But after becoming a major and putting on that white cloak of justice, you are eligible to quit Marine. In addition to the major assessment, there is a shortcut. As long as you can persist in the hands of any Marine colonel for 5 minutes, you can make an exception and be promoted to major. But so far, no one in Marine headquarters has been promoted in this way. Dasky said angrily, I think you are really crazy. You have no idea how powerful a Marine colonel is. Of course I know. Advertisement, then who are you going to challenge? Do you have a candidate in mind? Dasky asked. Cheng Cheng didn't hesitate at all and said directly, Okay, Colonel Smoker. We have a pretty good relationship. He is also your superior. Even if I can't defeat him then, he should be merciful to me. Dasky sighed. You are wrong, he is a devil. At most, he will not kill you. Don't think that you can restrain him with this sea tower stone broadsword. Cheng Cheng smiled slightly and said no more explanation, just wait and see the show tomorrow. When other people watching from a distance saw Cheng Cheng leaving, they knew there was no fun to watch, so they dispersed. Dasky was left standing there stamping her feet angrily. The central location of Marine headquarters is heavily guarded. This is probably the safest place in Marine headquarters. Surrounded by the sea, you can smell the unique smell of the sea at any time here. Cheng Cheng arrived at the door of Garp's office with ease. Everyone at the headquarters knew about his relationship with Garp, so no one tried to stop him along the way. They always greeted him with a smile after meeting him. Creak. Cheng Cheng slowly pushed open the wooden door of the office. Sitting on the large chair was a tall and burly old man with gray hair, holding a newspaper in both hands, covering his entire face. The loud snoring in the office was endless and seemed to lift the ceiling. Mr. Garp must have fallen asleep again. Cheng Cheng walked forward with a smile, took the newspaper away, and saw a transparent sleep bubble hanging on Garp's nose. With a bang, he stepped forward and popped the sleep bubble with his finger, and the transparent liquid splashed into the air. Then Cheng Cheng approached Garp's ear and shouted loudly, "4 emperors have broken into Marine headquarters." Marine hero Lieutenant General Garp woke up instantly and stood up immediately. The table in front of him was smashed to pieces by the old man's palm, and sawdust suddenly flew everywhere on the ground. Advertisement, who is coming, the 4 emperors. When Garp woke up and saw Cheng Cheng with a wicked smile on his face, he calmed down and scolded him with a smile. "You kid, if you don't train well, you will disturb Grandpa's dream again. Do you want to eat Grandpa's iron fist of love?" In the past 10 years, Garp has taken good care of him, so Cheng Cheng is grateful and respectful to this humorous old man. Cheng Cheng said slowly, "Grandpa Garp, I'm here to tell you that I'm leaving." "Oh, where are you going, little Cheng Cheng?" Cheng Cheng rolled his eyes. He was helpless with this title and wanted to beat up the old man in front of him, but he knew very well that his current strength could not beat Garp for the time being. "The old man in front of me looks a little funny. Others will definitely not believe it. This is the man who once forced One Piece Roger into a desperate situation." Cheng Cheng said slowly, "Tomorrow first we'll quit Marine and go find Luffy, Ace and the others." Garp suddenly understood and laughed. "That's right. Speaking of which, you and Luffy haven't seen each other for 10 years. It's true that these 2 grandsons of mine disobeyed and became pirates. What's so good about being pirates?" Then Garp reacted, stood up with wide eyes and asked, "What did you just say, you want to quit Marine?" Garp grabbed Cheng Cheng's hand and cried loudly with tears in his eyes. "Little Cheng Cheng, Grandpa, I only have you as my precious baby now, but I didn't expect that even you, the most obedient, would have to leave Grandpa. Originally, Grandpa hoped that you would become a Marine general in the future." Cheng Cheng immediately took a step back and broke away from Garp. He couldn't stand such a big man. "My little Cheng Cheng, you're not going to learn from Luffy and the others to become pirates, right?" Cheng Cheng explained. "I don't necessarily want to be a pirate, but in short I can't stay at the Marine headquarters anymore." Garp rarely stopped smiling, and his expression became serious. He walked slowly to the window and said solemnly, "Can you tell Grandpa what the reason is?" Cheng Cheng was silent. He hadn't seen such a serious Garp for a long time. If he told Garp now that Ace would be executed by Marine in less than a year, Garp would not believe it. So Cheng Cheng just sighed. "I just want to see the outside world." Advertisement Chapter 3 Sword Energy fills the universe. After Cheng Cheng returned to the room, he sat alone on the sofa and was speechless. Because of Garp, he lives in a single room. Compared with other ordinary Marine 6-person dormitories, the environment is much better. Outside the window, night falls and the stars are dotted. He looked at every familiar item in the room with some reluctance. After all, he had lived in this place for 10 years. To say that he didn't have any feelings would be absolutely false. However, he looked carefully for a while and found that there didn't seem to be many things that could be taken away. He glanced back and forth several times, and the endpoint of his gaze every time was always on Genhai's sword. The next day, an explosive news caused everyone in Marine headquarters to talk about it. "Have you heard? That idiot Cheng Cheng actually wants to be promoted to major by fighting the colonel. Is this person crazy?" "Of course I have heard of it. If I remember correctly, since this rule was established at Marine headquarters, no one has dared to overestimate their abilities like this, right?" "Ah ha ha ha. Are you trying to laugh me to death? That white-haired fool who carries a broad sword and can only practice 2 moves, you don't really think he can win, do you? Of course it's impossible. It's impossible for an ordinary major to last for 5 minutes in the hands of a colonel, let alone an ordinary Marine soldier. Isn't this just a dream?" At the Marine headquarters, not many people may know the name Cheng Cheng, but if we talk about that white-haired silly boy who only knows 2 sword moves, that means no one knows it and no one knows it. The training ground at the moment was filled with people, most of whom came to watch the fun, or to watch Cheng Cheng's jokes. There are 2 referees, one is Marine hero Garp, and the other is Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Originally, there was no need for Sengoku Fleet Admiral to participate in such a small competition, but he happened to be not busy today, and this kind of battle to be promoted by challenging a colonel was the first time since the establishment of this rule. In order to show the importance of this rule, warring states still insisted on participating. Another point was his selfishness. Warring states had watched Cheng Cheng grow up, and he wanted to see what this kid had to rely on to dare to challenge a colonel. There are no rules in their game, only a timer hanging in the corner. At this moment, Cheng Cheng was ready and looked at the middle-aged man opposite with a smile on his face. This man is burly, fierce-looking, and full of gangster aura. He is a Marine who looks more like a pirate than a pirate. There are 2 eye-catching characters, Justice, on the back of his cloak. Advertisement: this is a cloak that only Marines above the rank of Major are qualified to wear, and it is a symbol of strength. He held 2 cigars in his mouth at the same time, continuously blowing out white smoke, and said disdainfully, "Boy, our daily friendship is just a friendship, but in this matter, don't expect me to let you go. Lousy can throw it away. I can't afford this person." This is not only the dignity of a Marine, but also the dignity of a man. "Smoker, stop talking nonsense. I never told you to let go. I chose to challenge you just because you were stronger, Cheng Cheng said angrily. In his memory, this smoker would beat up Luffy a lot in the future, so today he thought of it as retrieving some interest for his brother Luffy. However, such words were obviously shameless B*********** D words in the eyes of others. At this moment, not only the Marines watching the battle looked at Cheng Cheng with some contempt, but also some of the generals wearing the cloak of justice frowned secretly. Smoker glanced at the sea tower stone broadsword in Cheng Cheng's hand and said sarcastically, "If you want to survive under me for 5 minutes with this thing, then I can only say that you are too naive." Cheng Cheng remained silent, but held the Zhenhai sword in his hand tighter, and the sword energy was already overflowing from the sword body. Seeing that both of them were ready, Warring States said in a deep voice, "The challenge begins." As the voice of the Warring States period fell to the ground, Smoker held 10 hands and stepped out with one step. The 10 hands instantly cut through the air, and there was a harsh sound of breaking through the air. Jusho is an uncommon weapon, with a short horizontal frame in the position of the gauntlet. This weapon is originally designed to restrain swords, and it is a weapon that pays more attention to defensive capabilities. Smoker is a well-known thorny person in Marine. He dares to use his 10 hands as his own weapons. This is a sign of extreme pride. For a moment, white smoke billowed and the earth shook. Warring States smiled bitterly. This guy really doesn't hold back at all. Let alone 5 minutes, it is not easy to survive this blow. The other ordinary Marines were also deeply shocked by this battle. Daski's face was full of nervousness, and she was closely watching what was going on in the field. "Well, you Smoker, I told you yesterday that I told you to be merciful, but it's better for you to just go all out." At this moment, Cheng Cheng, who was in the field, looked at the approaching Jusho. There was no fear in his eyes, but a hint of joking in his eyes. He stepped out with his foot, and the ground instantly shattered. He held the Zhenhai sword upside down, and his whole body formed a very low lunge. The Zhenhai sword was held high above his head, and he silently recited, "Armed Hockeys on high." After 10 years of wielding a sword, Cheng Cheng only mastered 2 sword moves on his own. Cut the sea and open the sky. The Zhenhai sword instantly changed from lime gray to pitch black. The sword struck out from top to bottom, carrying the sound of wind and thunder, and struck towards Smoker. The huge and thick sword energy was instantly released from the tip of Zhenhai's sword, forming an arc of sword energy, tearing the ground apart, like a rolling dragon, flying sand and rocks, roaring towards Smoker. Advertisement: after 10 years of wielding a sword, no one asked, but once the sword energy filled the universe. Boom! The 10 hands collided with the Zhenhai sword, causing sparks to fly. Smoker's whole body was like a cannonball, and his body flew backwards rapidly. The wall 20 meters away was smashed and collapsed, and smoke and dust were everywhere. For a moment, there was silence. The air seemed to freeze at this moment. Everyone looked at Cheng Cheng dumbfounded. It was like a bolt from the blue. Even if they saw it with their own eyes, they still couldn't accept this fact. That silly white-haired boy who usually only practiced 2 moves over and over again, actually slashed away Colonel Smoker with one sword. This is almost like a dream. You must know that Smoker is the apprentice of the former Marine General Zephyr. He is a notoriously thorny person in the Marine headquarters. He is almost inhumane when he is usually ruthless. However, such a perverted guy was chopped away with a sword by the stupid boy they called him? White-haired silly boy, it turns out you're not stupid, someone in the crowd said at first. Then the silent training ground began to boil. Quickly, come and tell me, what happened just now is not true. I must be sleeping in the wrong posture, please turn me over. Amidst the crowd's commotion, Daski's face was filled with shock. She quickly took off her glasses, wiped them and put them on again. At this moment, in her mind, like a movie, the scene of Cheng Cheng slashing away Smoker with his sword flashed in a loop. She had originally placed Cheng Cheng's strength on the same level as herself in her heart, and originally thought that this was not an underestimate. But I didn't expect that I still underestimated too much. As her eyes moved, she kept staring at the young man with white hair and black sword, and her lips moved slightly. Isn't this a play on us? I heard that Cheng Cheng has a very good relationship with Smoker privately. Someone among the veterans muttered softly. Then the veteran was instantly rewarded with a chestnut by the superior next to him, and he said, "Trash, open your dog eyes and take a good look, that is armed and domineering." Advertisement Chapter 4. I want to quit Marine. As if an extremely long time had passed, a black figure appeared in the dust of the ruins and slowly stood up. Smoker looked embarrassed, holding 2 cigars in the corner of his mouth, and walked out coughing. He looked at Cheng Cheng in front of him and couldn't help but laugh and curse. What a good boy, you can hide it so deeply. There was surprise in his tone. Only there is no humiliation after being defeated. Cheng Cheng looked at Smoker's current state and felt helpless in his heart. You are almost beaten to death by me. Can you put the cigar in your mouth away? All I do is act cool all day, which is useless. It's just luck, Cheng Cheng said with a smile. Cheng Cheng was talking and laughing calmly, ignoring the shocked looks of others. Garp's eyes widened, his mouth opened so wide that it almost fell to the ground, with a look of disbelief on his face. In addition to being shocked by the strength of Cheng Cheng, what's more important is that Garp inexplicably remembered a question that Cheng Cheng had asked a long time ago. Grandpa, one day in the future, when Luffy or Ace are caught by Marine, will you save them? To save or not to save? Garp didn't think about such a headache at the time, but he threw it out of mind within a few days. Sengoku, look at my grandson. Does he look like a general? Garp opened his mouth and laughed, patting Sengoku on the shoulder and said happily. Warring States did not look at Cheng Cheng, but lowered his head and carefully looked at the ground torn by the sword energy, and said softly, "This boy has the appearance of a general." After Garp heard this, he laughed even louder. Judging from Garp's own terrifying strength, it can certainly be seen how unparalleled Cheng Cheng's weapon-colored domineering sword is. Garp continued with a hearty smile and said, "In that case, my grandson has defeated Colonel Smoker. Do I have to give my grandson at least one colonel title? If he were still a major, he would be a bit too petty." Warring States groaned. Although Cheng Cheng has the strength of a colonel, our marine is a place that emphasizes qualifications and military exploits. There are no rules and regulations. After this kid catches a few important pirates in the future, he will not be promoted to colonel. Not too late. Garp smiled and nodded, saying nothing more. What he wanted was these words from Warring States period. Advertisement after Cheng Cheng showed his armed domination. The ordinary soldiers who used to think Cheng Cheng was a bit stupid now looked at Cheng Cheng with eyes full of passion and awe. Now no one thinks Cheng Cheng is a fool anymore. If he is a fool, then who are these people who watch the jokes all day long? In this world, martial arts are the most respected. Whether it is a pirate or a marine, people respect the strong. Only when you are strong can you be recognized by everyone. At this moment, many people are already whispering, should they wait until tomorrow and learn from Cheng Cheng and only practice 2 moves every day? Cheng Cheng slowly walked up to Warring States and said, "Fleet Admiral, am I a major now?" "Of course, you are strong enough to become an outstanding marine major, and I am also looking forward to your future performance." Sengoku's voice was hearty and loud, and everyone present could hear it clearly. Daisuke's face was full of joy, and at the same time, she subconsciously clenched the sharp knife Shigur in her hand. From today on, Cheng Cheng will no longer be laughed at by others as a fool. He is destined to be the most dazzling star in this sea. However, she felt a little disappointed the next moment. Once Cheng Cheng became a major, it would really be time for him to leave. In her mind, Cheng Cheng has always been a person who does what he says and sticks to his own ideas. It seems that I have to work harder. At this time, after a long period of silence outside the stadium, a burst of violent cheers finally broke out. These soldiers at the bottom seemed to see a new road appearing in front of them, and the dawn of hope shone on each of them. Cheng Cheng, a person who only knows how to practice 2 sword moves every day, can become a major after 10 years of persistence, so why can't they? From now on, Cheng Cheng is a living legend among their ordinary marine soldiers. In the training ground, Garp walked towards Cheng Cheng with a serious expression, holding a neatly folded white cloak in his hands. After Cheng Cheng took the white coat, he did not put it directly on his body. Instead, he grabbed the collar with both hands and flicked his wrist. The white cloak suddenly fluttered in the wind, and the black characters, "Justice," shook violently. He was silent and stared at the 2 big black characters carefully. Haha, justice. What exactly is justice? If the word, justice, is worn on one's body, does it really represent justice? Advertisement. He took a deep breath and threw the cloak out. The white cloak was instantly thrown into the sky. "I want to quit Marine." Suddenly, everyone was in an uproar. Everyone was questioning whether they heard it wrong just now. What's going on? With his strength, as long as he stays in Marine, he is destined to have a bright future. Yeah, I don't understand what he thinks either. Warring States' expression was calm, without the slightest hint of anger, and his voice sounded like he was caring about his own junior. "Can you tell me the reason?" "Everyone has his own ambitions." Cheng Cheng looked directly at Warring States and said slowly. Then Sengoku stopped talking, just took a deep look at Garp, then turned and left. Cheng Cheng obviously knew that Warring States didn't do anything, but he could feel the real pressure and his breathing was a little short. "Follow me," Garp said softly, then turned and left in silence. Cheng Cheng followed closely behind. The old man seemed really angry, but he had no choice but to leave the Marine headquarters. "If you continue to stay here, there is no way to plant the Fantasy Beast Spirit Tree, let alone continue to sign in to become stronger." As Cheng Cheng and others left, the crowd gradually dispersed, but the sound of discussion never stopped. In the courtyard of Garp, the wooden door creaked and was slowly pushed open. The 2 of them stepped into the small courtyard one after the other. Along the way, Garp, who is usually humorous and loves to tell jokes, surprisingly didn't say a word. Although Cheng Cheng felt guilty, he had no regrets. Some things have to be done. In the small courtyard, there are stacked stones and pools, and flying springs and hanging eaves. It is hard to imagine that such a quiet place is the residence of this rough-looking old man. Cheng Cheng followed Garp and slowly walked into the door. As soon as his back feet stepped onto the stone steps, a strong wind suddenly blew up behind him. With a bang, the wooden door closed tightly, and the originally calm surface of the pond instantly rolled like boiling water. "Cheng Cheng, tell me the real reason." Advertisement Chapter 5 Leaving. Cheng Cheng looked calm and found a place to sit down. In his memory, this was the first time Garp had lost his temper with him. "Even if I tell you the truth, you won't believe it." He looked at the very familiar small courtyard around him with emotion. When he was a child, he stood in this courtyard and practiced swordsmanship day after day. No one is more familiar with every plant and tree in the courtyard than him. Later, when he grew up a little and reached the age where he could join Marine, he officially joined Marine and went out to train. Garp looked solemn, frowned, and lost his usual smiling expression, and said, "Tell me first." Cheng Cheng thought for a moment, took a deep breath and said, "Ace is going to hunt down Blackbeard. Teach. Do you know about this?" "I know." Garp nodded. Cheng Cheng continued. Next, Ace will lose to Teach, and then he will be imprisoned in Impel Down City. Soon, he will be beheaded and executed. Ha ha ha. Garp was stunned for a moment, then laughed with tears in his eyes. I know that Blackbeard Teach is not weak, but Ace is also very strong. He is now the second captain of Whitebeard's ship. It's not that easy for Teach to defeat him. Easy. Taking a step back, even if Ace is caught by Marine would not dare to execute him. That white-bearded man is extremely protective of his shortcomings. Killing his captain will cause a war. If Ace is really executed, Whitebeard will have to tear down the entire Marine headquarters. Cheng Cheng rolled his eyes and sighed. Look, I told you that you won't believe it. Of course Whitebeard will come to save Ace, and there will be an earth-shattering battle that day, and the entire Marine headquarters will be almost destroyed. And what I have to do now is to do my best to stop this war. Garp shook his head and said, it's impossible. Even if Ace is captured, Marine will not go to war with Whitebeard over a pirate. This is not cost-effective. Cheng Cheng raised his head and looked directly at Garp and said something flatly, but Garp instantly clenched his fists. You are not the only one who knows Ace's true identity. At the same time, Cheng Cheng still had something he didn't say. Even if he couldn't stop this war, at the very least, he must protect Ace. Garp sat slumped on the ground, and he couldn't help but start to believe in his heart. Of course he knew Ace's true identity. If Marine knew his true identity, Ace would definitely die. And no matter what the cost. Advertisement, even if you want to stop this war, you don't have to leave Marine. With the status of Major Marine, it will be easier for you to do things outside. Even if you understand the armed domineering power, it's still not enough in front of a truly strong person. Cheng Cheng chuckled, if I'm wearing Marine clothes, how can I go see Luffy? Do you want me to capture your grandson and take him to the Marine headquarters? That's right. With your current strength, Luffy is definitely no match for you. Garp's mood finally relaxed a little this time, and he continued to ask, have you really decided? Once you quit Marine, there is no turning back. Cheng Cheng slowly placed his hand on his heart and murmured. My justice is not the two words on the cloak, nor is it a bottomless obedience to the Tianlong people. I am a person with no sense of responsibility. I just want to do one thing right now, to stop that war. Save Ace. My justice is here. After Garp heard this, he was stunned for a long time and then burst into laughter. Go. Now that you know your own path, go and have a try. It's a pity that my son has never met you. Otherwise, you will definitely hit it off. The voice was filled with an indescribable sense of pride. Fortunately, there are only two of them at this moment, otherwise if others heard this sentence, they would be scared to death. Who is Garp's son? That person is the leader of the Revolutionary Army who has been trying to overthrow the world government and the #1 criminal in the world government. Cheng Cheng took a deep breath and looked at the tall old man with complicated eyes. No one knew how strong he was. Even though he now understands armed color hockey and turtle-style qigong, he still feels that in front of this old man, he is like a sapling under the strong wind and rain, which will be blown down at any time. He clenched his fists and determined to become stronger. Only by becoming stronger could he protect Luffy, Ace and the others. That phantom beast spirit tree must be planted even if it goes to heaven or earth. Cheng Cheng bowed deeply to Garp but didn't say a word. Over the past 10 years, he could truly feel Garp's concern for him. Now, it's time for me to repay this old man's kindness. Knowing all the plot, he really couldn't do anything but watch Ace block Luffy's punch and die on the execution platform. Grandpa Garp, please take care of yourself. Advertisement. After Cheng Cheng straightened up, he shouldered the Zhenhai sword and pushed the door open without hesitation. After returning to his room, Cheng Cheng carefully cleaned up and down, and after much deliberation, he only took the Zhenhai sword that had been with him for 10 years. After stopping at the door of the room for a long time, Cheng Cheng turned around and left without closing the door. Near the coast, he found a small wooden boat, jumped up, and landed on the small wooden boat. For a moment, water splashed everywhere. Under the sunshine, the waves are crystal clear and beautiful. The small wooden boat floated slowly with the waves, and he looked back at the majestic Marine headquarters building again. Dasky, Smoker, and some others are actually pretty good. It's just that the next time we meet, we will all become enemies, right? The blue waves are rolling and the sea breeze is blowing. The golden sunshine shines on the endless sea ahead, and the golden light flickers like a dream. Suddenly two familiar figures appeared on the shore. Smoker was holding a cigarette with an expressionless face, while Dasky was holding Shiger and waving to Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng, next time we meet, I will definitely surpass you. Boy, if you dare to be a pirate, I will catch you first. Cheng Cheng smiled slightly and waved goodbye to them. After driving for about an hour, the Marine headquarters building was almost invisible, and Cheng Cheng confirmed that there was no one around anymore. He then said slowly, System, we have to carry out the next task. Okay, sir, the next mission is in Kokoa village. Do you want to teleport now? Close black lens bracket. Kokoa village? Isn't this Nami's hometown? At the same time, I am looking forward to it even more. What will be the reward for checking in next time? Start teleportation. Yes sir, we are looking for the teleportation location. Close black lens bracket. Locating. Starting transmission. Advertisement Chapter 6 Zauba. Kokoa village. The sky is clear, the grass and trees are fragrant, the breeze blows through the tender green grass leaves, and the ants crawling on the young grass buds are swaying momentarily, as if they have encountered the end of the world. Suddenly, a white light flashed in the air, and Cheng Cheng fell from the sky screaming. "Ah! Ah! You're a stupid system." Cheng Cheng cursed loudly in midair. He didn't expect that the system would teleport him into midair. Fortunately, it was not very high from the ground. If it were hundreds of meters high, he would really have died before he left the battlefield. However, despite the scolding, Cheng Cheng quickly calmed down, stepped on the air with both feet, and used the force in the air to lift his body up a little. This is moonwalk, which is extremely difficult to master among the 6 marine styles. For a genius like Cheng Cheng, it was of course very easy to master. Then he seemed to be stepping on air steps, slowly walking down step by step, and stepping on the green grass. He breathed in the unique scent of grass and said to himself, "System, start detecting the environment. Open black lens bracket. OK, uncle, close black lens bracket. The system is being tested. The test failed and the cultivation conditions were not met. Close black lens bracket." Cheng Cheng sighed. He was a little doubtful whether this tree could be cultivated. Then he looked forward and faintly saw a tall tower-shaped building on the seaside in the distance. In this village of all bungalows, it stood out and was out of place. "It seems that Aaron's paradise is over there. Let's go and sign in first. I don't know what good things can be rewarded." After saying that, he put the Zhenhai sword on his back and walked slowly forward. The soil was soft, and every step he took would leave a shallow footprint on the ground. Not long after, Cheng Cheng arrived at the entrance of Aaron's paradise. He looked up at this majestic building and exclaimed, "I didn't expect Aaron to enjoy it quite a lot." Advertisement Zauba, who was fishing at the door, was an octopus man and one of Aaron's cadres. Zauba immediately spotted Cheng Cheng carrying the broad sword. "Hey, human, get out of here quickly. This is not the place you should be. Humans are not welcome in our Aaron paradise." Zauba warned loudly while fishing, with a bad tone. Looking at the honest Zauba in front of him, Cheng Cheng still has a good impression of him. You must know that the octopus balls made by Zauba are so delicious that even Rayleigh praised them. Besides, Hachi is not a bad person, so he was not prepared to kill him, so he casually asked, "Hachi, have you seen Luffy?" "Who is Luffy?" "I didn't see it." Zauba shook his head repeatedly, then realized what was happening and asked hurriedly, "No, how do you know my name is Zauba? I've never seen you before." Cheng Cheng felt relieved. It seemed that he had arrived not too late. Luffy had not yet had a decisive battle with Aaron. Then Cheng Cheng pushed open the door of Aaron Paradise and walked in slowly. Zauba put down the fishing rod, stood up immediately and said angrily, "Hey, I told you to leave. Why did you come in? If you do this again, don't blame me for being rude." Cheng Cheng ignored Zauba. When Zauba wanted to step forward and stop this human being, he found that the silver-haired young man had disappeared before his eyes. Cheng Cheng's figure disappeared in a flash, and when he came to the courtyard, he saw many murlocs looking at him with ferocious expressions. Some murlocs who were close to him even drew out their weapons and slashed at them without saying a word. Cheng Cheng smiled contemptuously. He didn't even bother to use the Zhenhai sword to deal with these little miscellaneous fish. As the figures flickered, fist shadows intertwined. In less than 3 minutes, just using the physical skills he mastered, he knocked all the murlocs in the courtyard to the ground, losing their ability to fight and falling unconscious. At this time, Zauba, who was fishing outside, only reacted when he heard the noise. He hurriedly pushed the gate of opening and wanted to say something, but was knocked unconscious by Cheng Cheng with a hand knife and rolled his eyes. The corpses of murlocs lay scattered in the courtyard. Cheng Cheng was sitting on the chair in the middle, a little bored, with his legs crossed and doubtful. "We have obviously arrived at Aaron's paradise in accordance with the system's requirements. Why is it still not prompted that the sign-in was successful? Are there any other hidden conditions?" After thinking for a while, Cheng Cheng, who had no clue, got up and walked around in the attic above, but still didn't hear the system prompt. But he wasn't going to leave here, so he just stayed here and waited for Luffy. Cheng Cheng stepped on the void, stepped on the air several times, and in a flash, he reached the top of the tower, sat cross-legged next to the pirate flag, closed his eyes and meditated. Advertisement. I don't know how long it took, but the wooden door of the courtyard below was pushed open with a creak. Aaron, who was outside the door, saw the corpses of his compatriots lying scattered in the courtyard, and his face instantly darkened. Aaron glanced around and saw the cadre Zauba lying on the ground. He hurriedly ran over and hugged Zauba with both hands, shouting in pain. What happened here and who did it? Other cadres also discovered this scene. The powerful Zauba was actually knocked unconscious. They couldn't help but take a step back and looked around cautiously. Once Zauba gets serious, his strength cannot be underestimated. But he was still defeated. It was obvious that the enemy was not weak. "Zauba, wake up and tell me who did this. I must avenge you," Aaron roared. Zauba opened his eyes drowsily, thought for a while and then said slowly, "It's a human. I haven't seen him before, but he knows my name. He is a white-haired swordsman, and his sword is very big. He must have sneaked up on me. How abominable." Aaron clenched his fists tightly, veins popped out on his arms, shouted loudly, and said angrily, "Compatriots, you should search the entire island now. If you see anyone with white hair, kill them all. I chopped them all up and threw them into the sea to feed the fish." Yes. Just when these fishmen were about to rush out to seek revenge, another cadre slowly walked in, dragging the long-nosed Usopp in his hand. After he saw the corpses of his compatriots on the ground, he was also very shocked and asked, "Boss Aaron, what happened? Achu, where have you been? Why did you take so long to come back? If you were here, our compatriots might not be hurt like this," Aaron said with some displeasure. Kadri Achu threw Usopp forward in his hand. I caught this long-nosed pirate. Even if you catch this kind of trash, it's of no use. I must kill that white-haired swordsman to satisfy the hatred in my heart, Eren said coldly. Usopp, who was lying on the ground and shaking all over, immediately became energetic when he heard this and begged for mercy. Yes, I'm useless even if you catch me, I'm just trash, just let me go. Another Kadri said, this long-nosed man must be with that white-haired boy. Let's kill this long-nosed man first. Usopp was instantly heartbroken and defended loudly. I only know green-haired swordsmen, never any white-haired swordsman. You can't kill a good guy by mistake. Eren took out a dagger, thrust it in front of Usopp's long nose, and said coldly, I don't care if you know him or not, I will cut off your long nose first, and then chop him alive one by one. Let's talk about the fish. Chapter 7 Cutting Usopp with the sword. Usopp's face was pressed against the cold ground. He immediately panicked and said hurriedly, yes, I know the white-haired swordsman. He is very powerful, we are lovers. If I die, he will definitely kill all of you to avenge me. If you dare to touch me, try it. At this moment, Cheng Cheng, who was above the crowd with his eyes closed, rolled his eyes and cursed with a smile. Okay, Usopp, just wait for me. After I solve Eren's matter, I will deal with you. Eren looked at Usopp disdainfully and said jokingly, oh, in that case, as long as I kill you, the white-haired swordsman will appear to avenge you. Usopp was instantly shocked. No, killing me will definitely not work. Kill me and the white-haired swordsman will not come. Only by living as a hostage for you can I exert my greatest effect. Do you think that's right? Eren also calmed down at this time and said, what you said is not unreasonable, so let's cut off your long nose first. You're obviously a human, but you have a long nose. It's an eyesore. It's really annoying, disgusting, duh. Usopp, who had just relaxed, started wailing again, crying bitterly. No, my long nose is my life, you can't do this. At this time, another Kadri came to Eren and said, Boss Eren, Zoro escaped, someone must have let him go. And Nami has been acting suspiciously these days. Do you think it's possible that after Nami released Zoro, it was Zoro who did it? This white-haired swordsman was also disguised as Zoro. Don't forget, Nami is the best at betrayal. Fart, an angry shout came from outside the door. The courtyard door was pushed open with a bang. A tall girl was in everyone's sight. She was wearing casual clothes, turquoise short sleeves, and a pair of black shorts. Under the shorts, she wrapped a pair of straight and slender long legs, which were so fair that they were dazzling. She has exquisite facial features, a standard melon seed face, a straight bridge of nose, and skin as good as snow. Her short orange hair flutters in the wind, especially her red eyes, which are shining and full of hope. But the most eye-catching thing should be the tattoo of a dragon on the girl's right arm. It looks very abrupt with its teeth and claws. The girl strode in from outside the door. She looked at everyone unceremoniously and scolded, keep your mouth clean and say who is a traitor. It was 8 years ago that I joined you. Then the girl looked directly at Eren, who was more than 2 meters tall, and said coldly, what's more, we still have an agreement, don't we? Advertisement, ha ha ha, yes, what you said is that we still have an agreement. Eren laughed loudly. Nami, don't worry, I, Eren, have always kept the agreement the best. Cheng Cheng, who was sitting above everyone, kept looking at Nami. Sure enough, she was as big as the one in the anime. But since I'm here, I can't help but Eren, you broke the agreement. Then the tall Eren bent down slightly, stretched out his palm as big as a leaf fan, and patted Nami on the shoulder. This long-nosed guy is from the Straw Hats, and I'll leave him to your disposal. Nami picked up the dagger on the ground with cold eyes, held the dagger upside down and walked towards Usopp without any hesitation, and said sternly, don't meet me again in the next life. Lying on the ground, Usopp's face instantly turned green, and the sweat on his cheeks fell like raindrops. He hurriedly said, Nami, don't kill me, aren't we partners? Luffy still believed in you after you stole the ship and left. He never doubted you, don't you feel guilty at all? Nami paused for a moment, then walked towards Usopp. Sorry, all I care about now is money. You've hindered me, now I can only deal with you with my own hands. Must kill. Smoke star. Usopp immediately took out the slingshot he had prepared and shot at everyone's feet. With a bang, just after Nami finished speaking, a burst of smoke bombs rose from his feet, and the white mist enveloped everyone in just an instant. Almost everyone lost their sight at this moment, choked by the smoke and coughed, and everyone fell into panic for a while. Usopp seized this opportunity and started running forward as fast as he could, saying proudly, you are the only ones who want to kill me. But before Usopp had time to be happy, he saw the expressionless Nami standing in front of him. You can't run away, I've expected you to do this, Nami said calmly. For a moment, Usopp was heartbroken. Before Usopp could escape again, Nami clenched the dagger in her right hand and took a step forward. The dagger in her hand cut through the air and stabbed directly into Usopp's lower abdomen. Blood splashed everywhere for a while, and soon stained their clothes red, and the ground was covered in blood. Usopp's face instantly became shocked and confused. He looked at Nami with confusion and said, Nami, why did you? Advertisement. Before Usopp could finish speaking, Nami kicked Usopp into the sea in front of him, leaving Usopp to fend for himself. Cheng Cheng, who was sitting above the crowd, watched this scene and couldn't help but sigh. Damn it, I really want to kill Eren and his gang right now, but the time has not come yet. It's easy to kill him, but in this way, there will be no stepping stone for my brother Luffy. Others couldn't see the mystery, but Cheng Cheng could certainly see it. The knife Nami just stabbed was not Usopp at all. but his own palm, and the blood spilling out was all Nami's own. Cheng Cheng thought for a moment and decided to set out to help Usopp. If he really encountered any large fish in the water, he would be disabled or even dead. The next moment, Cheng Cheng's figure disappeared from where he was. Usopp, who was holding his breath and swimming hard in the sea, suddenly felt a sense of relief behind him, and his whole body moved quickly as if someone had lifted him up. After leaving Aaron's paradise and arriving at a location where he was sure he would not be discovered, Cheng Cheng lifted Usopp out of the water and used moonwalk to walk in the air. Usopp already knew that someone was saving him, but after seeing that he could fly in the sky, he still couldn't help but said, "Hero, are you here to save me? In fact, I don't need you to save me. The swimming talent has always been very good." Cheng Cheng instantly had the urge to throw this guy down again, but thinking that this guy was Luffy's friend, he resisted and continued to ask, "Where's Luffy? Have you arrived on the island?" "Ah, hero, do you know Luffy? That's great. Counting the time, Luffy and the others should be here by now." Cheng Cheng calculated in his mind that the time was almost the same as he expected. He carried Usopp to the sky above the land. When he was still 2 or 3 meters above the ground, he let go of Usopp and made him fall to pieces. Usopp became furious instantly and looked back. Only then did he see this man's appearance clearly. This is a young man dressed in black, with a slender build, short silver-white hair flying in the air, and a huge broad sword on his back. Especially his handsome face, which doesn't seem to have the same style as his own. He was about to curse, but thinking of the strength of this handsome man of the same age, he held it back and said, "If it weren't for the fact that you know Luffy, I would never let you go." Cheng Cheng raised the corners of his mouth and narrowed his eyes, raising the Genhai sword as if to strike at Usopp. Chapter 8 Teaching the Way of Swordsmanship. As soon as Usopp saw that the white-haired swordsman had drawn his sword against him, he was so frightened that he ran away. Cheng Cheng chased after him with the Genhai sword and slashed at him, saying angrily, "You mean-mouthed Usopp. Laozi rescued you from the sea, but you still dare to call yourself uncle in front of me. See if I don't kill you with my sword. Uncle, I don't dare anymore. I don't dare anymore. I don't dare to be mean-mouthed anymore." Usopp immediately began to beg for mercy, but he ran faster and faster. Not far from Cheng Cheng and the others, there was a strong swordsman in front. His chest was wrapped with a bandage and his muscles were bulging. He had short green hair, tall features, and wore 3 gold drop earrings on his left ear. At this moment, he heard a familiar cry for help. He looked in the direction of the sound and saw a white-haired swordsman chasing Usopp with a sword. Without any hesitation, he drew out the only remaining white sword and rushed towards the white-haired swordsman quickly. The moment Zoro's murderous intention arose in his heart, Cheng Cheng sensed his presence. When he saw the man's appearance, he immediately recognized that this was Roronoa Zoro, the one whom his younger brother Luffy trusted the most, one of the people. At this time, Usopp also belatedly discovered Zoro's existence, but when he saw Zoro rushing over with a desperate posture, he quickly said loudly, "Zoro, don't fight, I'm fine." But Zoro, who had already rushed over with his sword, would not pay attention to what Usopp said at this moment. At this moment, all his energy was focused on the sword. Almost in the blink of an eye, Zoro, with a cold look on his face, rushed over, using his belt and elbows to hold his hands. Zoro's whole body began to spin, and he shouted, "Tornado!" On the flat ground, the sword energy raised up a strong tornado, and countless fallen leaves on the ground were rolled up and flying all over the sky. Cheng Cheng looked calm and was shocked. As expected of Zoro, his body was so seriously injured and he could still use such amazing sword moves. It's a pity that Zoro only has one sword in his hand now, and the tornado he displays is only aura and looks scary. This is fine for dealing with some small miscellaneous fish, but in front of Cheng Cheng, it's still not enough. Cheng Cheng looked calm, took one step forward, raised the Genhai sword and struck it down at the center of the tornado. The tornado with astonishing momentum dissipated in an instant, and the fallen leaves fell to the ground again. Advertisement, so strong. Zoro's eyes widened with shock on his face. His full blow was easily broken by the white-haired swordsman in front of him with just one strike. His expression was solemn, and the feeling this man gave him reminded him of Hawkeye, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, whom he had met before. Usopp on the side also opened his mouth wide. He knew that the white-haired swordsman was very strong, but he didn't expect to be able to neutralize Zoro's attack so easily. Just when Zoro was about to draw his sword again, Usopp shouted, "Zoro, he is not an enemy. If it weren't for him, I might have died in the sea just now." Hearing this, Zoro stopped what he was doing and complained, "Then why didn't you tell me earlier? I said it a long time ago, but you have to be able to listen." Usopp was on the verge of crying, full of grievances. However, Zoro still held Dao Yuan tightly, looked at the white-haired swordsman in front of him calmly, and said, "I am Roronoa Zoro. I can feel that you are very strong. I hope to spar with you." Usopp was shocked and immediately grabbed Zoro and said, "Zoro, you don't want your life. You know your injury hasn't healed yet. Aren't you seeking death by sparring with him now?" "Usopp, I have made up my mind. If we are partners, please stop trying to persuade me," Zoro said expressionlessly. Usopp could only droop his face helplessly, clasped his hands and began to pray to the sky. "My name is Cheng Cheng, and I am a swordsman." Cheng Cheng smiled slightly, looked at Zoro with admiration and said, "I can agree to compete with you, but not now. When you think you can beat me in the future, you can challenge me again. At that time, I will definitely not refuse. Besides, Usopp is right. You are seriously injured now, and you only have one sword. To challenge me with you in your prime is also a sign of respect for a swordsman, isn't it?" Zoro hesitated to speak. The next moment, his eyes widened and he stood there, as if he was petrified. There was no warning. Cheng Cheng tightened his grip on the Genhai sword, turned around and slashed towards the sea behind him, muttering softly in his mouth. Cut the sea. Advertisement suddenly, a huge sword energy that was more than 10 meters long struck down from the air, splitting the entire sea into two, and the rocks on the seabed were directly exposed near the shore. After 2 seconds, the sea surface closed again and calmed down. Cheng Cheng's breathing was a little quick, but his face remained calm. Although I can't accept your challenge now, I can teach you my sword. When you can achieve this level with one sword, you can do it again. Come challenge me. Zoro stared at this shocking sword with his mouth agape. His calm heart had already stirred up thousands of waves, and he looked at the sea with rapid breathing, unable to recover for a long time. He knows how difficult this sword is, and only Mihawk can compete with him. The domineering sword just now seemed to have touched something deep in his heart, and he felt that he had understood something in his mind, but when he reached out to grab it. But there was nothing left. But just that, this can already make Zoro excited. Usopp, who was beside him, lost his legs and fell to the ground, muttering, "What a monster." "Thank you for your guidance, senior. I will definitely become a great swordsman in the future," Zoro said excitedly. At this time, he no longer had the idea of challenging the man in front of him. Cheng Cheng smiled indifferently. He didn't care about the title of great swordsman. He thought to himself, "I'll leave the great swordsman to you. I will reluctantly be the master of the great swordsman." "Okay, you two go find Luffy quickly. I think he needs your help now." After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he stepped on the moonwalk and left. "By the way, when you see Luffy, tell him that his big brother is already here. Don't have any worries and do whatever you want." Usopp and Zoro looked at each other and saw the shock in their eyes. Usopp said, "Luffy's brother is really a pervert. This guy is so strong. Why haven't I heard Luffy talk about him before? I have such a brother. At least it's as strong as the 7 warlords of the sea." Zoro nodded in agreement. At the same time, on the other side of the island, Luffy's ship had just hit the land and stopped. Before Luffy, who was still a little confused after being hit in the head, could react, he saw a man dressed as a pirate not far away running over in a hurry, crying and shouting. Brother Usopp was killed by Nami. Chapter 9 Marine's Justice. At night, on the edge of Kokoa village, there is a separate small villa here, which is Nami's home. Cheng Cheng simply asked people in the village and found this place easily. In the backyard of this house, there is a large orange grove covered with plump oranges. When Cheng Cheng saw that Nami was not at home, he didn't go in and sat cross-legged in an open space. While he was eating delicious and juicy oranges, he was secretly planning in his mind the battle that would come soon. Although the Phantom Beast Spirit Tree is very powerful, he has not yet found a suitable place to cultivate it. Even if he found it, he felt that he would not be able to recruit an army of 800 Phantom Beasts in a short time. The army of Phantom Beasts is destined to be a long-term plan. It can only be planned slowly and cannot be forced. The most important thing now is to improve your own strength or try your best to stop Ace. Here, he is not worried about his younger brother Luffy, who is a very lucky guy. At least on this small island, there is no powerful character who can threaten Luffy's life. What he was more worried about was Nami's life safety. If Eren saw through her little tricks, her situation would be very dangerous. So now he must first ensure Nami's safety. At this time, he discovered that Nami had returned home, seemed to have discovered him, and was walking towards him. Cheng Cheng looked calm. He had nothing to hide. While eating oranges, he greeted Nami with a smile. "Hello, Nami." Nami, who was holding a 3-section stick, looked at the white-haired swordsman in front of him very warily, and said in a bad tone, "Who are you? You'd better leave here quickly, otherwise don't blame me for being rude. I am a cadre of the Dragon Pirates." Cheng Cheng showed a playful smile and said, "I know, but you will soon be my brother's partner." Seeing Nami's confused look, Cheng Cheng added, "By the way, my brother's name is Luffy, and my name is Cheng Cheng. I'm a swordsman." Perhaps after hearing that this person was Luffy's brother, Nami's expression relaxed, but he still said with a cold face, "It's impossible. You'd better go back and tell Luffy to ask him to leave here quickly and find another one. Other navigators. My younger brother has a stubborn temper, and he won't listen to me," Cheng Cheng said, peeling another orange, putting it in his mouth, and swallowed it in one gulp. Nami was immediately angry and stretched out his hand angrily. "Pay for it, 1 orange is 100 belly." Advertisement. Not only was Cheng Cheng not angry, but he reached out and picked a plump orange again. He weighed the orange and said, "This is the 10th orange. If I eat your 10 oranges, I will give you 100 million in return. How's it going? Is this deal a good deal?" Nami looked at Cheng Cheng like a madman again and said, "Get out of here quickly, otherwise I will beat you up even if you were Luffy's brother." Seeing that Cheng Cheng still had no intention of moving, Nami picked up the stick and struck him. But before the stick touched Cheng Cheng, his figure disappeared from the spot. Just when Nami thought this weirdo had left, Cheng Cheng appeared again. "I'm just going to stay here and won't go anywhere," Cheng Cheng said, closing his eyes and falling to the ground to sleep. "Oh, I haven't slept for a long time, and I suddenly feel so sleepy." Nami looked at Cheng Cheng angrily and stamped her foot. "Whatever you want, you'd better sleep here and die." Considering that she was still short of the agreed 100 million belly, she wanted to go out and do it one last time so that she could fulfill her agreement with Eren. At that time, everyone in the village would be free. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on her face again. The next morning, after Nami went out, she found that the guy from last night was still sleeping there. Just as she was about to leave, she saw a group of Marines approaching, with Mr. Aegean leading the way. The leader of the Marines was a thin man with two slender beards on his cheeks. He was very cunning and looked like a rat that had become a spirit. When the man saw Nami, he said directly, "Are you the thief, Nami?" Nami was suddenly startled and had a very bad premonition, and a cold sweat suddenly broke out on her back. Chief Mouse continued. "I got reliable information that someone reported that the gold and silver treasures you stole from pirates were hidden here." After Nami heard this, her eyes widened suddenly and she looked at him in panic. The chief continued. "You don't have to be afraid. What you stole belongs to pirates. These are stolen goods. As long as you hand them over, I can make an exception and be generous and consider not holding you responsible. Advertisement. But these stolen goods should be handed over to our government for disposal, so now I want to represent justice and confiscate these." Nami's pupils trembled violently, but he quickly calmed down and sneered. "Is this justice for you Marines? There are obviously big pirates with many evil deeds right in front of you, but instead of dealing with them, you come to trouble me, a weak woman. Besides, I'm warning you, I'm Aaron's cadre. If you offend me, Aaron won't let you go." The mouse-like Marine officer smiled slyly. "Little girl, do you think I'm afraid of you?" Then he waved his hand and shouted sternly. "Search for me, search carefully, even if you dig 3 feet into the ground, you will find the stolen goods for me." The soldiers behind him came out in response, and each of them looked past Nami with serious expressions and started to search. Nami suddenly became furious, swung the 3-section stick in his hand, quickly formed a long stick, and smashed it towards the Marines. In the blink of an eye, 3 Marines were knocked to the ground, wailing in pain. "Do you Marines do this kind of work every day?" Nami gritted his teeth and said, "Don't you know that Aaron and his gang not only killed people, but also destroyed many towns? To this day, this island is still ruled by them, here. But you can't see this vicious desperado, and instead come to trouble me as a thief. Is this what you, Marine, call justice?" Chief Mouse sneered. "Stop talking nonsense to me and keep searching for me." The other Marines followed the order and began to search one by one. The Marine on the side said at this moment, "Colonel, I think the orange field here is very suspicious. It's definitely not safe to keep that much money in the room." Colonel Mouse waved his hand. "Focus on searching the orange field." Immediately, a dozen Marine officers took shovels and walked towards the orange field. Nami suddenly became panicked, picked up a stick and stepped forward desperately to stop him. At this moment, Nami discovered that the white-haired swordsman was still sleeping on the ground as if nothing had happened, as if he had not heard any sounds from the outside world. And the position where he lay down, by coincidence, happened to be the place where he hid his treasure. Nami quickly stepped forward and shook his shoulders. "Hey, wake up, Marine is here. If you don't leave, Marine will definitely arrest you." Cheng Cheng bent down and sat up, raised his hands and stretched out, yawning. "It's okay, they're the ones I'm waiting for." Chapter 10. He always believes in you. Nami was confused and had no idea what he was talking about, so she still urged, "Seriously, if you don't leave, you will really be in trouble." Cheng Cheng just sat on the ground, eyes narrowed, as if he hadn't woken up yet. Nami was so angry that he hit Marine next to him with a stick. The unprepared Marine was knocked to the ground. After a while, Colonel Mouse shouted angrily, "What are you guys looking for? I asked you to find 100 million belly. Is it that hard to find it?" Nami, who was standing by the side, stood stunned for a moment after hearing 100 million belly. Her pupils were dilated and her face was ashen. At this moment, no matter how stupid she was, she knew the reason. "Did Aaron ask you to come here?" Nami said angrily. Colonel Mouse smiled scornfully. "Who told you that? I never said that." The Marine on the side reported, "Colonel, there has been a white-haired swordsman lying on the ground. I think the place where he lies is very suspicious. Maybe the stolen goods are underneath." "Then why are you still standing there? Get rid of me," Colonel Mouse shouted angrily. "Yes." The Marine agreed and walked towards the white-haired swordsman lying on the ground. Nami became even more anxious. "I asked you to leave but you didn't leave. Now it's already too late even if you want to leave. Nami, do you know? You are so kind. Your 100 million Baileys are about to be gone, but you are still worried about me, an insignificant stranger." Cheng Cheng said, stood up and picked up the Zhenhai sword. "I will never allow a kind person to feel the injustice of this world." Suddenly, Cheng Cheng's whole aura changed. He stood there like a peerless magic weapon stuck on the ground, with a majestic aura. He raised his head and glanced at the Marine calmly. The Marine immediately stopped and stood there stiffly, with his legs and feet unable to move. "Trash!" Colonel Mouse yelled, and without saying a word, he took out a revolver and shot Cheng Cheng directly. Boom! A loud noise erupted from the muzzle of the gun, and bullets shot towards Cheng Cheng like lightning. Nami looked at Cheng Cheng in shock. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng looked calm and showed no signs of disturbance. He placed the Zhenhai sword horizontally in front of him. With a bang, the bullet was bounced away. "Don't bring this little toy out to make people look embarrassed, you little piece of trash," Cheng Cheng mocked. Then with a flick of his wrist, he slashed from top to bottom in the air. An extremely sharp sword energy tore through the ground and slashed forward. Colonel Mouse's expression changed drastically, and he turned around to run away. However, as soon as he turned around, he was already dead with his head dismembered and his eyes still open. The Marines around them discovered that their colonel had been beheaded before they could even take action. Some people were eager to avenge Colonel Mouse, while others exhaled and sat down on the ground. The other two were so shocked that the knives in their hands rolled to the ground. When they hesitated, Cheng Cheng swung down, inserted the Zhenhai sword into the soil, looked at everyone and said, I know that some of you are forced. I will not kill innocent people indiscriminately. Where do you come from? Just go back from there. Whoever takes one step forward will die. For a moment, everyone in the audience was stunned and could hear the needle drop. These Marines just stood there and stared at the white-haired swordsman in front of them. After all, no one dared to take a step forward. Who is this? It's so strong, it killed a mouse colonel instantly with just one sword strike. Colonel Mouse colluded with Eren and his gang. We have been oppressed by him for so long and have done so many bad things. Don't you yourselves know it? A Marine shouted at the top of his voice. You're right. Colonel Mouse has done many evil things and his death is not a pity. We don't have to risk our lives to avenge such people. That's right. Let's go and report the true situation here to the headquarters. After saying that, these dozen Marines left here in a mighty manner. Cheng Cheng looked at Nami, who was still in a daze, and said with a smile, It's done, I've already paid for the oranges. You? Nami looked at Cheng Cheng in shock. It took him a long time to realize what he meant. Did you already know that? Cheng Cheng waved his hand. These are not important. By the way, how much money do you have left? I still have some here, and I can scrape it together for you, so that you can fulfill your agreement with Eren. Advertisement. Nami remained silent and didn't speak. She walked up to Cheng Cheng, hugged Cheng Cheng's neck, buried her head deeply in his chest, shrugged her shoulders, and sobbed silently. Cheng Cheng gently patted Nami on the shoulder and comforted, It's okay, everything will be fine from today on. Yeah. Nami nodded slightly. Cheng Cheng continued, If you believe me, you'd better come with me to find Luffy now. He will help you defeat Eren. Nami pushed Cheng Cheng away fiercely and said hurriedly, No, it's no longer needed now. The money I agreed with Eren is enough. As long as he has this money, he will definitely keep his promise and let everyone in the village restoration of freedom. With that said, Nami picked up the shovel on the ground and started digging on the ground. Soon a large wooden box was revealed in the soil, tightly locked with an iron lock. Nami skillfully took out a key from his chest and carefully opened the treasure chest, revealing countless gold and silver treasures inside. Look, these are all what I have accumulated over the years. Nami smiled sweetly, and her red pupils shone brightly, full of expectations for the future life. When Cheng Cheng, who was originally calm, saw the money, he clenched his fists for a moment, and an unknown anger boiled in his heart. An extremely strong aura erupted from his body in an instant. If he hadn't tried his best to restrain himself, he really wanted to kill Eren right now. He saw that every banknote and every gold coin in the wooden box was covered with blood. If Eren dares to accept this money, I, Cheng Cheng, will kill you even if I hunt you to the ends of the earth, Cheng Cheng said to himself secretly. Suddenly, Nami seemed to remember something and said hurriedly, Don't go looking for Luffy. Just leave. You just killed Colonel Marine. Marine will definitely not let you go. You don't have to worry about me here. With this money, Eren will definitely abide by the agreement. Cheng Cheng knew that Eren would never keep his promise. Even if he persuaded Nami now, she would not believe it. Fulfilling this agreement has been her obsession for the past 8 years. If she is not allowed to try it in the end, she will never give up. Okay, I can leave here, but you have to promise me that if Eren doesn't abide by the agreement, you will go find Luffy and let Luffy beat him to death. Cheng Cheng flicked his wrist, put away the Zhenhai sword, and Zhenhai he put the sword on his back and walked away. Finally, he raised his voice and said, Luffy has always believed that you have not betrayed, and he has been waiting for you. Chapter 11 Agreement among the field roads. Young yellow chrysanthemums bloomed on both sides of the road. The fragrance of chrysanthemums mixed with the fragrance of green grass made Cheng Cheng greedily breathe in the air. It's been 10 years. I haven't seen my brother Luffy for 10 years. I wonder if that kid can still recognize me now. Cheng Cheng smiled slightly, tightened the Zhenhai sword behind his back, and involuntarily quickened his pace. Soon, he followed the guidance of the villagers and saw a group of people standing in the distance. If he looked carefully, he could see if it wasn't Luffy or the others. However, now he only saw green-haired Zoro and Sanji in a black suit standing. Usopp sat boredly on the roadside stone in a daze, and Luffy lay on the ground and made a big sign. This seems to be falling asleep. Cheng Cheng shouted at the top of his lungs. Hey, One Piece. Luffy, who was lying on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes. His expression was startled, and he jumped up, twisting his body and looking around. Who is calling my name? Zoro and Sanji on the side were speechless for a moment. They both covered their foreheads in shame and quietly distanced themselves from Luffy. Usopp, on the other hand, had a serious look on his face, but when he saw the white-haired swordsman coming, he couldn't help but stand behind Luffy. He was really afraid of this pervert. When Luffy saw Cheng Cheng approaching, his expression was confused at first, and then he stood there stunned for a while, his expression changing uncertainly. Suddenly, Luffy shouted towards Zoro, Sanji and the others. Usopp, Sanji, Zoro, run, my eldest brother is Marine. After saying that, Luffy ignored Zoro and the others and took the lead to escape. Cheng Cheng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. With a movement of his body, he came first and lifted Luffy up in an instant. Little Luffy, why are you running? Brother, I am no longer a Marine, Cheng Cheng said angrily. Zoro and Usopp looked at each other, a little embarrassed. They had already met Cheng Cheng, and of course they would not run away at this time. You brat, I didn't expect you to have grown so tall, Cheng Cheng said, rubbing Luffy's head. In his memory, Luffy had always been a follower behind him. Luffy grinned and laughed loudly. That's not true, it's already been 10 years. Usopp and the others just said they met you on the island. I didn't believe it at first, but I didn't expect you to be here. Aren't you at the Marine headquarters with Grandpa? Advertisement. Cheng Cheng smiled playfully and said, Big brother was a Marine major a few days ago. After hearing this, Usopp, who was originally afraid of Cheng Cheng, instantly lost his legs and sat down on the ground. Zoro and Sanji drew their swords and raised their legs secretly, ready to fight at any time. Luffy wasn't surprised at all. It seemed like it was normal for his eldest brother to become a Marine major. My eldest brother is still awesome, haha. Ace is also doing well now. I heard he is doing well in the Whitebeard Pirates. Cheng Cheng's expression dimmed a bit, but he soon returned to normal. Let's not talk about this for now. Let's go find Nami now. She needs you the most right now. Luffy said with a smile. I know, we are going to the village to find Nami now. She is my navigator. Sanji sighed at the side. I didn't expect Miss Nami to endure so much pain. It's really disgusting. I will never spare Eren. Cheng Cheng walked over and patted Sanji on the shoulder and said, Heroes see the same thing, I agree. By the way, after you take care of Eren, you treat me to a meal and I'll teach you moonwalk. Huh? Everyone looked confused. What is moonwalk? Only Usopp reacted the fastest and said hurriedly to Sanji. Sanji, believe me, don't care what it is, just agree first, this guy is a pervert. When Sanji was still confused, he saw Cheng Cheng carrying a big sword on his back, smiling, stepping on the void step by step, as if there were transparent stairs in the sky that they couldn't see. This is it. Sanji saw it and agreed immediately without any hesitation. Make a deal. Luffy and Zoro may only be sighing at the magic of this move, but for Sanji, who has been immersed in leg arts for many years, he deeply knows the terrifying power contained in it. Just looking at it can make his heart beat with fear. Luffy pursed his lips and said, Brother, I want to learn this too. I want to learn too. Usopp quickly raised his hand and said. Cheng Cheng shook his head slightly. At present, it's only possible for Sanji to learn it. As for you, even if I tell you the principle, you can't do it. Advertisement. As for you Sanji, you can figure it out for yourself first. Cheng Cheng said and took the lead. Let's go to the village first. Nami is still waiting for us. At the same time, Nami went to Eren's paradise alone after Cheng Cheng left. She always believed that Eren would keep his promise. The man once said that even if he died, he would keep his promise. With a creak, the door to Eren's paradise was slowly pushed open. Eren, I'm here to fulfill our agreement today. After pushing the gate of opening, Nami shouted loudly. I have saved 100 million belly, you should also let me sell my village to me. From now on, none of you can set foot in the village. Eren, who was sitting on the chair, was slightly stunned and said in surprise. Really? Of course Eren, will fulfill the agreement, but I can't prove it. I need to see the money. Nami couldn't help but have some joy on his face, clenched his fists and said excitedly. Of course, as long as you promise me, I can take you to withdraw the money now. Eren stood up expressionlessly. No problem, a gentleman's words are hard to follow. Nami walked in front and led the way. Eren and other cadres walked behind, and just like this, a large number of fishmen set off towards the village in a mighty manner. Eren asked the cadre Achu next to him with some confusion. What's going on? Didn't that Colonel Mouse find the money? What a waste. I heard from other people that Colonel Mouse was killed by a white-haired swordsman. I didn't think this news was reliable, so I didn't report it to you. Achu replied. Eren nodded. Yes, how could such a master appear in this small village, but that Colonel Mouse is such a waste, he can't even pay for it. But this is fine. Originally we could only get 70%, but now the 100 million belly is all ours. After saying that, a group of Murlocs instantly burst into laughter. Nami, who was walking in front at the moment, just wanted to complete the agreement with Eren and didn't pay attention to the abnormality of Eren and his group. Under the leadership of Nami, they soon arrived at Kokoa village. Walking on the street, many villagers looked at Nami through the windows. In everyone's eyes, there was expectation, gratitude, guilt, joy, and passion, but the disdain they used to look at Nami was gone. They all know that whether they can regain their freedom depends on today. Unbeknownst to Nami, all the villagers walked out of their houses onto the street, following her silently. Chapter 12 Partners in the Orange Field. Nami skillfully pushed aside the mud covering the treasure chest, and a slight drop of sweat appeared on his forehead. But she didn't care at all, her eyes showed excitement. She opened the box and said, The money is all here, Eren, it's time to fulfill your promise, return Kokoa village to me. Eren did not step forward, but turned around and gave the cadre Achu an indifferent look. Go and take a look and carefully check whether there are 100 million belly. Achu chuckled and stepped forward as ordered. After seeing so much money, the other fishmen around them all had their eyes shining, looking greedily at the treasure in the box. Achu walked forward slowly, lowered his head and looked at a box of gold and silver treasures expressionlessly, without bending down to count them. Suddenly a strong fire burst out from his mouth, and a strong flame swallowed up the wooden box in an instant, and the banknotes inside were reduced to ashes in an instant. No. My money, Eren, you liar, Nami yelled crazily, rushing to put out the fire. Eren was faster, grabbing Nami's head with one hand and lifting her into the air. My dear navigator, I am still counting on you to draw all the navigation charts in the world for us, but I will not allow you to die now, Eren said with a smile. Nami almost went crazy, beating Eren's arm hard with both arms. But Nami's little strength, hitting Eren's body, was almost the same as scratching it. Achu, what are you doing? Did I ask you to count the money or set a fire? Achu smiled and said, I'm sorry, boss, I just lost control. It's my fault. I'm willing to be punished in any way. Eren ignored him, threw Nami aside with a flick of his arm, and said coldly, "Let me see if the money in this box is enough for 100 million belly. If it is not enough, I will not hand over the village, for you." "Beast. You are a beast," Nami yelled hysterically. The blazing fire was reflected in Nami's pupils, and her eyes gradually dimmed. She worked hard for 8 years of life and death to save enough money, and then it was reduced to ashes. Eren sent people around him to continue counting the remaining treasures, and soon someone reported, "Brother Eren, the total gold, silver and jewelry in the box only totals 50 million belly at most, not 100 million berry at all." "Ha ha ha ha." Eren laughed crazily. "Nami, it seems you have to continue saving money." Advertisement. Nami sat limply on the ground, her face ashen. "By the way, don't think about escaping. If you escape, I will kill everyone in the village," Eren added with a smile. Nami stood up, pushed Eren away, and ran away from the village. At this moment, all the villagers were waiting for news about Nami, but when they saw Nami walking over with tears on her face, everyone understood instantly. Mr. Aegean shouted, "Folks, that's it. It's time for us to take up arms and fight on our own." Everyone roared and picked up the things in their hands. "Yeah, we can't rely on Nami alone, we have to fight together. Even if I die today, I will fight with Eren. We swore together 8 years ago that no matter how humiliating Eren's rule is, we will endure it. As long as Nami lives well, we will have no complaints. And now, even if Nami has saved enough money, Eren has not fulfilled the agreement, so there is no need for us to continue to sit still and wait for death." After Mr. Aegean finished speaking, he took the lead in walking at the front. Nami saw all the villagers angrily looking for Eren. He quickly wiped away his tears, forced a smile and stopped in front of everyone. "You. Don't be impulsive, I still have a way, I just need to save money again. Don't be naive, even if you save enough again, Eren will not fulfill his promise. Nami, you have worked very hard, but now, we have to fight on our own. You should leave the village. You have your own dreams and don't have any burdens," the villagers said one after another. Nami opened his arms resolutely, took out a dagger in his right hand, and shouted angrily, "No, I won't let you pass, don't force me." Mr. Aegean grabbed Nami's dagger and said firmly, "Let's go and find Eren for revenge." "Come on," everyone shouted, bypassing Nami and running past Nami. Nami's eyes were dull and she knelt on the ground in despair. She looked at the hateful Eren tattoo on her right shoulder and couldn't help but feel furious. "Eren!" Nami shouted angrily. She raised the dagger and stabbed her shoulder desperately. Blood splattered everywhere. The blood flowed down her arm to her fingertips and dripped on the ground between her fingers. But Nami felt no pain at all, her heart had died at this moment. She felt like she was plunged into endless darkness. Advertisement, Eren. Along. Every time he called Eren's name, Nami stabbed himself in the shoulder. After a while, the ground was covered with blood. Suddenly, Nami felt like she couldn't move her hand, as if someone had grabbed it. She looked up and saw only a red-striped straw hat and an extremely familiar face. It's just that this face no longer had the fool-like smile of the past, but became extremely serious, without saying a word, looking down at her coldly. Then she looked around again. Usopp, Sanji, Zoro, and the white-haired swordsman who just met yesterday and claimed to be Luffy's brother, all looked at her quietly. Nami couldn't help but shed tears at the corner of her eyes, and choked up. "Luffy, you don't know anything. You don't know anything about the village or Eren in the past 8 years. I've already told you to get lost, as well as Usopp, Sanji, and you, Cheng Cheng. I've already told you to get lost. Why don't you leave? Get lost." As he said this, Nami's voice started to sound, it went crazy. Luffy and the others didn't speak, they just watched Nami vent their emotions quietly. Finally, Nami stopped yelling and her voice started to grow deeper again. She sobbed silently and looked up at Luffy. "Luffy, help me." Luffy looked serious, wordlessly took off the straw hat on his head, put it on Nami's head, and said loudly to the sky what should be said, "Of course." Then Luffy said to Zoro and the others, "Let's go." Zoro and the other 3 stood up and followed Luffy without any nonsense. Cheng Cheng shouted from behind, "Brother, do you need my help?" "Brother, just take care of Nami, this is my battle," Luffy said loudly without looking back. Cheng Cheng smiled happily. "This is my brother." Then he turned to look at Nami and said proudly, "How is it? My future One Piece brother is not a bad person." At this moment, Nami was already crying and couldn't speak at all. Cheng Cheng muttered in his mind, "System, redeem some fairy beans for me. I want to use them now. 1 million Baileys and 1 fairy bean. How much do you want, sir? Close black lens bracket. 10 first. Okay, uncle. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 13 Somersault Cloud. Cheng Cheng felt a little sad that 10 million belly was gone like this. This was all the savings he had accumulated over the past 10 years at the Marine headquarters. Fairy beans are a kind of food in the Dragon Ball world. As long as ordinary people eat one, they will not be hungry for 10 days, and they have extremely strong regeneration power. No matter how much damage a person has suffered, as long as he does not die, after eating it will heal quickly. But he also knows that the little money he has now is nothing. When he reaches the strength of 4 emperors, he won't need to make money by himself at all. What's more, now is not the time to feel sorry for Bailey. He squatted down and reached out to hand 5 fairy beans to Nami. "Just eat one and keep the rest. After eating, your injury will be healed. This is a magic medicine for healing." Nami looked at the pea-like medicine with some confusion. Without any hesitation, he picked up one and threw it into his mouth. Soon, she was shocked to find that her body didn't seem to be in so much pain anymore. The wound on her right shoulder was also healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, the whole tired body became energetic instantly. What kind of medicine is this? It's so powerful and the effect is so good, Nami asked in surprise. She had never seen such a magical medicine before. Cheng Cheng said mysteriously, I asked for this from a cat. Then his tears suddenly turned into laughter, and he suppressed his smile and said, I don't believe it. Then Nami said apologetically, this medicine must be very expensive. I have such a minor injury, wouldn't it be too wasteful to take it? There is nothing more natural than this. Cheng Cheng reached out and touched Nami's head, saying gently, let's go find Luffy quickly. His current strength is still a bit difficult to deal with Eren. If I weren't watching from the side, I would still be a little worried after all. Nami nodded heavily, and after saying yes, the two quickly headed to Eren's paradise. At this moment, the door here was broken, and a stone wall next to it was also knocked down. Outside, all the villagers watched the battle inside worriedly, cheering for the Straw Hats. When Cheng Cheng and Nami rushed here, they only saw Zoro, who was sweating profusely, fighting hard with Zauba, but they didn't see Luffy and Sanji. Where is Luffy? Where is he? And where is the yellow-haired cook? Cheng Cheng quickly asked the villagers on the side to learn about the situation here. Immediately, a villager explained. Luffy was knocked into the sea by Eren. His feet were still pressed by rocks and he couldn't get out. Now Mr. Aegean and Nokagawa are rescuing him. Advertisement. The yellow-haired cook also went into the water, preparing to save Luffy, another villager added. Cheng Cheng took a look, and he probably already knew the situation. As for Usopp, he didn't ask at all. This guy had no other abilities. Escape was a must, and he would definitely not die. He saw that Zoro, who was already at the end of his strength, had difficulty even standing, and knew that he had a recurrence of an old injury. Otherwise, with Zoro's strength, it would be very easy to deal with Zauba. When Xiao Ba saw this, he slashed into the air with his sword without mercy. With a bang, Zoro's body shook so much that he almost fell to the ground after being stabbed by Zhaobaichi. Next, Xiao Baby didn't give up. He found the right moment and put his foot on Zoro's chest. A mouthful of blood spurted out of Zoro's mouth, and he was beaten so hard that he stepped back more than 10 meters before regaining his balance. He wanted to struggle to keep standing, but as soon as he moved, his legs were weak and he fell to his knees. Zoro, eat him! Cheng Cheng shouted and threw a fairy bean to Zoro. Zauba, Zauba, if nothing else happens, this should be the peak moment of your life. Cheng Cheng silently prayed to Zauba in his heart. He had a good impression of Zauba. He was a very honest and loyal fishman. It was best not to be hacked to death by Zoro. But if you really get hacked to death by accident, that doesn't matter. When Zoro heard Cheng Cheng's voice, he subconsciously stretched out his palm, grabbed the fairy bean, and stuffed it into his mouth without even looking at what it was. The next moment, Zoro's eyes widened and he stood up instantly. He pulled off the bandage on his chest and exuded amazing momentum. The patient who was unsteady in the battle just now was completely different from the patient. This scene made everyone watching stunned. What's going on? Isn't that green-haired swordsman just about to die? Yes, I saw him just now. The blood on his chest was flowing out, and his face was terribly pale. How come it seems like I have completely recovered in this moment? The white-haired guy gave him something. Not only were the onlookers shocked, but the fishmen could clearly feel the changes in Zoro. His previous aura was like a candle in the wind, which could be extinguished at any time. But after I didn't know what I ate just now, it became like a blazing flame, burning violently, dangerous and powerful. Advertisement, especially Hachi, he can feel Zoro's changes most clearly. Are you kidding? It must be a lie. I'm not afraid of you. Zauba, furious, slashed at Zoro with his knife. Zoro smiled slightly, stood up and looked at Zauba calmly, and cursed. Smelly octopus, let's see if Lousy doesn't chop you to death. Taking one step forward, his body turned into a shadow and rushed towards Xiao Ba. Cheng Cheng no longer watches the battle between Zoro and Zauba. Under normal conditions, it is not impossible for Zoro to kill Eren, let alone take care of Zauba. The most important thing at the moment is his younger brother Luffy, who is still soaking in the water. He is a devil fruit user, and he is basically equivalent to a useless person in the sea. Cheng Cheng jumped up and plunged into the seawater, with water splashing all over the water. After jumping into the water, the cold water swallowed him up instantly, and his whole body was immersed in the cold. It was at this time that a familiar system prompt sounded. Congratulations to the uncle for completing the sign-in task. Close black lens bracket. Reward. Somersault cloud, sun-loon knife, water-breathing secret technique. After Cheng Cheng heard the voice, he couldn't help but smile on his face. I told you why after arriving at Eren's paradise, the mission was not completed for a long time. It turns out that the sign in place was under the water. With a flash of green light, a blue sun-shaped sword appeared on his waist, and the secret method of water breathing appeared in his mind. Cheng Cheng's face was overjoyed. The Nichiren sword is a special sword for members of the Demon Slayer Corps in the Demon Slayer world. It is made of ore that absorbs solar energy. The secret technique of water breathing that goes with it is also a technique in the world of Demon Slayer. The main function is to strengthen the cardiopulmonary function, thereby allowing the blood to absorb a large amount of oxygen in a short period of time, which can greatly increase the body's ability in an instant, and cause explosive damage such as landslides and earth shattering. As for the somersault cloud, Cheng Cheng somehow sensed it and it was floating in the sky above him. But now he is still in the water, and he doesn't know if he can summon somersault clouds. Somersault cloud. Cheng Cheng muttered silently in his heart. In the sky above Aaron's paradise, all the villagers and fishmen looked up to watch. I only saw a golden cloud above my head, falling straight down, like a huge gold ingot falling from the sky, faster and faster. Look, the clouds are falling. Chapter 14. What is trust? Everyone present looked up and stared at the golden clouds, marveling at it. These villagers had never seen such a scene before. Next, something even more magical happened. That golden cloud actually fell straight into the sea. The curious fishman seemed to want to verify an idea in his heart, so he followed the golden clouds and jumped into the sea. Cheng Cheng could sense the distance between somersault cloud and somersault cloud in his heart. He noticed it instantly when somersault cloud rushed into the water, and then his thoughts moved. Somersault cloud seemed to be connected with his mind and instantly understood his thoughts. After making a detour around him, he rushed straight towards the direction of Luffy under the sea. At this moment, Luffy's feet were being pressed by big rocks, and he was holding his breath hard to prevent himself from drinking seawater. Next to Luffy, Mr. Aegean and Nokagao were working hard to hit the stone with hammers, trying to break the stone into pieces, but the buoyancy of the water on the seabed was too great, and they couldn't use their strength at all. Even if they hit it with all their strength, the effect on the big stone would be minimal. Sanji, who rushed into the water to rescue Luffy, was also entangled by another one of Arlong's cadres. Luffy had been holding his breath for too long and was almost suffocating. He could only forcefully cover his mouth with his hands to prevent himself from drinking seawater. However, there would still be water flowing along the gaps, allowing Luffy to drink a large mouthful of seawater from time to time. At this time, Luffy also noticed that there was a golden cloud moving at high speed under the sea. How amazing! His eyes widened and he couldn't help but exclaimed. But as soon as he opened his mouth to speak, a large amount of seawater poured into his mouth, which reminded him that he was still at the bottom of the sea. Then he saw the golden cloud falling at his feet at an extremely fast speed, and then he felt his body light up. The three of them, including the big stone, were all lifted up by the golden cloud. Cheng Cheng couldn't help but admire in his heart, this somersault cloud is really a treasure. Then he turned to Sanji, who was still fighting hard, and shouted, "Sexy cook, go to the ground and fight." Sanji had also discovered the situation here long ago, and also relaxed. After kicking the cadre away, he immediately swam to the top of the sea. After Cheng Cheng came out of the water, no one noticed his presence. Everyone was watching the battle in the field worriedly. Advertisement: he does not intend to participate in this battle. His brother Luffy's Straw Hat Pirates are still too weak now and must grow up quickly. If he participated in this battle now, he could easily kill Eren, but it would not be beneficial to Luffy's growth at all. And the fastest way to grow is to fight. Zoro saw that Luffy had come out of the water and no longer worried about him. He slowly took off the green scarf from his shoulders and tied it on his forehead. Then he bit the remaining Dao Yuan in his mouth and looked at Xiao Hachi opposite him coldly. On the opposite side, Zalba took out 6 knives in a funny way and called himself 6 Sword Style. "Let me show you what the real 3 Sword Style is," Zoro said coldly without looking back. "Joseph, Johnny, lend me your swords." "Okay, brother Zoro." The two men didn't hesitate at all. They picked up the knives in their hands and threw them at Zoro. The 2 machetes spun in the air and flew towards Zoro. Xiao Hachi on the opposite side had already lost his patience at this moment and rushed directly towards Zoro. At the critical moment, Zoro happened to catch the 2 machetes flying from behind. After holding the 2 machetes, Zoro's momentum suddenly changed. The 3-handled knives kept circling and flying around Zalba, and they were even faster than Zalba's 6-handled knives. The whole person turned into a ball of shadow and flashed past Zalba. 3 Sword Style, Sword Wolf Style, Zoro muttered silently after sheathing his sword. Zalba, who had not yet reacted, instantly burst into a ball of blood from his chest and fell to the ground and passed out. At this time, Nami quickly ran over and stuffed a fairy bean into Luffy's mouth. Luffy, who was a little dazed at first, jumped up immediately after eating. "Wow, Nami, what did you just eat with me? It was delicious. Do you have any more? Give me another one." Nami looked serious. "No, this is a life-saving thing for you." After Luffy said, "Oh," he thought of business, raised his fist and hit Eren. Rubber pistol. Nami saw the effect after Zoro ate the fairy beans just now, and Nami truly realized how precious these fairy beans were. He had just shed a little blood, but Cheng Cheng gave it to him without hesitation. Nami looked at Cheng Cheng's handsome face with complicated eyes. Advertisement: she didn't understand why this guy could do this. Then Cheng Cheng looked at Nami, who was wearing a straw hat, walking towards him, and asked seriously, "Cheng Cheng, you are actually very strong, right?" "It's not bad." Cheng Cheng nodded, admitting this quite shamelessly. "Then why don't you help your brother Luffy? You are not from this village and have no idea how scary Eren is." Nami said worriedly, "With your help, Luffy's chances of winning will definitely be much greater." Cheng Cheng smiled slightly and said something unrelated. "My younger brother wants to be a One Piece man." Nami was silent, just thinking carefully about the meaning of Cheng Cheng's words. "Believe Luffy, you still don't understand his strength." After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he continued to stare at the battle. On the other side, Sanji, who left the bottom of the water, was no longer bound by the seawater, and quickly defeated the Eren cadre who fought with him. Then Sanji and Zoro, who had nothing to do, stood aside and watched the battle. Like Cheng Cheng, they had no intention of helping Luffy. After Nami saw the almost unanimous performance of the three people, she clenched her fists and felt a lot of emotions in her heart. She whispered softly, "Is this trust?" She looked at Luffy in the field again. Luffy's fists were like machine guns, stretching out his long arms and hitting Arlong like a violent storm. Eren was even beaten back and forth, and was finally punched into the wall by Luffy. Just when everyone was happy for Luffy, they thought Eren was defeated just like that. All I saw was that Eren stood up again as if nothing had happened. He looked at Luffy fiercely and said, "The warm-up is over, now it officially begins." "As you wish." Luffy clashed his fists hard, and then rushed towards Eren as fast as possible. But when everyone saw Eren changing his fighting style, he no longer punched, but instead opened his shark-like mouth, revealing teeth like blades. He bit Luffy's arm, and Luffy screamed when he was bitten. Before Eren could feel proud, the next moment the teeth in his mouth were shattered. It turned out that they were broken by Luffy's other fist. The two of them were fighting each other like this, going back and forth. As time went by, Eren gradually lost the upper hand. At this time, Eren jumped up high and rushed into the water. Sanji exclaimed, "Luffy, be careful, the fishman's strength will double in the water." Chapter 15 Human Wall. At this moment, Luffy no longer had the intention to listen to what Sanji was saying. He was like a curious baby, staring at Eren in the water on the shore. Want to find out where Eren went? Just the next moment, a ball of water suddenly exploded above the calm water surface. Boom! Luffy flew backwards and hit the wall behind him. Except for Cheng Cheng, no one else knew what happened. After Eren's figure appeared, everyone realized that the attack just now was caused by Eren. The speed was so fast that even Cheng Cheng nodded secretly. Faced with Eren's arrow-like attack, Luffy could only receive points, and soon his whole body was covered with scars. Nami unconsciously held Cheng Cheng's arm tightly and looked at Luffy worriedly. "Brother Cheng Cheng, can Luffy really win? Eren is very strong." Cheng Cheng rubbed Nami's head. "Luffy is your future captain, you have to trust him." Nami hummed and felt relieved, but her hands still grasped Cheng Cheng's arm, revealing her true thoughts. Eren seemed to have lost his patience during the battle, while Luffy was like Shao Kahn from immune to death. His vitality was too tenacious. And slowly, his physical strength is constantly being consumed, and it will definitely not be good for him. So Eren turned around, crashed into the tower again, and pulled out a saw-toothed sword from the gap, with a blade at least 2 meters long. When his serrated knife appeared, other fishmen were shocked. How long has it been? Brother Eren finally used this knife again. Brother Eren is finally going to show his full strength. The Straw Hat Boy is in trouble now, haha. Sure enough, after holding the serrated knife, Eren's momentum rose again. Luffy, who was already at a disadvantage, became even more passive and could only desperately dodge Eren's sword. Slowly, many wounds began to appear on Luffy's body, and blood spurted out from Luffy's body. At this moment, Luffy had become shaky. "Cheng Cheng, Luffy is dead. Go and help him quickly." Nami's eyes were filled with tears and she cried. "Zoro, Sanji, what are you doing standing still? Go and help him." It's just that Cheng Cheng and the three of them didn't seem to hear Nami's words. They were as motionless as stone statues. Even the villagers watching the battle spoke out. "Advertisement, isn't Straw Hat your partner? Hurry up and help. That is, if you wait a little longer, your captain will be hacked to death by Eren." Only Zoro responded calmly. Luffy said, "This is his own battle." After saying this, he shut up and just watched the battle indifferently. The next second, Luffy was kicked forward by Eren again, and his body was smashed into the attic on the top of the tower. Eren followed closely behind and rushed forward without mercy. The two figures disappeared from everyone's sight. The people outside could not clearly see the fighting inside. They could only hear the continuous screams from the attic and saw tables, books, and papers falling from the attic from time to time. No one knows whether Luffy is alive or dead now. One of the pieces of paper floated down and landed right on top of Nami's head. Nami took the piece of white paper and looked at it, then she quietly covered her mouth, tears silently flowing down her cheeks. These papers are all sea charts she has drawn by herself in the past 8 years. If she did not draw them, she would be beaten by Eren until she lost her sense of pain. To her, that attic was a former prison, and it was also a nightmare that had been lingering for the first half of her life. It was a place that she wanted to escape from every time she woke up in the middle of the night. In the past 8 years, there have been countless times when she wanted to escape from this hellish place to pursue her dreams and live the life she wanted. But every time she didn't leave, because she wanted to protect her villagers, she had to protect the village. But now, she saw this hellish room with her own eyes, which was shattered by Luffy's own hands. She murmured in a voice that only she could hear, "Thank you, Luffy." It was at this moment that she chose to trust Luffy completely and no longer worried about Luffy. The towers of Eren's paradise began to break apart, and countless sawdust flew around. With a bang, the entire Eren paradise made an earth-shattering noise and then collapsed. Smoke and dust were everywhere, and thick fog covered the sky. Everyone could only see a blurry figure, which was a tall and thin figure standing proudly on the ruins. Nami was instantly overjoyed. Looking at this figure, it was clear that Luffy had won. But when the smoke dissipated and Luffy's appearance was clearly seen, Nami couldn't help but looked up to the sky and cried loudly. Everyone could only see that Luffy was covered in blood at this moment. There was no neat piece of clothing on his body, and he looked as if he had been soaked in a pool of blood. Then Luffy raised his fist and shouted to Nami, "Nami, you are my partner." Advertisement. Nami just nodded heavily and was speechless. When everyone saw the collapse of Aaron's paradise, they reacted one after another and started cheering as if they were waking up from a dream. We won. Aaron was defeated. It's great. After 8 years, we are finally free. Zoro and Sanji couldn't help but smile, but at this time, a sudden burst of laughter interrupted everyone's attention. Everyone only saw Aaron lying in the ruins, pointing in the distance and laughing wildly. Straw Hat Boy, it doesn't matter if I lose, you will also have to be buried with me. Everyone looked in the direction of Aaron's finger, and only saw 3 marine warships quietly appearing 1 kilometer away on the sea surface. I don't know when. Nami's face suddenly looked shocked, the pupils of his eyes shrank, and his voice began to tremble. Luffy, let's run. At the same time, Sanji and Zoro's expressions also changed drastically. Both of them were ready to fight at the first moment. At this time, Usopp ran over happily from nowhere, but when he saw the 3 huge marine battleships, his face instantly turned livid. It's over, Luffy, let's run away quickly. Zoro said in a deep voice. Usopp, Nami, the ship is on the east side of the island. You quickly take the road and fly there. Sanji and I will stay behind. Almost instantly, the atmosphere began to become tense. The villagers didn't want to be idle, so they spontaneously held hands and erected a thick human wall on the coast. Straw Hats, please leave quickly, we will protect you from now on. For 8 years, all of us have been looking forward to when Marine will come, subdue Aaron, and give us our freedom day and night. But in the end, it was a group of pirates who rescued us. How ridiculous. Now these Marines want to arrest you, and we, the villagers of Kokoa village, will never agree. Disagree. All the villagers shouted in unison, and the sound was loud. Among the people, only Cheng Cheng has always been calm. Whether it was Aaron's defeat just now or the 3 marine battleships that appeared now, he always looked calm from beginning to end. He looked at the crowd, then looked up at the 3 warships approaching in the sea. He took a step forward with a wicked smile on his lips. Chapter 16 Water-breathing enhanced version of turtle-style Qigong. The 3 marine warships on the sea are very fast, and each warship is equivalent to 3 melee. The weapons and cannons equipped on the battleships are even more shocking to see. If 3 warships fire at the same time, the fierce firepower can instantly engulf everyone on the island, and the villagers spontaneously form a human wall in front of these 3 behemoths. It's just Amanda's blocking the car. Straw Hats, you'd better surrender quickly, otherwise, we will fire. A loud voice came from the battleship on the sea. The atmosphere solidified instantly. Damn it, can't those marines see there are so many villagers here? Cheng Cheng, let's get out of here quickly, Nami said anxiously when she saw Cheng Cheng was still in a daze without moving. Cheng Cheng said softly, no need to go, leave it to me. Then Cheng Cheng glanced at the somersault cloud that was still floating aside. The golden cloud seemed to sense it immediately and understood Cheng Cheng's intention. Flying over quickly, Cheng Cheng jumped high into the sky and jumped onto the somersault cloud, before being dragged up slowly by the clouds. Everyone fell silent and looked at Cheng Cheng, wondering what he wanted. After Cheng Cheng ascended to an altitude of 30 meters above the ground, he lowered his head and looked down at the 3 battleships in front of him, and said loudly, Luffy, look, this is a gift from my brother. Luffy's eyes widened and he agreed with a smile on his face. But others were even more confused. Fortunately, Zoro and the others have some understanding of Cheng Cheng's strength, but the other villagers around him have no idea at all. Until now, Cheng Cheng had never made a move in front of them, so none of them knew the strength of this white-haired boy. At this time, Zoro gradually thought of a possibility in his mind, but then he quickly shook his head and denied his unrealistic idea. Look at the 3 tall, mountain-like battleships in front of us. What kind of strength is needed to challenge these 3 battleships alone? But even so, Zoro couldn't help but start to look forward to it. He is also a swordsman. After seeing Cheng Cheng's sword that split the sea, he was fascinated by it. He knew that Cheng Cheng was much stronger than him. Perhaps his next goal should not be to surpass Mihawk, but to surpass Cheng Cheng first. Advertisement. Everyone looked at Cheng Cheng with doubts, expectations, and excitement. Under everyone's gaze, Cheng Cheng moved. He stood on the somersault cloud, turned slightly sideways and bent his knees, took a horse stance, put his hands together and held them empty at his waist. Then he slowly closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. Slowly, his breathing rate seemed to quietly merge with the surrounding sea. He said in an extremely slow tone, water-breathing turtle-style Qigong. Everyone stared with wide eyes, not daring to miss any detail. I saw a bit of blue-white light suddenly appearing in Cheng Cheng's hands. This light expanded rapidly in the blink of an eye, forming a huge ball of light, which stretched out his hands. But soon Cheng Cheng began to compress the light ball again, and continued to compress it into the size of a watermelon. Cheng Cheng shouted loudly, pointed the light ball at the 3 battleships, and suddenly pushed them out. The light ball containing terrifying energy flew out at an extremely fast speed. The moment he left Cheng Cheng, he quickly expanded like a wild horse and became a behemoth. In the eyes of everyone, they only saw the huge blue-white ball of light, spurting out from the center of Cheng Cheng's palm, forming a long beam of light in the air, and crashing into a battleship. Then all 3 warships were penetrated by light beams, and exploded one after another like candied haws on a string. There was a loud bang, shaking the world and causing water splashing everywhere. Huge waves suddenly exploded above the calm water, and countless pieces of wooden planks flew everywhere, burning into raging fires. Some of the Marines on the battleship didn't know what happened. They only saw a vast expanse of white and then completely left this world. Some of the Marines standing at the bow and stern of the ship were lucky enough to survive without being hit directly by the beam of light. At this moment, they all looked for a plank to float on. The originally silent sea was now filled with the screams of Marines. Everyone was questioning loudly. What happened? Can anyone tell me what happened? Most of the people who answered them cried, I don't know, we don't know. It was the Straw Hats who did it. I saw it. They attacked us on the island. After a long time, an unknown soldier finally gave a more rational answer. Now not only the Marines on the battleship were shocked, but also all the villagers on the island, including the Straw Hats, all of them were stunned. Huge shock appeared in everyone's eyes. Only Luffy was the first to laugh with bared teeth and said excitedly, Wow, brother Cheng Cheng, you are so awesome. I'm afraid Ace will be very surprised when he sees you. Advertisement. At this moment, Cheng Cheng had fallen down from the somersault cloud. He patted Luffy on the shoulder and cursed with a smile. You brat, have you forgotten that when we were kids, neither you nor Ace were my opponents, and only Sabo could compete with me? That's all. Ha ha ha, brother is right. Luffy laughed, very happy. Zoro secretly tightened his grip on the hilt of the knife. Doesn't this guy use a sword? What the hell was that just now? And at that moment, his breathing seemed to be integrated with the entire sea. How did this guy do it? No, I have to surpass him. Starting from today, I will train myself harder. Sanji lowered his head and kept smoking, trying to suppress the shock in his heart. Haha, brother Cheng Cheng, I saw you right, I knew you were invincible. Usopp laughed up to the sky, no longer showing the fear he had when he saw Marine before. Nami looked at Cheng Cheng with wide eyes, sizing him up carefully, as if she didn't really realize what kind of person Cheng Cheng was until this moment. Only then did she truly understand why Cheng Cheng didn't help Luffy during the decisive battle with Eren. Because this person is sure to save Luffy under any circumstances. Everything is under his control. Then she glanced at Luffy, who was giggling beside him, and sighed. Both of these brothers are perverts. Nami looked at Cheng Cheng again and asked doubtfully, What did you do before? Wasn't it also a pirate? Before Cheng Cheng could say anything, Luffy answered first. My brother, he is Marine. He was taken to Marine headquarters by my grandfather 10 years ago. Nami instantly felt that her worldview had been subverted. At the same time, at the distant Marine headquarters, an urgent call for help was received. This is the 32nd Marine Branch, and I'm Colonel Curry. Marine number 00598. Now report an emergency to the headquarters. The Straw Hats are in great danger. Not only did they knock down Eren and his gang, they also destroyed 3 of our Marine battleships with one blow. It is recommended that the headquarters immediately increase the reward for the Straw Hats, regardless of life or death. Headquarters received it. Chapter 17 Departure, Setting Sail. Night. Kokoa Village. At this moment, the most grand carnival in 8 years was ushered in here. All the villagers walked out of their homes and held a banquet directly on the street. Everyone's face was filled with sincere smiles. From time to time, there are young children chasing and fighting on the street. If it were before, the adults would definitely not be so relieved, but now and from now on, it doesn't matter, the children can play whatever they want. Suddenly, 2 children picked up a black flag from nowhere. They took it in their hands and played with it, and the pattern printed on it was the Dragon Pirates. After seeing this scene, Mr. Aegean, who had given up drinking for many years, couldn't help but pick up another glass of wine and drank it down in one gulp. Zoro was sitting alone in the corner with his back against the wall, drinking beer in large gulps. There were barbecues in front of him, a mouthful of wine and a mouthful of meat. It was simply not too comfortable. Sanji kept walking among the women, chatting up young and beautiful beauties, and twitching his butt from time to show off his coquettishness. Cheng Cheng was not interested in any of this. It had been 10 years since he and Luffy finally met. However, the 2 brothers didn't speak, and kept stuffing food into their mouths. Cheng Cheng only ate meat, so when he ate, he would take a look at the dishes on the table and what kind of meat it was. But Luffy is different. When he eats, he just closes his eyes, opens his mouth and stuffs it into his mouth. Whether it's chicken legs, roasted lamb legs, vegetables, fruits, pastries and delicacies, he doesn't even look at them. He grabs them first. Say it with your own mouth. Where's the meat? Where's the meat? Serve it quickly, there's not enough to eat. Luffy said vaguely with his mouth full. Fortunately, the other villagers around him could probably guess what Luffy meant, and quickly called for people to continue bringing the meat. Cheng Cheng glanced at the crowd and didn't see Usopp. Forget it, ignore him, don't think about it, he must be bragging with a group of children. The content is probably that Eren's group is so powerful, and he is even more powerful. When Eren's group met him, they can only blame their bad luck. Good. As for Nami, Cheng Cheng thought she should go say goodbye to her mother. Drinking until midnight, the stars are quiet and the summer insects and cicadas are chirping. The village is still brightly lit. Many drunk villagers fell asleep on the road with their legs in the air. Sanji came to Zoro to chat with him because all the beauties he was chatting with had gone home, so he smoked. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng glanced at Luffy, who had already eaten and slept, smiled helplessly, stood up with the wineglass, and walked towards Zoro and the others. Zoro, Sanji, we have to leave here as soon as possible. Cheng Cheng came over and said seriously. Zoro thought for a moment and understood what Cheng Cheng meant, and nodded. Yes, as long as we are here for a day, Marine will come back sooner or later. As long as we leave here, Kokoa village will truly return to peace. Sanji slowly blew out a smoke ring. When are you leaving? Let's go early tomorrow morning. You all should have a good rest tonight. After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, He clinked glasses with Zoro, and both of them raised their heads to the sky and drank the whole drink. Sanji suddenly remembered something and said flatteringly, "Brother Cheng Cheng, when will you teach me moonwalk? I used to think that my strength was not strong, but it's okay. But ever since I met you, Brother Cheng Cheng, I feel like a piece of shit." Cheng Cheng glared at Sanji. "Don't forget, you still owe me a meal. Treat me to a meal later, and I will teach you this unique skill." Sanji suddenly became energetic, threw away the cigarette butt in his hand, patted his chest and said, "Brother Cheng Cheng, don't worry, as long as it's what you want to eat, I will satisfy you even if it's a mountain of swords or a sea of fire. Just tell me what you want to eat." Cheng Cheng replied casually, "Spicy hot pot." Sanji on the side was immediately dumbfounded. "What?" Nami's house is a separate house at the entrance of the village. Behind the house is their orange field. Since her mother passed away, she pretended to join Aaron's gang and lurked in Aaron's paradise. However, since then, she rarely returns to this home to live. She only comes back for a few days during the Chinese New Year. That's all. If her sister Nokagao hadn't been living at home, this place would have been covered with dust all year round, and it wouldn't feel like home. Tonight, her sister Nokagao was not at home and should have gone out to attend the banquet. Nami was the only one in the huge villa. She turned on a weak light, sat on the chair alone, and looked at the items at home in a daze. "Belmere, I'm going to be a pirate soon, will you agree?" "What? You don't agree?" Nami looked at the photos on the table alone, murmured softly, raised the corners of her mouth, and stuck out her playful little tongue. "I won't listen to you. From now on, I will be myself." Her eyes reflected the starry sky, full of hope. Advertisement. "Starting tomorrow, I will pursue my dream," she murmured softly. She didn't even know it, and she didn't realize it. She was already bursting into tears. Unknowingly, Nami just lay on the table and fell asleep. The next day, it had just dawned, the morning sun had not yet risen, and there was a slight chill in the air. Under the blow of the sea breeze, Cheng Cheng, Luffy, and Zoro quickly woke up, but because they drank too much last night, their heads were still a little heavy in the morning. Usopp and Sanji have already begun carrying supplies to the melee. These are daily necessities enthusiastically sponsored by the villagers. Luffy accepted it all without any hesitation. If these villagers were grateful and respectful to Luffy and his gang, then they only had awe in their hearts towards Cheng Cheng, the white-haired swordsman. The villagers didn't even know how to repay Cheng Cheng's kindness. At the same time, it was undeniable that they were more afraid of Cheng Cheng. When they were discussing for a long time how to repay Cheng Cheng, a child suddenly interrupted and said, "That white-haired brother likes to eat oranges. I even saw him stealing the oranges from Sister Nami's house that day." So everyone carefully selected a box of oranges overnight and helped carry it to the melee. However, due to fear of Cheng Cheng, he did not dare to mention this matter at all. After a while, the things below were installed. Luffy raised his fist and said, "It's all done, then we're ready to go." Sanji looked left and right, but found no figure of Nami among the villagers below. He asked doubtfully, "Wait, where is Nami? Why didn't she see her?" "Who knows, she might not stop coming. Anyway, her goal has been solved," Zoro muttered. Luffy grinned and said, "She will definitely come, but we don't have to wait for her. After packing up, we will set off." "It's time, Luffy," Zoro reminded calmly. Luffy thought for a moment and said calmly, "Set the ship." The melee slowly started moving and left the shore. Until now, Nami has not been seen. The boat drove farther and farther, and just when everyone thought Nami would not come, a familiar figure quickly ran out of the village. Sanji's eyes instantly turned into hearts, and his whole body regained all its vitality. "Captain Luffy, I'm coming." Chapter 18 Spicy Hotpot from Another World. Somewhere in the East China Sea, on the vast ocean, a faint white mist rises like a dream. On the calm sea, a pirate ship was driving slowly through the water, leaving a long track on the sea after passing through the fog. There was a gentle breeze, and everyone on the melee felt relaxed and comfortable. Cheng Cheng looked at Zoro in front of him and had a sigh in his heart. Zoro's understanding of kendo is really high. He just briefly told Zoro the principle of water breathing, but he didn't expect that Zoro had already started to close his eyes and adjust his breathing. And his breathing rate is slowly moving towards the right path. "Zoro, you need to concentrate a little more. Let all the cells in your body breathe as much as possible. Forget everything, put everything aside, so that you can feel the breath of water with your heart," Cheng Cheng reminded seriously. Road. I could only see Zoro's chest rising and falling together, first hurriedly, then slowly calmed down, and his expression was no longer so painful. Gradually, Cheng Cheng could feel that there was some synchronization between Zoro's breathing rate and the sea. "That's right. This is how it feels, remember it?" Cheng Cheng seized the opportunity and quickly reminded him. "This kind of opportunity is fleeting and cannot be grasped. The next time you think about experiencing this state again, it may not be when." At this moment, Zoro seemed to feel the wonder of this state. Suddenly, he flicked his wrist, opened his eyes and slashed forward with a sword. The aura above the sword tip turned into a fierce sword aura, which shot out and hit the water surface. The water surface exploded instantly, causing a wave of water that was more than 10 meters high. Even Nami, who was lying on the sun lounger reading the newspaper, could feel the boat shaking a little, and almost slipped off the chair when it became unstable. "Zoro, you are so awesome," Luffy said in surprise with his eyes widened. Yes, he is indeed the swordsman on board the Mary," Usopp said calmly. Zoro's pupils shrank and he himself was startled. He didn't expect that his casual blow would be so powerful. Then, his feet went soft and he felt a huge weakness in his body. He felt a little dizzy, like there was no food for the whole day. Cheng Cheng took a step forward and gave Zoro a little support. This is normal. You were in a state of concentrated breathing just now. This state is particularly taxing on the body's functions. Advertisement. In addition, this is your first time to experience the breath of water, and you can use all your strength to strike the sword without fainting. It's already pretty good. Zoro took a step back, bowed deeply to Cheng Cheng, and solemnly said, "Thank you, Master, for teaching me the art of swordsmanship." The moment Zoro bent down, Cheng Cheng quickly walked away and stopped him, saying, "Zoro, we are just communicating between friends. If you keep doing this, I won't be able to be friends with you." Zoro could only stand up helplessly and said seriously, "This kind of supreme swordsmanship is hard to buy with $1 million. I will never forget the kindness of brother Cheng Cheng in teaching me today." Cheng Cheng smiled slightly and didn't care. He knew exactly what kind of person Zoro was. Before he came to this world, he had already regarded Zoro as his idol when he was a student. Sanji, who was cooking in the room, came over with a big iron pot in his hands and cursed. "Did that beast do it just now? Did you know that it almost affected my delicious food?" Usopp quickly pointed at Zoro and said, "It's Zoro. The sword he just slashed out was like throwing a bomb into the sea." ***. When did you become so strong?" Sanji cursed, then looked at Zoro's expression, then looked at Cheng Cheng, and instantly guessed what was going on. Putting down the iron pot, he ran over and hugged Cheng Cheng's thigh. "Brother Cheng Cheng, I prepared the spicy hot pot for you, go and taste it." Cheng Cheng looked down at the shameless Sanji and said helplessly, "Just eat, what are you doing?" As he spoke, he kicked Sanji away. Sanji took off like a kite, spinning several times in the air before landing steadily. At this time, Luffy also discovered the treasure in the iron pot. He stretched his nose and smelled it. He looked intoxicated and shouted, "Sanji, I want to eat whatever food you cook." With that said, Luffy stretched out his arm to lift the lid of the pot. Sanji suddenly became anxious and kicked Luffy's hand away. It hurt so much that Luffy quickly retracted his arm and said resentfully, "Sanji, you're a cheapskate. This pot is for brother Cheng Cheng, just wait a moment," Sanji said, turning his head and looking at Cheng Cheng flatteringly. At this moment, Cheng Cheng was also looking forward to it. He had not eaten his favorite spicy hot pot for a long time. If he could really eat it in this world, it would be a great enjoyment. Cheng Cheng quickly approached and was greeted by a spicy aroma. "Well, that's right, it's a familiar smell, advertisement." After opening the lid of the pot, Cheng Cheng's eyes widened and he couldn't help but said, "F***ku. Luncheon meat, shrimp, ginseng, potatoes, enoki mushrooms, squid, meatballs, everything. This is definitely a luxurious version of spicy hot pot." Cheng Cheng couldn't help but look at Sanji. At first, he just told Sanji the basic ingredients and flavors of the spicy hot pot. "But I didn't expect that this guy could make it taste almost exactly the same. I couldn't find the beef balls you mentioned, so I substituted fish balls," Sanji said with some shame. Cheng Cheng ignored him and quickly took a bite of potato chips into his mouth. "Yeah, delicious. Sanji, you are such a talent, don't worry, just based on this, I will teach you moonwalk this afternoon." Sanji looked at Cheng Cheng who was sincerely happy and laughed loudly. This is the greatest compliment to a cook. Then Luffy and Usopp couldn't help it anymore, and begged and wanted to take a bite. While they were playing and playing, a messenger seagull flew over and dropped a piece of paper like a leaflet. Nami noticed the flyer immediately, walked over and picked it up. After taking a look, his face was shocked and he yelled, it's over, we are dead from now on." After everyone heard Nami screaming in pain, they quickly looked at the flyer. I saw Luffy's laughing profile picture printed on the flyer, and below it were a series of numbers, life or death, 60 million belly. Everyone finally recognized that this was not a flyer, but a wanted order signed by Marine headquarters. Luffy suddenly grinned and laughed, "We finally became wanted criminals, ha ha ha." Suddenly everyone started cheering. Only Nami sat there with a grimace on her face. "You don't realize the seriousness of the matter at all, okay? A pirate who just debuted and offered a bounty of 60 million belly is unprecedented in the Marine headquarters. It seems that we can no longer stay in the East China Sea. We have to go to the Grand Route as soon as possible." Chapter 19 Saving Ace on board the Melee, the fragrance overflows. The pot of spicy hot pot in front of Cheng Cheng was quickly eaten, and he lay comfortably on the chair, patting his belly, and enjoying the hard-won leisure time. Sanji ignored Luffy and Usopp's pleading and quickly went to the kitchen to open a bottle of red wine and handed it to Cheng Cheng. After Cheng Cheng took the wine glass, he said with satisfaction, "Sanji, since you are so sincere, then I will keep my promise and teach you moonwalk now." Sanji was instantly overjoyed and hurriedly went around Cheng Cheng's back to rub his shoulders. The principle of moonwalk is actually very simple. It is through the rapid movement of the feet. As long as it is fast enough, the feet can generate enough air holding force on the air. In this way, you will think that you can fly into the air, Cheng Cheng said leisurely. But this is the secret technique of world government CP9. Even if ordinary people know the principle, it is very difficult to do it. Just like Usopp, you can't do it even if you tell him the principle 100 times. There is still hope with more practice. Sanji, who was massaging Cheng Cheng's shoulders from behind, suddenly stopped moving and said doubtfully, "Brother Cheng Cheng, I have actually figured out what you said these days, but is there any secret in it? Something like that?" "No," Cheng Cheng said firmly. Sanji was dumbfounded and became a little listless. Cheng Cheng said slowly, "If there is really any secret, it must be to practice unremittingly. That's right. It's a good thing I'm still taking a chance. In fact, I should have understood a long time ago that there is no shortcut to something like physical skills. Sanji silently lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and looked sad to the sky. In the next few days, Cheng Cheng, Luffy and the others could hear a pop and the sound of falling into the water almost every time. This is Sanji practicing moonwalk. On the first day, Sanji couldn't even step in the air. But by the third day, he could already step in the air 5 or 6 times, but he couldn't control the direction of the steps or the flying distance. As a result, after taking a few steps, Sanji would fly off the old deck and fall into the sea. Fortunately, Sanji, who grew up in a restaurant on the sea, is not very good at water. After swimming a few laps in the water, he would continue to climb up and practice moonwalk. Half a month later, Sanji still continued to fall into the water, but at this time, he could already step on the air more than 10 times in a row. Later, he simply started practicing in the sea, flying from the sea to the deck on the moonwalk. Several times, he just hit Zoro who was sleeping, and the two of them often fought over this matter. On this day, the melee was still sailing calmly on the sea. Advertisement Luffy was sitting boredly on the bow of the boat watching the scenery. Somehow, he fell in love with Cheng Cheng's sword and walked up curiously. "Brother, your sword is so big, and why is it still made of stone? It won't be chopped into pieces at some point, right?" Luffy said as he reached for the Genhai sword. After Cheng Cheng saw it, he immediately put the Genhai sword behind him. "Luffy, you can't touch this sword." "Why? Big brother is a stingy guy," Luffy complained with a pout. Cheng Cheng wanted to explain it to Luffy, but he didn't expect that Luffy had quietly stretched out his arm and took the Genhai sword in his hand. "Haha, I got brother's sword. You didn't let me take it, so I had to take it." Luffy looked up to the sky and laughed, as happy as a child. Cheng Cheng looked at him, shook his head helplessly, and began to count down in his mind, 1, 2, 3. Just as he finished counting, Luffy's body went limp and he fell on the deck, rolling his eyes and foaming at the mouth. After Zoro and Nami saw it, they hurried over and asked, "Luffy, what happened?" Cheng Cheng pointed to his sea-suppressing sword. "My sea-suppressing sword is entirely made of Hylu stone. This is a special ore in the deep sea. As long as a devil fruit ability user touches it, they will all become weak and lose their original abilities. Moreover, my sea-suppressing sword is different from ordinary sea tower stones. It was made through condensation again. So, Luffy is like this, but don't worry, he will be fine after a while." Nami couldn't help but cursed. "You fool, you deserve it." Then Nami left and continued reading the newspaper, ignoring him. Zoro also reached out for the Genhai sword with some curiosity. Cheng Cheng saw it but did not stop him. He just reminded, "It may be a little heavy." "It's okay," Zoro said casually, and picked up the Genhai sword with confidence. But just after taking the sword, Zoro's expression changed drastically, and he immediately lifted the Genhai sword with both hands. He looked at Cheng Cheng as if he were a pervert. "You call this a bit heavy? It's almost 100 pounds, right?" Cheng Cheng suddenly burst into laughter. There really weren't many things that could make Zoro embarrassed. "However, it is indeed a bit inconvenient for me to carry such a big sword on my back and run around all day long. I wonder when the system will reward me with a treasure that has a storage function. Advertisement after you have the space baby, it will be much more convenient in the future." As Cheng Cheng thought this, the system's voice sounded in his mind. The next mission starts. The check-in location is Loguetown, the execution platform. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. "Uncle, do you need to teleport now?" Close black lens bracket. Cheng Cheng thought for a while, but still refused the system's transmission, thinking that Luffy and the others happened to be going to Loguetown this time, so he would accompany them on the last journey. After arriving at Loguetown and completing the sign-in mission, you must go find Ace as soon as possible. After all, Ace's matter is the most urgent. 3 days later. Cheng Cheng was on the melee and could already see a small island in front of him. The island was densely populated with cities and towns, and there were many ships docked at the port, including many pirate ships flying pirate flags. System. Check the environment to see if the Phantom Beast spirit tree can be cultivated. "Okay, Uncle." Close black lens bracket. The system is being tested. The test failed and the cultivation conditions were not met. Close black lens bracket. Cheng Cheng sighed and failed again as expected. He looked at his younger brother Luffy and said, "Brother, let's say goodbye here. After I arrive in Loguetown, it's time to find Ace." "Brother, will you come back after meeting Ace? Can you stay on my merry?" Luffy muttered, rubbing his hands. Cheng Cheng patted Luffy on the shoulder and said solemnly, "After I have fulfilled my dream, big brother, I will definitely come to the boat to accompany you again." "Brother, what is your dream?" Luffy asked happily. Cheng Cheng was silent. He didn't know what to say at this moment. In his previous life, when he saw the episode where Ace died, he was so angry that he picked up his shoes on the ground and threw them at the TV. So when he first came to this world, there was only one thing on his mind. Become stronger and do whatever it takes to save Ace in the war on top. Chapter 20 Smoker. After Cheng Cheng said goodbye to everyone, he stepped on Moonwalk and jumped into the air. "Somersault cloud!" Cheng Cheng shouted to the sky. From the distant sky, a golden cloud dragged an extremely long trajectory and flew over quickly. In an instant, he was stepped on by Cheng Cheng. Then, under the watchful eyes of Luffy and the others, they took the lead and flew to Loguetown. Luffy couldn't help but said, "It's so handsome. I wish Big Brother could give me Somersault Cloud anytime." "Yeah, I really wanted to." Nami on the side also said reluctantly. She has been flying around on Somersault Clouds these days. Zoro stood up and stretched, and said helplessly, "Let's enter Loguetown quickly. I have to go to the weapons store to buy 2 more knives. Otherwise, I am a 3-sword swordsman but only have 1 sword. This what's it called?" At the same time, Loguetown, Marine Branch. A receptionist's face changed drastically after seeing the message sent from the fax machine in front of him, and he hurriedly left the information room. With a bang, a room on the top floor of the Marine Branch was pushed open. All he could see was the dark room filled with smoke, and he couldn't see anything. He could only endure the pungent smell of cigar smoke and said hurriedly, "Colonel Smoker, something serious is going to happen. There is news from the headquarters that Monkey D. Luffy and his gang are heading to Loguetown. He is a pirate with a bounty of 60 million when he debuted. The headquarters requires you to catch him immediately." A disdainful voice came from the darkness. "Is your debut worth 60 million? That's really high. He defeated Chief Creek and Aaron in the East China Sea. This is definitely a very vicious pirate. Colonel Smoker, you must not take it lightly," the receptionist quickly explained. "And we also received reliable news. It is said that when they were in Kokoa village, someone from the Straw Hats sank 3 marine battleships with 1 strike. However, we are still not sure whether the person who did it was Luffy himself." The voice in the darkness became more and more disdainful. "Why are you making such a fuss? How do I usually teach you about trivial matters? You must remain calm when encountering big things, do you understand?" After hearing Colonel Smoker's calm voice, the receptionist seemed to calm down and saluted a military salute. "Yes, Colonel Smoker, I'm impatient." Smoker stood up slowly in the darkness and opened the window on the side. Advertisement. A ray of sunlight immediately shone in through the window, and the thick smoke in the room began to spread out along the window. The shirtless Smoker had a ferocious look on his face and said disdainfully, "Since coming to Loguetown, no pirate has been able to escape from my grasp. Follow me, let's go find out how much he weighs." At this time, the smoke also dissipated quickly, and the dark room gradually became brighter. "Ah, Colonel Smoker, behind you," the receptionist said in horror, pointing to the sofa behind Smoker, his arms trembling constantly, almost losing his balance. He knew that no one else was allowed to enter Colonel Smoker's room. This was almost an iron rule in their branch. Besides, except for Colonel Smoker himself, no one else could stay in this room. "Trash, what did I just tell you? Do you always have to be calm when faced with big things? Are you taking it for granted?" Smoker sighed, hating that iron cannot make steel. But when he turned around to look, he couldn't help but shrink his pupils. "I only saw a handsome white-haired young man, sitting on the sofa and looking at him with a smile. This young man was holding a huge stone sword in his hands." "Cheng Cheng, when did you come?" Smoker lit 2 more cigars, held them in his mouth, and then said to the shocked receptionist, "Get out first, you have nothing to do here." The receptionist then hurriedly walked out as if he was on the receiving end of an amnesty. Before leaving, he did not forget to close the door. Cheng Cheng smiled and said, "I've been here for a while, but brother Smoker, I have to tell you, smoking is harmful to your health. You boy, it seems that since you left the Marine headquarters, your strength has become a lot stronger. You can even sit next to me without me noticing," Smoker said while blowing smoke rings. "It's not bad, maybe a little better than you," Cheng Cheng said lazily. Smoker laughed and cursed. "You brat, tell me, if anything happens, with your temper, you will never come to me." "Brother Smoker, I don't have anything else to do. It's been so long since I last saw you. How about we 2 brothers have a good drink today? We'll keep you drunk until we get drunk," Cheng Cheng said with a smile. When he came to the Marine headquarters, he was often taken care of by Smoker. Those soldiers who mocked him for practicing swordplay like a fool, Smoker even beat everyone he saw. Therefore, Cheng Cheng did not want to take action against Smoker unless it was absolutely necessary. Smoker said nothing, just looked at Cheng Cheng with squinted eyes and smoked his cigar quietly. After a while, he said, "Are you here for the Straw Hat Boys?" Advertisement. Cheng Cheng stretched out his thumb and praised sincerely, "Brother Smoker is still insightful and clever. What kind of bullshit magical plan?" Smoker took a sip, and I said disdainfully, "You are a martial arts idiot. Why do you ask me to drink for no reason? Don't think I don't know. When you were at the Marine headquarters, you spent almost all your time practicing swordsmanship. You wish you could practice swordsmanship in your dreams when you go to bed. So I'm not surprised that you are as strong as you are today. Everyone in the Marine headquarters, even Dasky who thinks highly of you, still looks down on you." Cheng Cheng smiled slightly awkwardly and explained, "Straw Hat Luffy is my younger brother." At this time, even Smoker couldn't help being surprised, and suddenly said, "No wonder you want to leave Marine. It turns out you were going to join your brother." "But that's not right. Isn't your grandfather a hero, Garp? So is Luffy's grandfather?" Cheng Cheng nodded. "You 2 grandsons have had enough." Smoker took a deep breath of his cigar and picked up the 10 hands placed on the table. "We'll decide whether we can drink this meal." Cheng Cheng also mentioned Genhai's sword, stood up and said helplessly, "I knew there was no way to escape." After the 2 of them finished speaking, they left the room together. After Cheng Cheng pushed the gate of opening, he saw that Marine was already surrounded by Marine in the corridor outside the door. Smoker shouted angrily, "Get out of here, lousy." The Marines then dispersed as ordered. The 2 walked out of the Marine branch and soon arrived at an empty beach by the sea. Cheng Cheng said with a smile, "Brother Smoker, this is it? Take action. Let me see what you are really capable of." Smoker threw away the cigar and said coldly. 10 minutes later, Cheng Cheng carried the unconscious Smoker on his back and walked slowly towards the nearest tavern on the beach. Chapter 21 Honesty Loguetown is much larger than Kokoa village. There are many high-rise buildings and various shops. You can buy almost anything you can think of here. The streets were full of people and lively. Pedestrians of all kinds were walking around, including locals doing business, but more often than not, there were pirates in groups with fierce looks on their faces. It's just because Colonel Smoker is here that the pirates hide their identities secretly and don't dare to show off too much. Cheng Cheng was walking on the street carrying the unconscious Smoker on his back. Along the way, when everyone on the street met him, they would automatically move aside to make way for Cheng Cheng. I only heard people being shocked and talking. Who is the young man with white hair? Why are you carrying Colonel Smoker on your back? And it looks like Colonel Smoker is injured. How is it possible? Colonel Smoker is so powerful. Who can hurt him? Have you forgotten which pirate has been let go since Colonel Smoker came to guard Loguetown 2 years ago? When the common people saw Smoker like this, they clenched their hands and their faces were full of worry. When the pirates with swords saw Cheng Cheng, their eyes turned fierce and they looked Cheng Cheng up and down. Guys, have you seen that? The Smoker, who is usually more arrogant and domineering than us, is obviously seriously injured in this state. A fat pirate said softly. Another pirate has secretly grasped the meteor hammer in his hand. No, brother, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us to become famous. If we catch the Smoker and kill him, our bounty will exceed at least tens of millions of bellaries. Chief, that white-haired boy with oily hair and pink face looks like an incompetent intern in the Marine Corps, so leave it to me to deal with him. When the pirate saw his elder brother nodding in agreement, his heart suddenly became hot. He thought that he would soon become a great pirate respected by thousands of people, and he could no longer hold back the heat in his heart. Bah! He yelled angrily and jumped directly into the middle of the road, blocking Cheng Cheng's way. White-haired boy. Grandpa will give you 3 seconds to hand over the Smoker, otherwise, Grandpa's meteor hammer will smash you into a meat pie. Cheng Cheng was currently planning his future plans in his mind when he suddenly saw a 2-meter-tall man holding a meteor hammer blocking the road. He looked at the pirate in front of him and felt a sigh of relief in his heart. Advertisement good guy. If this person were placed on an ancient battlefield, he would definitely be an unparalleled general with 1,000 enemies, but it's a pity that you met me. The strong man blocking the road saw that the boy in front of him seemed to be deaf and did not hear his own words. He just kept walking forward with his eyes wide open and stepped hard on the ground with his right foot, causing the bluestone slab under his feet to crack instantly. Boy, put the person off your back. Everyone watching around was shocked and began to worry about this handsome young man. When the pirate saw Cheng Cheng, he still didn't speak and was about to walk past him. He couldn't help but blush slightly. His elder brother and a group of brothers were watching. Uncontrollably angry, he swung the meteor hammer with both hands and slammed it towards Cheng Cheng's head. Among the onlookers, the timid women screamed in fright, while the children accompanied by their parents quickly covered their eyes. The next moment, everyone was dumbfounded. I only saw the white-haired young man disappearing out of thin air. When everyone saw his figure again, he had already bypassed the strong man and appeared in front of the strong man like a ghost. On the contrary, the strong man used too much force and failed. The meteor hammer hit his thigh with fierce inertia. He sat on the ground holding his thigh and cried. Cheng Cheng, who was still walking leisurely ahead, had a smile on his lips. A stupid pirate like you can't even get hot food even if you eat shit. At this time, the pirates behind them had also realized that the white-haired boy was definitely a strong man they could not afford to offend. The pirate who was called the leader did not check the strong man's injury. Instead, he immediately bowed to Cheng Cheng's back. It's not that he is polite, but he knows that according to the rules of the world, these people would have been beaten to death long ago for their behavior just now. The corners of Cheng Cheng's lips curled up, a bit interesting. No wonder he could be the eldest brother among the group of idiots. At this time, a little girl who looked about 5 or 6 years old ran over happily eating ice cream. Suddenly, she lost her footing and tripped over the strong man's meteor hammer. Then she stumbled and fell, hitting the calf of the big pirate brother. Milky white ice cream instantly appeared on the pirate brother's pants. The little girl immediately looked at the pirate leader in horror and burst into tears. Ice cream, my ice cream. Advertisement. The pirate leader, who was sincerely worshipping the strong man, turned around and saw that his legs were covered with ice cream, and his eyes suddenly turned cold. Behind the little girl, the middle-aged man kept mumbling in a panic. I'm sorry, I will give you a new pair of pants right away. After hearing the apology from the man behind him, the pirate leader's expression not only did not soften, but became even colder. On the originally lively streets, there was a cool breeze for a while. Cheng Cheng, who had already walked 50 meters away, was slightly startled, stopped, and bent down to place Colonel Smoker on the wooden chair aside. Everyone around them felt cold. They knew that this little girl was finished. Just now, none of them thought that the white-haired young man was a strong man, but this time, the little girl had absolutely no chance of surviving. The middle-aged man behind him seemed to sense something, and knelt on the ground with a thud, kowtowing repeatedly. I'm sorry, please spare my daughter. I'm willing to pay compensation, no matter how much it takes. The pirate leader didn't even look at the man who was kneeling down to beg for mercy. He snorted coldly and clapped a big hand in the air, causing a faint sound of breaking wind. In the eyes of the little girl, the originally blue sky suddenly turned dark, and the whole world became dark. At the critical moment, a dazzling blue sword light flashed past. The entire arm of the pirate leader was cut off and completely separated from his body. Oh, my hand. The little girl's hair swayed slightly as if being blown by the breeze. She did not feel the pain she imagined, but instead felt endless warmth. She carefully opened her eyes. She only saw an angel-like white-haired brother holding her in his arms. After Cheng Cheng came to the kneeling middle-aged man, he slowly handed the little girl to him. The middle-aged man said nothing, kowtowed 3 times, picked up the little girl and ran away from here. The little girl struggled hard in her father's arms. Big brother, what is your name? My name is Feifei. I will go find you when I grow up. Cheng Cheng smiled and waved to the little girl. My name is Cheng Cheng. I promise you a lot of money. Chapter 22 Meeting an old friend by chance. Cheng Cheng put away the long and narrow sunblade and straddled it on his waist again. He turned his head and looked at the miserable pirate leader with a smile. Are you convinced? The pirate leader didn't even dare to scream at this moment, he just nodded repeatedly. Everyone was shocked to see that the pirates who used to be extremely vicious in the past turned out to be so talkative today. Not to mention cutting off one of their arms, even looking at them one more time might lead to death for oneself. Although there is Marine Colonel Smoker guarding the town, the security of Roger Town has improved many times. In the past 2 years, few pirates have committed crimes in public on the streets. However, it is only very few, doesn't mean there isn't any at all. After those pirates finished killing people, they immediately fled away from here. Even Colonel Smoker was helpless. There was silence on the entire street. Everyone's eyes were focused on the white-haired swordsman at this moment. Suddenly, among the crowd, I don't know who was the first to shout. White-haired swordsman, well done. Suddenly, the whole street burst into cheers. This man is so handsome and looks upright, he must be a Marine. What a nice young man. If I had a daughter, I would really like to introduce him to her. If there were more people like this young man, we ordinary people would have nothing to fear. Cheng Cheng didn't care about everyone's comments. When he walked to the pirate leader, he said softly, "Get away from this island immediately. If I meet you again next time, you will understand." The pirate leader's expression changed drastically, and he didn't care about the wounds on his body. He picked up the severed arm and quickly fled with a group of boys. Cheng Cheng raised the corners of his mouth and smiled slightly. Advertisement sure enough, no matter who you talk to, you need strong strength. He walked to Smoker, carried him on his back again, looked up and saw a tavern not far away. Not bad, that's it. After walking into the tavern and sitting down, Cheng Cheng immediately had several bottles of wine brought to him. After the others noticed that the white-haired swordsman was carrying Colonel Smoker, they didn't dare to say a word, and the voice in the entire tavern suddenly became muffled. After a while, they just noticed that Smoker was sleeping and didn't do anything else, so they started drinking with their companions again with confidence. Cheng Cheng didn't look at other people's eyes at all, and just drank by himself. Smoker, tell me, why don't we have a nice drink together? You still have to fight with me, now it's okay, I can only drink wine while you sleep on your stomach. But don't worry, as long as today passes and Luffy leaves here, I will let you go back. The next moment, the owner of the tavern was suddenly pushed away forcefully. Everyone unconsciously looked towards the door. The person who came was a girl who looked to be about 18 years old. She was tall, wearing a beach short-sleeved shirt, beautiful face, wearing a pair of pink glasses, and holding a long white knife in her left hand. There is a hint of edge in her elegant and quiet aura. This kind of woman's temptation is fatal to any man. A pirate who drank too much saw a beauty and wanted to go over and strike up a conversation. Just as he was about to speak, he was pushed down on the table by his companion. You're crazy. We usually avoid this woman when we see her, let alone Colonel Smoker here today. If you want to die, don't take us with you. The pirate who was in so much pain only came to his senses after hearing the word Smoker. She quickly glanced around the inside of the tavern, and soon her eyes locked on a person, Cheng Cheng. After Cheng Cheng heard the voice, he turned around and looked slightly dumbfounded. Dasky? Are you not at the Marine headquarters now? Sure enough, it's you. When Dasky saw Cheng Cheng, he immediately smiled and walked over quickly and sat down. Since you left, I was transferred out not long ago and have been following Colonel Smoker. After Dasky sat down, he discovered Colonel Smoker, who was lying on the table sleeping like a dead pig. His face changed slightly, and he looked at Cheng Cheng with questioning eyes. It's okay, we haven't seen each other for a long time. We just had a drink here. Unexpectedly, the smoker fainted after just one bottle. Cheng Cheng explained with a smile, what a trick, it's useless. Advertisement. Dasky looked at Cheng Cheng suspiciously. She stretched out her slender fingers and gently placed them on Colonel Smoker's wrist. She frowned slightly, but still didn't say anything more. Cheng Cheng poured Dasky a glass of wine calmly, then took a sip himself and asked softly, how did you find this place? Dasky blushed slightly at first, then started to become murderous, and said angrily, forget it, after I finished training and returned to the Marine headquarters, someone told me that Colonel Smoker went out with a white-haired swordsman. I guessed it at that time, it might be you. Then when I went to look for you on the street, I didn't expect that I met a green-haired pervert who was following me. At this point, Dasky picked up the wine glass and took a long sip before saying in a depressed tone, the key is that this pervert's swordsmanship is pretty good, even better than mine, and then I just thought of leaving him alone. After I find you, I'll ask you to help me teach him a lesson. Cheng Cheng suddenly burst into laughter. Did the green-haired pervert you were talking about also wear 3 gold earrings in his left ear? How did you know? Dasky asked with wide eyes. Cheng Chengdong wanted to explain. But he saw Dasky stand up suddenly, slam the table, look at the door angrily and curse. Pervert, if you dare to follow me again, believe it or not, I will arrest you now. Zoro, who was at the door now, looked embarrassed, panicked, and subconsciously wanted to leave. He was an upright person who couldn't lie, and he couldn't tell the lie that he was just here for a drink. Just when he glanced at it, he saw a familiar figure again, and he hurriedly shouted, "Brother Cheng Cheng." Dasky was stunned. The three of them just looked at each other, looking at each other. Cheng Cheng gently held Dasky's wrist and signaled her not to be impulsive. Then he invited Zoro to sit over and said, "He is the bounty hunter Nanoroa Zoro, a good friend of mine." Then without waiting for Zoro to say anything, he continued, "This is my friend Dasky who grew up together at the Marine headquarters. Zoro, didn't you admit the wrong person?" As he spoke, Cheng Cheng specially emphasized the word Marine. After Zoro heard what Cheng Cheng said, he gave up his worries and bowed to Dasky. "I'm extremely sorry, I recognized the wrong person." Dasky was always a talkative person, but when she saw Zoro apologizing so sincerely, she felt a little embarrassed. To her, Zoro just followed her and didn't do anything excessive to her. She was the first to take action in the previous competition. During their fight, Dasky could clearly feel that Zoro had been deliberately tolerant of her. But the more this happened, the more resentful Dasky felt. Chapter 23 Execution Platform. Zoro hurriedly drank a glass of wine with an embarrassed look and quickly left the tavern, saying that he was going to the weapons store to buy a weapon. Cheng Cheng did not persuade him to stay. His mission today was to keep an eye on Colonel Smoker so that Luffy would not be in danger. He continued to pour a glass of wine and talk to Dasky in front of him. When Zoro was young, she had a senior sister named Kuina. After listening to Cheng Cheng's story, Dasky's eyes became red without even realizing it, and tears flowed down her cheeks without even realizing it. She is also a woman and a swordsman herself. She deeply knows how much suffering a girl will suffer if she wants to become a swordsman. It can be said that she empathizes with Kuina's experience. "Are we really similar?" Dasky asked softly. Cheng Cheng nodded slightly, answering Dasky's question. After Dasky got the answer, he picked up Sugar, turned around and left the tavern without looking back. Cheng Cheng asked doubtfully, "Is there something urgent?" "I want to see that man again." After finishing speaking, Dasky opened the door and left. Cheng Cheng took a dull sip of wine and forgot to tell you that Zoro is now a pirate. "Brother Zoro, just ask for your blessings." Turning to look at Smoker, who was still unconscious, Cheng Cheng stretched out his hand, and a voluptuous middle-aged woman quickly came up to her, twisting her waist and legs for the eyes of the drunkards and perverts around her. Anyone who can open a tavern in such a prosperous area is a refined person. He knows the world best and knows better than anyone else who can and cannot be offended. Therefore, from the moment Cheng Cheng entered the tavern proprietress had been paying attention to his activities. "This young guest, do you have any orders?" Cheng Cheng glanced at Smoker beside him and asked, "Do you know him?" Because the lady boss couldn't figure out the temper of the white-haired swordsman, she didn't dare to do anything unnecessary and just nodded honestly. "Very good." Advertisement. After Cheng Cheng stood up, he placed 2,000 Baileys on the table. "If he wakes up and wants to drink, let him drink more. One more thing, let me tell you, Colonel Smoker is in a bad mood today and doesn't want anything else. If anything disturbs him, it is best to arrange a quiet room for him. So, if a Marine comes to see him, do you know what to do?" The landlady nodded, looked at the white-haired boy boldly, and took the opportunity to say, "I don't know anything, I didn't see anything." After finally seeing the white-haired boy's face, the landlady finally summoned up the courage and said, "This handsome young man, I wonder if you like to eat meat or vegetarian food?" Cheng Chengyu took out 2,000 Baileys and put them on the table. He turned a blind eye to the landlady's seductive eyes, but his eyes stayed on her undulating peaks. "I like to eat steamed buns." After saying that, Cheng Cheng picked up the Zhenhai sword, opened the door and left. The landlady was left with a disappointed look on her face. The landlady bit her lips indignantly, causing the waves in her chest to surge even more. "Am I getting old?" The other drunkards watching this scene couldn't help but start drooling. The next moment, the corners of the boss's mouth turned up, revealing a charming smile, and she instantly regained her confidence. "Because, the handsome white-haired boy is back again." The landlady only saw the young man coming to Smoker, patting him gently on the back twice, and then turned around and left. From the beginning to the end, he never looked at her again. Then she seemed to have lost her soul and returned to the bar in a daze, feeling depressed. After Cheng Cheng went out for the second time, he finally felt relieved. He was worried that Smoker would wake up in the middle, so he went back and touched up the knife on his back to at least ensure that Smoker could sleep until tonight. As for Cheng Cheng himself, after going out and asking about the location of the execution platform, he walked towards it. He is still looking forward to the system's rewards. After all, there will be something good every time. Now for him, the fastest way to improve his strength is not to practice, but to constantly check in. Only by completing more system tasks can he become stronger. If he can't even reach the heights of 4 emperors when the war comes, how can he talk about saving Ace? But at the same time, Cheng Cheng is not so anxious. After all, Ace has not been caught by Marine yet, and there is still room for maneuver. If his memory was correct, Ace would meet Luffy in Alabasta, and he would be waiting there. Even if he was tied up, he would stop Ace from chasing Teach. All of them, even Whitebeard, underestimated Teach. Advertisement. In Cheng Cheng's view, Teach, who has the ability to swallow the dark fruit, is the one who poses the greatest threat. Others include Red Hair, Kaido, and Dragon. No matter how strong they are, there is always a limit. But Teach is different. His dark fruit can swallow 3 kinds of fruits. Each time he swallows a fruit, his ability will be doubled. He gave Cheng Cheng the feeling that the male protagonist in other novels had traveled through time and then dominated the world to realize his dream. Thinking of this, Cheng Cheng couldn't help but laugh at himself and talked about cheating. He and his system are the biggest bugs in themselves. Cheng Cheng walked towards the location of the execution platform, which was easy to find. After a while, he saw the execution platform standing in the middle of the square. On the square, there was a lot of people and excitement. There are toys selling on the street, and there are also some children playing. Cheng Cheng walked forward. Brother system, please give me something good this time. It's best to have something that will allow me to fly up on the spot after eating it, and have the combat power to challenge the 4 emperors. While praying in his heart, he had already arrived under the execution platform. He raised his head and glanced at the height of the execution platform, jumped up, stepped on the moonwalk a few times in the air, and stood on the execution platform easily. Other people in the square were not surprised by Cheng Cheng's behavior. After all, this was the place where One Piece died. In the beginning, almost everyone stood up to take a look every day. But as time goes by, people slowly lose interest in this execution platform and look at it the same as they look at ordinary buildings. Cheng Cheng, who was standing on the execution platform, frowned slightly. This execution platform was the sign in place, right? The place was less than 2 square meters, and there was nothing else except a knife. But why doesn't the system prompt that the sign-in is successful? Cheng Cheng held his chin, his eyes flickering. Suddenly, he saw the knife, and thought of the scene of Roger's death in One Piece, and his eyes lit up. He knelt down, put his head on the knife, closed his eyes and felt everything around him. Only then did everyone in the square notice him, and began to worry about this handsome young man. Cheng Cheng slowly opened his eyes again. In a daze, I seemed to see that the square in front was crowded with people, but it was unusually quiet. Everyone's eyes were on One Piece Roger. The moment One Piece Roger died, his face still had a scornful smile on his face. Do you want my treasures? I've put them all there, go and find them. Chapter 24 The Wind Rises. Congratulations to the uncle for completing the execution platform sign-in task. Close black lens bracket. Reward item. Space ring. Close black lens bracket. In this dreamlike moment, the cold voice of the system dragged Cheng Cheng's thoughts back to reality. The quiet sea of people in front of them disappeared and turned into a lively and peaceful scattered crowd. Looking down at his palm, a dark ring had quietly appeared. Is this a space ring? The system guy really understands me. He put the ring on his finger and gently stroked the surface of the ring with his fingers. It was dark in color and had no lines, but it felt like a light resistance, a bit like a frosted texture. After closing his eyes, he could feel that the space inside the ring was very large, as big as a basketball court. In the center, there was a pile of banknotes like a hill. Cheng Cheng was slightly startled. He didn't expect there would be an unexpected gain. He roughly estimated that it would be at least 100 million belly. Hey, come down quickly, kid, it's dangerous up there. An old lady with a kind face raised her head and shouted to Cheng Cheng above. That knife is very dangerous, be careful not to get hurt. Cheng Cheng smiled brightly and said, I know, then jumped up and landed firmly on the ground. Then, with a thought in his mind, the huge Genhai sword was put into the space ring and disappeared, leaving only the blue sunblade at his waist. After wandering around the square and finding a less conspicuous position, he sat down and began to close his eyes and relax, not caring about worldly affairs. After a while, Luffy came to the execution platform with excitement on his face. He looked up at the execution platform that he had longed for, and sighed. Finally found this place. Is this the place where One Piece Roger died? It has been 22 years, and I must take a look at the scenery I have seen at One Piece. Gong Meng Nong. Luffy swung his arms above his head, stretched his arms, grabbed the execution platform, and flew up. Advertisement. Everyone in the square looked at each other with very confused expressions. What's going on today? In the past, no one would stand on the execution platform to play, but today is better. Just after a while, 2 people came up. Can you really see something different up there? Just when everyone was very surprised, people in black were pouring in from all directions in the square unknowingly. After some highly vigilant people discovered this group of unknown people, they began to quietly retreat away from the square. Soon, hundreds of men in black gathered under the execution platform and surrounded the entire execution platform. The man in black at the head suddenly raised his hand, tore off the black cloth on his body, and shouted angrily, Monkey D. Luffy, today is the day you die. Luffy followed the sound and looked down and saw a man wearing a clown costume, an orange cape and a big red nose. He looked at such a familiar person, but he couldn't remember his name. After trying hard to think for a long time, Luffy suddenly realized, it's you, Captain Trash. What a trash captain, I am the captain of the Buggy Pirates, Buggy the Clown. Buggy shouted angrily. When people around heard that it was Buggy the Clown, they instantly panicked. It's the Buggy Pirates, run away. For a moment, everyone was trying their best to escape from the square. The whole square turned into a mess, women screamed loudly, and the children who were playing were held in the arms of their parents. No one is allowed to leave. The clown Buggy shouted angrily, and the other men in black robes also took off their clothes at this moment, took out their pistols, and pointed them at those who were trying to escape. The crowd in the square fell silent instantly, and no one dared to move. Buggy the Clown nodded with satisfaction, stretched out his arms, and said loudly, My dear people, today I will let you watch a gorgeous execution. What? Luffy, who was full of doubts, was about to say something when his body sank and he was pushed down on the execution platform, with his neck being stuck tightly by a wooden board. Behind him, A tall man appeared at some point, wearing a blue and white plaid scarf around his neck, and his eyes were extremely cold. He sat on the wooden board, pressing Luffy down so that he couldn't move at all. Long time no see, rubber boy, Nanoro Zoro, is he okay? Luffy rolled his eyes, he couldn't remember who this person was. Advertisement. He twisted his neck and struggled hard to get out of here, but no matter how hard he tried, the wooden board around Kaz's neck remained motionless. Buddy the Clown looked up to the sky and laughed. How about Straw Hat Boy, isn't it an honor to die in the same place as One Piece Roger? Suddenly, it was clear that the sky was clear, but there was thunder and strong winds. The icy cold wind rose from the sea, making people in the square shiver uncontrollably. Nami, who had just finished buying supplies on the street, took a look at the unusual weather and said to Zoro and Usopp, "We have to get out of here quickly, the storm is coming soon." Cheng Cheng, who was still concentrating with his eyes closed, felt the unusual changes in pressure in the air, raised the corners of his mouth, and finally waited for you. He opened his eyes and looked at the sky in the distance, seeing a dark cloud covering the sky quietly swallowing the clear sky. In the blink of an eye, the entire Loguetown had turned dark. As for the others, they are shrouded in fear of Buddy the Clown, and do not feel anything unusual about the coming storm. The clown Buddy jumped up to the execution platform and put a knife on Luffy's neck. "Straw Hat Boy, you are going to die soon, but do you have any last words?" Luffy, who struggled for a long time but couldn't break free, said with a grieved face, "I'm sorry, please save me, I won't dare next time." Buddy looked at Luffy like an idiot, dumbfounded. "I'm here to kill you, you want me to save you?" Everyone looked at the young man wearing a straw hat on the execution platform, and they all felt sorry for him. He had offended someone, but he had offended the clown Buddy. Now he was caught by Buddy, and he was definitely dead now. Buddy the Clown raised the knife and sighed. "Forget it, no matter what you say, you are going to die today anyway." Looking at the sea of people in front of him, Luffy was silent for a moment. Am I really going to die here today? 22 years ago, before One Piece Roger died, the scene he saw should be like this, right? For a moment, the figures of Zoro, Nami, Usopp, Sanji, and friends appeared in his mind one by one. He thought of the scene of meeting his friends and the experience of shared adventures. He thought of his three sworn brothers when he was a child, Cheng Cheng, Sabo, and Ace, and imagined future adventures with his brothers. Finally, he gently touched the straw hat on his head, thinking of the man who gave him the straw hat. Suddenly, Luffy clenched his fists and shouted out the oath he had made in front of that man. "I am a man who wants to be One Piece." Chapter 25 Recruitment. Above the square, there was silence. The whole atmosphere was gloomy and terrifying. There were already dark clouds in the sky. It was still noon, and now it looked like night. People looked at each other with frightened expressions. Some timid people had sweat dripping from their foreheads and their legs and feet were numb. What did he just say? One Piece? Don't he know that One Piece Roger died in Loguetown? He really didn't want his life. Buddy the Clown chuckled and said, "Childish, but now that you've said it, go to hell." He raised the knife, intending to chop off Luffy's head. Just a loud shout came from the square, "Buddy, stop." Buddy turned around and looked over, seeing Zoro and Sanji appearing in the distance, and sneered. "It's the bounty hunter Zoro, but even you today are too late to save Luffy." Without Buddy's orders, the rest of the Buddy pirates had already charged towards Zoro and Sanji. "You came just in time. Today I will let you two watch how your captain died under my sword." Zoro looked anxious. Buddy was right, the distance was too far, even he might not be able to make it in time. Suddenly, Zoro thought of a person. As long as he was here, he would definitely be able to save Luffy. He looked up to the sky and shouted, "Brother Cheng Cheng, come out quickly, Luffy is going to die." At this time, Sanji also suddenly realized, and started shouting along with Zoro. The sound was so loud that everyone in the square could hear it clearly. "Who is Cheng Cheng? Is this person very powerful? I've never heard of this person. Is he a new member of the Straw Hats?" In the tall building in the distance, Dusky and Marine had already deployed snipers, preparing to capture the Buddy pirates once Luffy died. But at this time, when she heard Zoro shouting Cheng Cheng's name, she immediately ordered the Marine next to her. "Everyone put down their guns first and wait to see the situation. No one is allowed to shoot without my order." Cheng Cheng, who was sitting in the corner, looked calm and had no intention of taking action. As someone who knew all the subsequent scripts, Cheng Cheng was extremely certain that Luffy would not die here, at least not today. He could feel a strange aura in Loguetown at this moment, and coupled with the weird weather, he knew that the man he was waiting for had already appeared. Advertisement: as long as this man is on the island, let alone the clown Buddy who wants to kill Luffy, even if a strong man of the 4 Emperors level comes, Luffy will not die like Amaterasu. On the execution platform, the clown Buddy ignored Zoro and the others shouting, raised his knife, laughed wantonly, and then suddenly dropped the knife. At this time, Luffy stopped struggling. He looked at Zoro and Sanji who were still fighting, grinned and said, "Zoro, Sanji, Nami, Usopp, I'm sorry. I'm dying." At the critical moment, there was lightning and thunder. The whole dark sky suddenly became bright. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky and hit the tip of Buddy the Clown's knife. Everyone's movements stopped, and everyone stared at this scene in disbelief. Buddy, the Clown, fainted instantly, and the entire execution platform collapsed instantly, bursting into flames. Cheng Cheng was also dumbfounded. Long was probably the only one in the world who could save his son like this. Then he immediately closed his eyes and began to sense the dragon's breath. He had to see this man. If he missed this time, it would be difficult to meet him again in the future. With his whole body concentrated, Cheng Cheng suddenly opened his eyes and locked a position, then quickly chased in that direction. Luffy picked up the straw hat that fell on the ground and said with a happy smile, "I'm not dead, ha ha ha, I made a lot of money today." Sanji said in shock, "Zoro, do you believe in God?" "Stop talking nonsense, let's get out of here quickly," Zoro said seriously. Now on top of a tall building. "Sergeant, the straw hats are leaving," a marine urged. Even if Dasky deliberately delayed, but now the situation was over, he couldn't just watch. "Rush, but tell them to go down and don't shoot. There are too many people here. Be careful of hurting civilians." After hearing the order, all marines surged out like a tide. Cheng Cheng locked Long's location and immediately followed him to a secluded street. At this moment, it was raining heavily in the sky, and the rainwater on the street had begun to flow along the road. Advertisement soon, he saw the man in grey robe in front of him. The man in grey stood so straight in the heavy rain. It seemed that no matter how heavy the wind and rain were, it could not have any impact on this man. Cheng Cheng also slowed down at this moment. Could it be that he also noticed me? The man in grey turned his head at this moment, looked at Cheng Cheng, and seemed to be saying to himself, "The will inherited by the times, the changes in the world, and everyone's dreams are unstoppable. As long as people don't stop pursuing their dreams, freedom will come sooner or later." After saying that, the figure of the man in grey suddenly disappeared in front of his eyes. Cheng Cheng suddenly felt a huge sense of oppression, and the heavy air almost made him breathless. With a thought, Zhenhai's sword was extracted from the space ring and held tightly in his hand. Cheng Cheng held the sun sword in his left hand and lifted the Zhenhai sword in his right hand. He adjusted his breathing rate and instantly started water breathing. Suddenly, the huge sense of oppression suddenly increased, and the man in grey robe appeared in front of him. The man in grey robe took a step forward and punched out, as if all the power in the world had gathered on his fist. Cheng Cheng felt fierce in his heart and advanced instead of retreating. The moment he raised the Zhenhai sword, it turned into pitch black color, and it slashed down with the majestic heavy rain from top to bottom. Armed hockey breath of water cut the sea. In the heavy rain, the man in grey's fist collided with the Zhenhai sword. The raindrops falling in the air seemed to stop at this moment. Centered on the two people, all the rainwater within a radius of 100 meters was evaporated at this moment. On the street, the windows of the buildings on both sides shattered. Cheng Cheng stepped back continuously and stopped after dozens of steps. His whole arm was numb from the shock. So strong. This seemingly simple sword is actually the result of 10 years of hard training by Cheng Cheng. In the 10 years at the Marine headquarters, he had only practiced 2 moves day and night. Coupled with the blessing of armed color domineering and water breathing, he was still very confident. But he didn't expect that he would still be a little weak when facing a master like Long. The man in grey robe remained as steady as Mount Tai. As the electric light flashed, the man in grey robe showed an appreciative smile. "Cheng Cheng, I didn't expect you to have grown to this extent. Do you know that even Sabo can't take my punch? Follow me to the Revolutionary Army, and I'll give you the position of Army Commander, how about that?" Chapter 26. Give me some face, I refuse, Cheng Cheng said without hesitation. After Long listened, not only did he not show any displeasure, but he looked at him with interest. "Do you know how much power the commander of our Revolutionary Army has? How many people have squeezed their heads to sit in this position? Superior? Different Taoists do not agree with each other. I don't have much sense of responsibility. I just want to live my life well," Cheng Cheng said casually. "For a person like me, the best I can do is to be a carefree pirate like Luffy." Cheng Cheng shook his arm that was numb from the shock and said angrily, "Uncle Long, your attack was too shady. If I couldn't catch your punch, I would be dead by now." Compared to his praise for Cheng Cheng just now, there was a trace of surprise on Long's face now, and he asked, "How did you know it was me?" "Besides Uncle Long, I can't think of anyone else who can summon the wind, rain, thunder and lightning," Cheng Cheng said casually. "Besides, Luffy is about to enter the Grand Line. As a father, it is only natural for you to come and take a look." "I see," Long said calmly. "I still have some understanding of your strength, even though I haven't been with Luffy all these years. But I know everything and everyone that Luffy encounters, so I also know very well that you can withstand my punch." Long took a few steps forward, getting closer and closer to Cheng Cheng, staring at him with his eyes. "Since you are unwilling to join the Revolutionary Army, what is your purpose of following me secretly? I just want to ask you one thing. If Ace is caught by Marines soon and will be executed soon, will you save him?" Cheng Cheng Gate of Opening said bluntly. This question is the most important purpose of his coming to Loguetown. Regardless of whether Long believes it now or not, it will really happen in the future. As long as Long agrees, then the Revolutionary Army's combat power will be greatly reduced in the future. It will play a vital role in the war on the top. Then even the Marine headquarters must carefully consider whether it is worth launching this war just for an ace. Long stood there quietly in the rain. He did not rush to answer, but was thinking carefully, constantly deducing the situation and the possible consequences in his mind. The heavy rain fell on Long's grey robe, splashing a fine mist of rain. After a long silence, Long said slowly, "I don't know why you asked this question, so let's assume that what you said is true. Even so, it's not my turn to save Ace. Ace is the captain of Whitebeard's 2nd Division. He will never sit idly by. Even I have to admit that Whitebeard is the strongest in the world. Man, it's not difficult for him to go to Marine headquarters and rescue someone." "What if Whitebeard also died there?" Cheng Cheng asked without giving up. Advertisement, my answer is, no. Long shook his head and refused. Why? This is the brother of Luffy and Sabo, and you must know what Ace's identity means to Marine, Cheng Cheng said questioningly. The pirates and the Revolutionary Army both have a common enemy. Ace's death will not do you much good. In his opinion, Long had many reasons to save Ace. Their Revolutionary Army has a never-ending relationship with Marine and the world government. There is no difference between fighting now and fighting in the future. The Revolutionary Army should seize the opportunity at any time to weaken Marine's power. If you are talking about within a year, then I can only tell you that the time has not come yet. Long said seriously. He slowly stretched out his fingers and felt the cold rain. The Revolutionary Army is still in the stage of rapid development. If we mobilize the army to attack the Marine headquarters now, our layout in other places will be seriously affected, and even those areas that have been liberated by us will fall into turmoil again. The attack on the Marine headquarters is different from other things. It is equivalent to a full-scale war with the world government. If we are not careful, the decades of hard work of our Revolutionary Army will be wiped out. Cheng Cheng was silent. He knew that Long valued the lives of all the people in the world, not the life and death of Ace alone. In that case, then I have nothing to do. After he finished speaking, he was speechless. He had nothing more to say. But if this really happens, you can tell Sabo that if he goes, I can't stop him, Long said as he walked away. Besides, since you are with Luffy, I have nothing to worry about. If you change your mind, you can always go to Baldigo to find me. After Long said that, his whole person turned into a breeze and disappeared into the darkness. Cheng Cheng didn't seem to be shocked by this. It was obvious that Dragon's Devil Fruit ability had awakened, and it was so powerful that it had been used to perfection. Then he thought about it and realized that it was right. None of the three brothers could be missing in this matter, especially Sabo, who was definitely a very powerful fighter. At this time, a familiar voice sounded in my mind. The next check-in location is the Revolutionary Army headquarters base, Baldigo. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket uncle. Do you want to send it immediately? Close black lens bracket. Cheng Cheng immediately yelled. Why the hell didn't you say anything just now? Advertisement, I just remembered it, uncle. Close black lens bracket. It seems that I have to go to Baldigo after all, but it would be great to go and meet Sabo. Cheng Cheng walked slowly along the street. When he came to the beach, he saw the waves rolling, strong winds and heavy rains. Suddenly, he faintly heard the sound of fighting not far away. He looked at the street in the distance over there. The white smoke was billowing like it was on fire. But it was raining so hard at the moment, so it was impossible to catch a fire. Then there is only one possibility left. After Cheng Cheng thought of this, his expression changed. He looked up to the sky and yelled a somersault cloud, then jumped up high, stood on the somersault cloud, and moved quickly over. On the wide streets, the heavy rain seemed to be desperately trying to wash away the dirt of this town. At this moment, two people were fighting fiercely on the street. White Fist. Smoker shouted, and the huge fist formed by the smoke swallowed Luffy instantly. Luffy, who had no power to fight back, was punched high into the air. Smoker took advantage of this opportunity, jumped up, and suddenly appeared above Luffy, pressed his head, and smashed Luffy into the ground. Are you the monkey D. Luffy who hung out 60 million belly? Turns out it was just a name in vain. Smoker mocked. As he spoke, he reached out and took out the 10 hands behind his back, preparing to finish off this big pirate. But suddenly, my wrist tightened and I couldn't pull it out no matter what. Smoker looked up and saw Cheng Cheng with a smile on his face, grabbing his wrist tightly. Brother Smoker, give me some face, Cheng Cheng said. Chapter 27 Sabo appears. Cheng Cheng, don't go too far, Smoker scolded angrily. If I hadn't woken up early, you would have delayed my important event, ah. Before Smoker could finish his words, Cheng Cheng raised the Genhai sword and slapped it on the top of his head. Smoker rolled his eyes and fainted. Luffy got up from the ground and grinned. Ah ha 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 ha, brother Cheng Cheng, it's you. I was saved by you again this time. But this guy who can make smoke is really strong. He's nothing, you're the sun god, okay. After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he pulled Luffy onto the somersault cloud. Let's go find Zoro and Sanji Usopp right now. You have to get back to the ship as soon as possible, otherwise your ship will be washed away by this storm. Gone. Okay, brother Cheng Cheng. Luffy's face was full of excitement after sitting on the somersault cloud, but he was still mumbling to himself, sun god. What is this? The two of them shuttled through the storm. After Luffy found his companions, he stretched out his arms and directly pulled them one by one onto the somersault cloud. After everyone was found, Cheng Cheng saw that Buggy and his group were still tied up in the square. Fortunately, he swung his sword and the sword energy cut the rope directly. Let's make the situation a little more chaotic so you can leave easily. Then a golden light flashed across the sky, and soon Cheng Cheng led them to the shore. At this moment, the Melee, which was originally docked on the shore, has been blown to the sea by the storm. There was only Nami on the boat. She was desperately adjusting the direction of the Melee, but it had no effect in the face of this strong storm. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, Usopp, and Nami, take care of yourself. After Cheng Cheng said to them, he threw Luffy and the others directly from the sky onto the Melee. Except for Sanji, who used the unskilled moonwalk in the air to adjust his direction, everyone else fell to the deck in a state of confusion. Well, Cheng Cheng, I will take care of you the next time I see you, Usopp said angrily. Zoro clasped his fists heavily at Cheng Cheng, saying nothing. Luffy's whole body bounced back and forth on the ground like rubber, rolling several times before he stopped. When he woke up, Cheng Cheng could no longer be seen. High in the sky, Cheng Cheng stood alone on the somersault cloud, watching the melee gradually getting smaller in the sea. Advertisement lightning and thunder, wind and rain. He stretched out his hand to feel the wind flowing in the air, and the corners of his mouth slowly raised. It was the west wind. The good wind will send you to the blue clouds with its power. Sure enough, there is not a single lousy in the world who does not protect his calf. Don't worry, Luffy, nothing can stop a man from pursuing his dream, and nothing can stop him. System, teleport me to the next mission location. Okay, sir. Close black lens bracket. The bright golden light in the sky suddenly disappeared, leaving only the heavy rain. Bardigo. The sky was clear and the sunshine was gentle. It was a completely different world from Baldir just now. It's just that there are very few flowers, plants and trees here. Both the ground and the hillsides are pure white. From a distance, it looks like they are covered by heavy snow. There was a sudden muffled sound in the quiet air. Cheng Cheng fell directly from midair and hit the ground, leaving a big crater in the white ground. He patted his butt and stood up, his clothes covered with white dust. Is this the general base of the Revolutionary Army? He jumped up and stood on a boulder. He briefly identified the direction. When he saw a lot of movement not far away, he walked slowly towards that direction. Not far from the base, two young men, a man and a woman, stood in front of a white boulder. The young man's palm was like a hook, forming a dragon's claw, and he blasted it out with one claw. With a bang, the white boulder more than 10 meters high in front of him shattered into pieces, and countless small stones shot out, sending smoke and dust everywhere. In an instant, the two figures were swallowed up in the dust. After a while, the dust dissipated. Advertisement. Judging from their appearance, these two people should be about 17 or 18 years old, not much different. The young man was wearing a black suit and a top hat, and he was holding a water pipe in his left hand, which seemed to be his weapon. He has a handsome appearance, with short yellow hair that is slightly curly, and a shallow scar under his left eye. However, this scar does not affect his handsome appearance, but instead adds a bit of maturity that does not belong to his age. The girl is slender and wears a red velvet hat with a pair of black glasses. She has a round face with some baby fat and looks very cute. Sob, with your current strength, you should be the strongest among your peers. The girl's eyes flickered, she looked straight at the boy in front of her, and praised her sincerely. For her, this is definitely not an exaggeration. The man in front of him is only 18 years old this year, and he has already become the Chief of General Staff of the Revolutionary Army, occupying the second highest position. If the leader is not at the base, all major military operations must require this person's nod of approval. This boy not only has an excellent strategic vision, but in the past 10 years, under Long's guidance, his strength has become extremely terrifying. Nowadays, even among the cadres at the base, few are Sob's opponents. So she firmly believed that Sabo was invincible among his peers. Sabo turned the water pipe in his hand casually and shook his head. There is someone who may be more powerful than me. Who? The girl said with disbelief. That person is my eldest brother. His name is Cheng Cheng. I couldn't beat him when I was a child. He is stronger and smarter than me. When the four of his brothers went to fight for territory, he always made the battle plan. Ace and I are here to perfect the loophole detection. That little fool Luffy will only follow us and punch us. Of course, that guy is the one who gets beaten the hardest every time. After hearing this, the girl breathed a sigh of relief and said indifferently, I thought, who were you talking about? Those things you said were all 10 years ago and have no reference value at all. Don't you know how much you have suffered in the past 10 years? Your experiences in these 10 years are enough to make you throw away any of your peers. After hearing this, Sabo immediately beamed. Ha 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 ha, you were right, Kurla. It seems that the next time you see brother Cheng Cheng, you have to give him a good beating first. It can be regarded as repaying the kindness you always had when you were a child. It's the hatred of being bullied by him. At this point, Sabo's voice stopped suddenly and he looked behind Kurla in shock. Behind Kurla, a white-haired boy suddenly appeared, carrying a blue knife on his waist. The blade was slender and he didn't know what style it was. I heard that you want to beat me? Chapter 28 Run, brother. Kurla's body suddenly tensed up, and she felt that there was someone behind her at some point, and she was immediately frightened and broke into a cold sweat on her back. Her own strength is very strong. As the acting master of human karate of the Revolutionary Army, she has taught thousands of Revolutionary Army soldiers. Even Sabo couldn't just appear behind him silently without him noticing at all. She moved and quickly changed her position to distance herself from the person behind her. At the same time, she secretly formed an angle with Sabo and the others to surround the extremely dangerous person. Sabo was like a statue, standing there and carefully looking at the white-haired swordsman in front of him, even though 10 years had passed. But between the eyebrows, that similar familiar feeling would never change, not to mention that short silver-white hair, which he was very familiar with. Sabo threw away the water pipe in his hand, his nose felt a little sore. He took a deep breath, and then he suppressed the turmoil in his heart and asked in a low voice, Brother Cheng Cheng. You, after so many years, you still haven't made any progress. You always like to cry like this. I still can't believe that the second in command of the Revolutionary Army is you. Cheng Cheng muttered, but his eyes showed that he couldn't hide it, of tenderness. Taking a step forward, Cheng Cheng and Sabo collided with their fists at the same time. Neither of them used any force, it was just a simple collision. At this time, Kurla also relaxed her vigilance, put away her defensive posture, and looked at the white-haired boy in front of her with some disbelief. He is Cheng Cheng? The eldest brother Cheng Cheng that Sabo often mentions? Didn't Sabo say that he was an ordinary soldier in Marine? Can ordinary soldiers have this strength? She moved a little, approached Cheng Cheng and looked him up and down carefully. When Cheng Cheng saw her coming, he smiled brightly at her like a ray of warm sunshine. Then, her heart began to beat uncontrollably, 2 blushes quickly appeared on her cheeks, and her breathing began to quicken. She covered her burning face with both hands, and for a moment she didn't dare to look into Cheng Cheng's eyes. Oh my god, how could there be such a handsome man in this world? Advertisement. Is this appearance and this unique painting style really real? A handsome young man, with jade trees facing the wind. At this moment, Kurla only had these 2 words in her mind. Are you Cheng Cheng, brother Cheng Cheng? After Kurla stammered and asked, she regretted a little. She obviously said nonsense, so she quickly added. I'm Kella. Cheng Cheng looked soft and said with a smile. Thanks to you for taking care of my brother Sabo these years, he must have caused you a lot of trouble. It's okay. Sometimes, Sabo takes better care of me, Kara said with a red face. Sabo said with some dissatisfaction, Brother Cheng Cheng, I am also the Chief of General Staff of the Revolutionary Army now. You should stop treating me like a child. Cheng Cheng smiled and nodded in agreement. It had been 10 years since he had seen Sabo. He didn't expect that the weapon Sabo was using now was still the water pipe, which was too shabby. Think about the 108-pound seafloor stone sword in your space ring. How handsome is it? I'm no longer Marine, so you don't have to worry that I'm here to catch you. Cheng Cheng patted Sabo on the shoulder and reminded him kindly. Sabo closed his eyes and felt the aura on Cheng Cheng's body, which was as steady as a mountain and as thick as the sea. He said seriously, Brother Cheng Cheng, I can feel that you are very strong, maybe even stronger than me. Leave the word, maybe, behind, Cheng Cheng reminded with a smile. Sabo looked at him seriously. He grabbed the air with his right hand and instantly held the water pipe on the ground. He took a step forward, and the silver-white stainless steel water pipe suddenly became completely black. Armed and domineering. Well, not bad. Cheng Cheng glanced at it, praised it, and walked forward, continuing. Take me to the base. Our 2 brothers have just met. What are we going to fight? Besides, you can't beat me with your current strength. I'm afraid I might injure you accidentally. You cadres of the Revolutionary Army are not allowed to tie me up. Sabo looked serious, but did not remove his weapons and looked domineering. He said, Brother Cheng Cheng, I am serious. I know you are a strong man, but I don't have no chance at all. Kara on the side seized the opportunity and began to fight for Sabo's injustice. At the same time, she was maintaining the dignity of their Revolutionary Army. She pinched her waist with both hands and said angrily, How powerful Sabo is, you don't understand him at all. Are you sure? Cheng Cheng looked helpless. He understood after looking at Sabo's firm eyes. Advertisement. Their 4 brothers, Sabo, Ace and Luffy, may not be the strongest, but they must have the most stubborn tempers. They are all people who, once they make a decision, will never look back until they hit the wall. After knocking down the wall, they want to stand up again and knock down the second wall. Therefore, he knew from the beginning that it would be impossible to persuade Ace to give up the opportunity to pursue Teach. As for whether a war on top can be avoided, only the devil knows. This is probably because birds of a feather flock together, and somehow they deserve to be sworn in as 4 brothers. Let's do this. Let's not fight. How about other things? Cheng Cheng said. Sabo asked in confusion. If it's not better than fighting, what else can it be compared to? It's better than running. Cheng Cheng glanced at the base in the distance and roughly estimated that it was about 3,000 meters away. That's your base over there. Let's compare our speeds and see who gets where first. Win. Sabo reluctantly disarmed Hockey and nodded in agreement. Then I will be the referee, Kara said with excitement, extremely interested in this game. She looked at Cheng Cheng's handsome face with fascination. Such a handsome guy should be even more handsome when he runs, right? Kurla jumped around and found a pure white stone, the size of a watermelon. She gently threw the stone upwards, and the stone flew hundreds of meters into the air in an instant. After the stone reaches its apex in the air, it begins to fall freely. Sabo and Cheng Cheng both held their breath and listened carefully to the sound of the falling stone. There was a muffled sound as the stone just touched the ground. They disappeared in place almost at the same time. Kara stared at the place where they were just now. It used to be a relatively flat ground, but now there were 2 large pits. She raised her head and saw only 2 streaks of white smoke billowing on the road ahead, like a huge white dragon. 2 perverts. Chapter 29. When drinking, alert, prepare to fight. A gun-wielding soldier outside the base shouted, and the dozen or so people guarding behind the door immediately became alert, loaded their bullets, and looked seriously at the 2 billows of white smoke in front of them. A deafening roar rang in their ears, and the ground shook slightly, as if an earthquake had occurred. The next moment, these gun-wielding soldiers felt a fierce wind coming towards them, carrying a large amount of white dust with them. The soldiers were blinded by the wind, their clothes were messy, and the hat of the soldier at the front was blown off by the wind. When the dust cleared, they could finally see the scene in front of them clearly. They only saw a white-haired boy standing in front of them with a smile on his face. Behind the stranger was his chief of staff, Sabo. After seeing Sabo, the soldiers gave up the idea of pointing guns at them and all stood at attention, showing admiration. I'm sorry, it must have affected you. Cheng Cheng looked at them apologetically and apologized. As he galloped along, he was maximizing his speed, but what surprised him was that Sabo was chasing after him. You must know that he had systematic blessings to get to this point. I really don't know how long guided Sabo to practice. Sabo glanced at the confused expressions of these soldiers, and explained while breathing heavily, it's okay, this is my brother, one of our own. Then Sabo sat down on the ground, lay down, stretched out his limbs, and placed a big character on the ground. At this moment, his whole body was soaked with sweat, and his chest was rising and falling violently, making it difficult for him to speak. You are. What a pervert. I never thought that running could make me so tired. Cheng Cheng looked at Sabo with a funny look. You want me to die, but you have to compete with a cheating person like me? Brother, I have a system. But he still smiled and comforted. It's okay, your strength is much stronger than I thought, much more powerful than Luffy. I saw Luffy a few days ago, and he is far worse than you. Advertisement, but Luffy's life is very exciting now. He has found some good partners and has become a great pirate with a bounty of 60 million belly. Sabo looked up at the sky, showing a smile that was uglier than crying. You might as well not comfort me. Seeing his state, Cheng Cheng might not be able to get up for a while, so he found a raised stone and sat down, looking around at the surrounding scenery. Everything you see is white, without any green flowers, grass or trees. The only vegetation is a bare tree, which is also white. Cheng Cheng's first feeling was that of desolation. Sabo rested for a while, and his breathing gradually began to stabilize. He looked at Cheng Cheng and said, it seems that the gap between the two of us is not as big as usual. Then I win, Cheng Cheng said with a calm smile. Sabo said seriously, no, even though I know I can't beat you, I still won't accept a fight. Then let's talk about it in 2 days. I'm not planning to leave in a hurry this time. By the way, brother Cheng Cheng, are you coming here to join our revolutionary army? Sabo sat up from the ground and looked at Cheng Cheng, his eyes full of expectation. Cheng Cheng smiled and shook his head and said, brother just misses you. If you don't worry, I will come to see you. After a carp was erect, Sabo stood up directly from the ground and said with great pride, brother Cheng Cheng, let's go have a drink. Let's see if I drink you to death today. If I can't beat you, can I still drink you? After saying that, he hugged Cheng Cheng and the two entered the revolutionary army base together. Only the soldiers were left looking at each other. They each looked at each other and saw the smile in each other's eyes. Their chief of general staff used to have a solemn expression almost every day. Even when he won a big victory, he never had such an unbridled smile. Then these soldiers saw another girl running here sweating profusely. It was their fishman karate master, Kurla. These soldiers instantly saluted to show their respect. After Kara ran over, she bent over and her cheeks were red, and she gasped. Where are they? Sabo and the others. Just went in. A soldier said. Advertisement. Kurla cursed in a low voice, then thought of Cheng Cheng's handsome face, and said angrily, it's really not human, but I like it. The cadres at the revolutionary army base and others soon learned that Sabo's eldest brother was here, and he was also a very handsome guy. As soon as the news came out, from time to time some girls from the base would quietly approach the hillside, take a look at the man from a distance, and then come back with a blushing face. Of course, there were also muscular men who climbed to the top of the mountain to toast Cheng Cheng. Of course, most of them went there to refute those women. No matter how handsome a person is, how handsome can he be? Is he as handsome as I am? This is what you call a man, okay. But as expected, after those muscular men went up, they all lowered their heads and walked down silently. But after returning to the room, they began to look in the mirror one by one. At the top of the back mountain of the revolutionary army base, there is a small slope that is not high, but the top of the slope is extremely flat, as if someone had flattened it with a giant sword. Cheng Cheng and Sabo both had slightly red faces at this moment. There were wine bottles around them, placed in various directions, and in front of them were some simple beef and peanuts to go with the wine. Even Cheng Cheng, who often likes to drink, will inevitably feel dizzy after drinking too much. He saw that Sabo's glass had become empty again at some point, so he picked up the bottle and poured him a glass. This rum tastes good, but it's still a bit light after all. Sabo frowned and retorted. These are spirits prepared specially for me by the brewmaster I specially invited. Normally other people can't drink this. I don't believe it. There's a drink stronger than mine in this world. Cheng Cheng raised his glass and drank it in one gulp. Not a drop was left. He lamented. Yes, but it's a pity that I can never drink the taste of Erguodo again. The two continued chatting and drinking for a while, and before they knew it, the sky was getting dark. A bright red cloud appeared in the distant sky. Sob, if Ace is captured by Marine one day and will be executed at Marine headquarters, Marinevano, what will you do at that time? Cheng Cheng, who was drunk and hazy, didn't know whether he was talking drunkenly or in his sleep, suddenly spoke. Sabo, who was already drowsy, suddenly opened his eyes became sharp, and he said angrily, of course I'll F***K him. Chapter 30. Little drunkard. The next day, early morning. The sun in the east has not yet risen, and the air is filled with light white mist, like layers of tulle floating in the air. On the hillside behind the revolutionary army base, two people were lying in a mess, not sleeping at all. Scattered wine bottles piled up into a hill behind each of them. From yesterday to now, I can still smell the strong aroma of wine here. A little girl in tattered clothes was approaching here cautiously on tiptoes. She was sallow and thin, and looked to be only 7 or 8 years old. Her clothes were heavily patched, and her hair was slightly frizzy because she had not been cleaned for a long time. If it weren't for her smart black eyes, she would be no different from a boy. She was holding a polished straight wooden stick in her hand, and her eyes were fixed on the two piles of wine bottles in front of her. On one side of the bottles, there were still some wines that had not been finished. She even found that there were still some wines left. Several bottles of wine were complete and not opened at all. This made the smile on her face grow wider. As she walked on tiptoe, she stretched her nose and breathed in the fragrance of wine in the air, looking intoxicated. The closer she got to the two of them, the slower the beggar-like little girl became. Seeing that there was a lot of wine spilled on the ground, the little girl frowned. What a waste. Aren't these two bastards afraid of being punished by God? Now that you've had enough to eat and drink, it's time to respect this heroine. She looked at the two people lying on the ground and determined that they were asleep. Then she boldly moved forward and slowly leaned over to pick up an unopened bottle of rum from the ground. Ah! Suddenly there was a yawning sound in her ears, and the little girl immediately squatted down and lay on the ground. All I saw was the white-haired boy lying on the ground yawned, then turned over and fell asleep again. The little girl glared at the white-haired boy fiercely. When he turned over, his arm happened to hold down the complete bottle of rum. This guy looks so human-like, why doesn't he do some human work? She immediately gritted her teeth and cursed silently. Advertisement. After struggling for a long time, she decided to give up the risk of getting the bottle of wine. She just picked up a half-full bottle of wine on the ground and carefully carried it in her arms. Then she looked down again and saw that there were still a lot of uneaten dried beef slices and peanuts on the ground. After swallowing, she turned around and left decisively. Wait! Suddenly an evil voice came from behind. The little girl was startled for a moment, then took a step forward and started running. But before she could even take 2 steps, the little girl stopped. The white-haired boy who was sleeping on the ground just now suddenly stood in front of her and was looking at her with a smile. Cheng Cheng looked at the little girl with a sallow complexion and asked, "You stole the wine. What are you going to do next?" "Of course I drink it myself. What else can I do?" the little girl replied unceremoniously. After finishing speaking, the little girl hugged the wine in her arms tightly, found a gap, and rushed to the other side. Before she could even take 2 steps, the little girl was lifted up in the air by Cheng Cheng's collar. At such a young age, if you don't learn something good, how can you imitate how adults drink? Cheng Cheng joked with a smile. But at the same time, he was secretly shocked. This little girl obviously didn't seem to be good at kung fu, but she was able to approach him quietly. When he found the little girl, she already had a bottle of wine in her arms. Although he did drink too much and fell asleep, his consciousness was awake, and his awareness of the dangers around him was very strong even in deep sleep. The little girl struggled desperately in midair, trying to kick the white-haired boy with her legs, but she couldn't. "Put me down, let me down. Whether I drink or not is none of your business," the little girl said angrily. Instead, Cheng Cheng improved the little girl a few points and said with a smile, "Aren't you afraid that your parents will know about drinking at such a young age? Where's your home? I will let your parents educate you." Having said that, of course Cheng Cheng would not go to his parents to complain. He just saw that this little girl was too unruly and wanted to scare her. Besides, when he looked at the little girl's clothes, which were in tatters and patched, he knew that this girl must have been born into a poor family. The little girl snorted coldly and said stubbornly, "My parents are dead, let's see how you go about complaining." Cheng Cheng was slightly startled. Seeing that her expression didn't look like she was lying, he slowly put her down and said, "Let's go." Advertisement. The little girl strode away from here without hesitation. "Wait a minute!" Cheng Cheng shouted, picked up the other complete bottle of rum from the ground and handed it to the little girl. But the little girl not only did not reach out to take it, but instead put the half bottle of wine in her hand on the ground with an angry face. "Who wants your charity?" After saying that, the little girl strode away without giving Cheng Cheng any chance to speak. Cheng Cheng watched helplessly as the little girl left. Really stubborn. But the next moment, Cheng Cheng couldn't help but feel a little shocked, and he squinted and looked carefully. When the little girl left, her steps were steady and powerful, and her breathing was even and long. It was vaguely similar to his water breathing. No wonder, this child just came to me and I didn't notice it. At this time, Sabo also woke up, sat on the ground and said with a smile, "Despite her young age, Tuanzi is here, but she is a famous drunkard, and even some adults can't drink her." Cheng Cheng looked strange and raised his head to take another sip of wine. After a hangover in his hometown, he often liked to drink some more the next morning to sober up. "This little girl has quite a lot of talent, haven't you noticed?" Sabo sighed and said, "I discovered it. How could I not discover it, even though Tuanzi is a little girl? The training intensity in the army is no less intense than that of men older than her. It's just that there are always a lot of things in the army. She has always wanted to learn swordsmanship and is not interested in my dragon claw skills. Kara teaches fishman karate, and the lightning deputy commander can barely teach her swordsmanship. Never been at the base. So I can only train with the soldiers like this for now." After hearing this, Cheng Cheng lowered his head in deep thought. "By the way, brother Cheng Cheng, you told me last night that Ace was arrested. What's going on?" Sabo asked seriously. Cheng Cheng replied casually, "It's just drunken talk, don't take it seriously." Next, Sabo was quickly called away by a soldier to handle military affairs. Cheng Cheng was wandering around the base. When Sabo arrived, he told him that except for some places involving the secrets of the Revolutionary Army, which he was not allowed to enter, he was free to move around anywhere else. He was wandering around the busy Revolutionary Army base leisurely, looking for a place to sign in. Chapter 31. Food. Cheng Cheng really just wandered around the base all morning. I've been to the karate training ground where Kurla instructs the troops, to the weapons room, to the granary, to the kitchen where cooking is done, and even to the simple bathroom twice. However, the system did not prompt to complete the task. Where is the check-in location? Revolutionary Army Base. This term is too general. Cheng Cheng raised his eyebrows slightly, feeling a little depressed. Since the check-in place is the Revolutionary Army Base, it must be a very important place here. As he walked slowly, he suddenly discovered that there was a lively hall just before. He walked in and looked out the door. The sound of people coming and going was noisy. There was a large long table in the middle of the hall, with a whole row of telephone bugs placed on it. The revolutionary soldiers looked serious. While receiving and passing information, quickly write it down on paper or pass it out loud to another phone bug. In the innermost position of the hall, the Revolutionary Army generals headed by Sabo were concentrating on the large map on the wall. Is this the headquarters? Cheng Cheng's eyes suddenly lit up. Yes, this should be it. The door to the hall was open and unattended, so Cheng Cheng walked in naturally. But after entering, he frowned and couldn't help but become confused. The system was as calm as ever and did not give any prompts. It's not here yet. Where could it be? Soon the receptionist noticed Cheng Cheng's presence. After he glanced at Cheng Cheng, his expression was slightly curious, and then he picked up his pen and immersed himself in recording. These people are really big-hearted. Cheng Cheng smiled bitterly, but then he felt relieved. Now in this hall, in addition to the second in command of the Revolutionary Army, Sabo, there are also Army Commander Bello Betty and Intelligence Control Officer Terry Kill, Dio. Regardless of their strength, these people can stand alone, let alone when these guys gather together. Do they still need to worry about the intrusion of other strangers? Cheng Cheng looked around the hall boredly. Suddenly, he noticed that there was an extremely hidden small door on the north wall of the hall. If he hadn't noticed that there were 2 Revolutionary Army soldiers guarding the door, he would have largely ignored the door. Cheng Cheng was sure almost immediately that the sign-in location must be here, but he stopped as soon as he reached the door. Advertisement, what are you doing? You can't go in here. The 2 gun-wielding soldiers said expressionlessly and stopped Cheng Cheng directly. Cheng Cheng asked patiently, where is this place? One of them said, this is the chief's office. No idlers are allowed to enter. Of course Cheng Cheng would not force his way in, and could only helplessly look at Sabo for help. Sabo, who was looking at the map, smiled helplessly, paused what he was doing, walked over and said slowly, this is Long's office. It's difficult for anyone else to enter except for me. Cheng Cheng explained, don't worry, Sob. I'll just go in and take a look. I'll make sure nothing moves. I'll leave after just one look. Sabo looked hesitant and kept turning the water pipe in his hand. Just when he was about to speak, an attendant shouted, emergency, emergency. An emergency call came from Ishiro, the deputy commander of the front line of the East China Sea Theater. For a moment, the hall fell silent. They knew that only when the survival of the Revolutionary Army was at stake, the call taker would add the word, urgent, to the information. Everyone was looking at the phone bug. Sob had no time to say anything at this time. He flashed and came to the phone bug in an instant. He calmly asked, I am Chief of General Staff Sob. What happened? Sabo, this is Ahiru. Our eastern front line is currently fighting against the kingdom of Kagado, but the granary on the front line has been burned down by CP9 people. Although they have been driven away by me now, the military commander's food can only last for 2 days at most. If no food supplies are delivered after 2 days, our half-year battle in the Kagado kingdom will be over. I'm afraid it will all fall short. There was anger, reluctance, and regret on the phone bug's expression. Ahiru should have expected that at the critical moment when the kingdom of Kagado was about to be overthrown, people from the world government would definitely come to stop it. When she was ready to fight another tough battle, she never thought that the people of CP9 would adopt such a method to force them to evacuate. There was silence in the hall. The whole place was silent. No one chose to speak at this time. They all knew that at this time, no matter what they said, it would be useless. The air seemed to have solidified, and everyone's face revealed a heavy haze. Advertisement. Everyone had the same expression, unwilling. Regret. Hatred. Sabo was the only one who was still trying to maintain a superficial calm, forcing himself to calm down, but the bulging veins on his arms had betrayed his mood. Because they all know the seriousness of this matter. The kingdom of Kagado is far away from here. Even if we transport food at the fastest speed, it will still take half a month. And the daily consumption of tens of thousands of frontline troops is so huge. If Ahilu said that they can last for 2 days, they must be just hungry. In fact, the remaining food may not be enough for 1 day. Sabo lowered his head, stroked the hat on his head, and turned the water pipe in his hand rapidly. His eyes were cold. After a long silence, he said, Commander Ashilu, retreat. Let the soldiers retreat first. Rear. After getting this answer, everyone bowed their heads and was speechless. This was undoubtedly the most correct choice. However, they just are not willing to give in. A soldier standing against the wall punched the wall, his hands dripping with blood, but he didn't notice it. Intelligence Control Officer Terry Kildeo stood up suddenly, smashed the glass in the water to pieces, and said angrily, Lousy, go kill all those CP9 bastards now. After hearing this, Ahilu on the other side of the phone burst into tears. No, we cannot retreat. In the past 6 months, I don't know how many soldiers of our Eastern Army have died. Their blood has dyed the entire Sais River red. If we retreat now, their deaths will be in vain. By the end of the story, Ahilu was crying. Sabo sighed and comforted softly. Sister Ahilu, retreat. I can't blame you for what happened. Several other Revolutionary Army generals just clenched their fists, but they were helpless. Cheng Cheng, who was standing at the door, narrowed his narrow eyes, and golden light floated in his eyes. He took a step forward and asked, "How much food do you need?" Chapter 32. Transporting grain. For a moment, everyone, including Sabo, turned to look at Cheng Cheng. Some people didn't even know who Cheng Cheng was at this time, so they all looked at him doubtfully. Sabo took a deep look at Cheng Cheng. As the Chief of General Staff of the Revolutionary Army, he was already familiar with these military affairs. He almost didn't need to think before he blurted it out. There are nearly 10,000 troops in the Eastern Frontline Theater. It takes at least 270,000 tons to transport them once, just to barely sustain them for half a month. After half a month, the next supply can start operating normally. Then Sabo sighed again and said helplessly, "This quantity is too much. Even if it is transported by the Winter Gramma, it will take 13 days if everything goes well. What's more, the Winter Gramma is still sailing in the East China Sea." Ahilu on the other side of the phone seemed to see a glimmer of hope and said eagerly, "We don't need 270,000 tons of food, only 100,000 tons are enough. As long as you give me 10 days, we will definitely be able to invade the royal city. Overthrow the rule of the Kagado kingdom." Cheng Cheng gently turned the space ring on his index finger and smiled lightly. "I will help you transport 500,000 tons of grain. Is that enough? If not, 1 million tons is also fine. I don't need any ships either. Give me 1 day to deliver it to you." After he finished speaking, the whole place fell into silence. Everyone looked at him like a madman, with some pity in their eyes. How come such a grown-up person can only talk nonsense? Intelligence Control Officer Terry Gildeo stood up and looked at him with an unfriendly expression, scolding. "What a shameless talk. Only 1 day. You don't need any ship transportation yet? Are you talking in your sleep?" Sob. "Who is this person? I think it's best to ask him out of the headquarters now. The general headquarters of the Revolutionary Army is not a place where just any cat or dog can come." Even Kurla, who admired Cheng Cheng's appearance very much, looked a little embarrassed at this time. Brother Sabo seemed to be quite powerful, yet he was saying some crazy things. "Sabo, how about I take Brother Cheng Cheng outside for a walk first?" Kara said cautiously. Sabo looked at Cheng Cheng quietly, slowly took off his hat and put it on the table. He looked directly at Cheng Cheng and asked seriously, "Brother Cheng Cheng, can you really do this?" Advertisement. Cheng Cheng turned around and walked directly to the command post, saying loudly, "Take me to the granary." Sabo immediately beamed and followed without any hesitation. Others in the hall looked at each other in confusion. Although they still didn't believe that Cheng Cheng could do it, they somehow felt a trace of expectation deep in their hearts. In addition to the busy receptionists, other generals of the Revolutionary Army also followed them to the granary. The granary of the Revolutionary Army was in a naturally formed cave. The road there was heavily guarded. When they saw the mighty generals headed by Sabo coming here for a rare occasion, they all stood by seriously and returned, thinking something happened. 10 minutes later, when everyone came to the granary, Sabo pointed to a hill of grain in front of him and said, "This pile contains about 470,000 tons. If it is inconvenient, just transport half of it." Cheng Cheng smiled, thinking about the vast space in the space ring, and said calmly, "It doesn't matter, for me. There is not much difference between 500,000 tons and 1 million ton." Intelligence Control Officer Terry Gildeo sneered, "Let's see how long you can keep pretending." The other generals all looked at Cheng Cheng. They couldn't imagine that this mountain of food could really be transported. Even a dragon-like figure like the leader may not be able to do it. Cheng Cheng didn't argue with Gildeo and casually hid his hand in his sleeve. The space ring began to emit a faint blue fluorescence in his sleeve. His movements were casual and natural, and even Sabo, who was beside him, didn't notice this little movement of his. He stretched out his other hand without a space ring. There was a snap. A clear snap of fingers sounded in the cave. In an instant, nearly 500,000 tons of grain, which was like a hill in front of them, disappeared. At this moment, the ground is clean, revealing the white soil on the ground. Everyone was dumbfounded at this moment. Their eyes almost popped out, staring at the white ground in front of them. Advertisement just a few seconds ago, there were 500,000 tons of grain here. Where is it now? Only the 3 or 5 grains of grain that occasionally appeared in the corner silently proved that the pile of grain that had just been piled up was real. Some people began to rub their eyes with their hands, wondering if there was something wrong with their eyes, while others quietly slapped the person next to them. The beaten man on the side was not angry, but looked up to the sky and laughed. It's true, our compatriots can be saved." Suddenly, everyone cheered. After seeing it with their own eyes, they had to admit that what Cheng Cheng said was true. Kurla's eyes were red as if she had been burst into tears, and she kept crying. She quickly ran over and hugged Cheng Cheng's neck, and a smile immediately appeared on her red mouth. "Thank you, brother. I'm sorry, I didn't believe you just now," Kurla cried, like the child next door who had done something wrong. Cheng Cheng rubbed Kurla's silky hair and responded, "It's okay." Then he looked at Sabo. "In order not to waste time, I will set off now." When he calmed down, Sabo didn't say anything. He just nodded heavily. As for where Cheng Cheng went, he no longer wanted to ask. He had packed 500,000 tons of grain by himself. What else can happen? Just as Cheng Cheng turned around to leave, Intelligence Control Officer Terry Gildeo called out to him loudly. "Gildeo, is there anything else you can do?" Cheng Cheng raised his eyebrows and said with a smile. The muscular man wearing a grizzly helmet threw away the cigarette in his hand. He walked up to Cheng Cheng and bowed deeply with a sincere face, and all the other Revolutionary Army generals also bowed. It was my fault just now. Now I feel deeply sorry for my ignorance. From today on, you are the benefactor and the best friend of our Revolutionary Army. Cheng Cheng was slightly startled, thinking that the strong man was going to say something, so he smiled and waved his hand indifferently. You may not know much about the relationship between me and Sabo. After saying that, Cheng Cheng summoned the somersault cloud, and once again left Bartigo on the somersault cloud in front of everyone's shocked eyes. Chapter 33 Seeing and Hearing Domineering 2 days later. Bartigo, Revolutionary Army Base Headquarters. Everyone had a smile on their faces, even the unsmiling Intelligence Control Officer Terry Gildeo's face relaxed a bit. They received news from the Eastern Combat Frontline, Deputy Commander Hilu, a day ago. 470,000 tons of grain have been successfully transported to the front line, and Sabo was also told to thank Cheng Cheng if he had the opportunity. Now that they have that batch of grain, they no longer have to worry about logistics. Even though there is no emergency situation now, Sabo is still staring at the map on the wall intently at the moment, quickly analyzing the intelligence of each war zone in his mind to deal with various emergencies that arise. In this way, he can make the most correct judgment at the first time. This habit has served him well for a long time. Chief of the General Staff. The latest news is coming from the Eastern Front. Commander Ashilu wants to speak to you immediately, an answerer suddenly said loudly. Sabo immediately came to the phone bug, and everyone else looked here with nervous expressions. Ashiru, this is Sabo. What happened? Sabo showed an anxious look at the command center for the first time, and his voice was hoarse as soon as he opened his mouth. His first reaction was that something might have happened to brother Cheng Cheng. Only an excited and urgent voice came from the phone. It's brother Cheng Cheng. When he left yesterday, he actually killed all 3 members of CP9 who were lurking in the Kayagato Kingdom. Now the entire Kayagato Kingdom has no backbone, and the whole country is in chaos. People undercover in the kingdom have received reliable news that the kingdom has begun to convene a supreme meeting to discuss surrender. Now I'm asking the Chief of General Staff for instructions. If the Kayagato Kingdom surrenders, will you accept it? Sabo breathed a long sigh of relief, relaxed, and said with a bright smile, accept. Immediately, the entire command headquarters burst into cheers. I didn't expect that brother Cheng Cheng is not only fast and handsome, but also so powerful. Cheng Cheng is a good boy. When I saw him for the first time, I thought this boy was particularly pleasing to the eye. When he comes back, I will drink with him till the end. Only Sabo sighed in a low voice, brother Cheng Cheng is too messy. Advertisement. Then he pressed down with his hands, and the hall soon became quiet again. If the Kayagato Kingdom successfully surrenders, remember to follow the old rules. After the army enters the city, they must not kill people without reason, rob property, or treat women and children preferentially. The phone bug immediately agreed. Yes, Chief of General Staff. Then everyone burst out laughing in unison. The hall was filled with laughter. At noon, a golden track streaked across the sky in the distance. Soon, the somersault cloud landed in midair near the base. After Cheng Cheng jumped to the ground, the somersault cloud floated away again. He could have used the system's ability to teleport directly back to Bartigo yesterday, but he was worried that this would be too public, so he chose to fly back in a somersault cloud. Cheng Cheng slowly walked to the entrance of the base. When the guard outside the door saw him, he saluted Cheng Cheng with a military salute at the same time, his eyes filled with awe. He smiled slightly and guessed what was going on, so he didn't care. After asking others about Sabo's location, he went directly to the headquarters. Along the way, everyone who saw Cheng Cheng saluted or stopped what they were doing to look at him with admiration. After arriving at the headquarters with ease, Cheng Cheng said straightforwardly to Sabo, gate of opening. No need to thank me, now I can enter this small room. As I told you before, how about I just stand at the door and check to make sure nothing in the room moves? Sabo smiled bitterly. I don't know why you are so persistent in the leader's office. Anyway, seeing as you have made such great military achievements, I will let you in. But let's make a deal first. You can't stay in there for too long, and I have to go in with you. Cheng Cheng said cheerfully. No problem, I just took a look. In the entire hall, not only Sabo had no objection, but everyone else had no objection at this moment. As the leader of the Revolutionary Army and the #1 criminal in the world government, Long has countless people around the world who admire him, so they can somewhat understand Cheng Cheng's behavior. Besides, Cheng Cheng had just made a great contribution to the Revolutionary Army. He not only preserved the efforts of the Revolutionary Army in the Eastern Front Theater for half a year, but also killed 3 key members of CP9 among thousands of troops. Directly contributed to the surrender of the Kayagato Kingdom. Advertisement. However, Cheng Cheng's request was just to take a look in the leader's room. If they didn't agree to this request, it would be too unkind. Intelligence Control Officer Terry Gildeo even felt that Cheng Cheng deliberately made this request to give their Revolutionary Army a way to step down. Unconsciously, his eyes looking at Cheng Cheng became a little softer. After Sabo spoke, the 2 guards guarding the door of the office never stopped Cheng Cheng like before. Bodhisattva bless you, I will sign in successfully this time. Cheng Cheng took a step forward and gently opened the office door. The moment his hands touched the wooden door, he heard a sharp voice from behind. Cheng Cheng, how about I go in with you? Everyone looked back and saw that their leader was back, and shouted at the same time, hello, leader. Cheng Cheng's arm that he just stretched out was slightly startled, and it was suspended in the air. The gate of opening was not the same, and it would be wrong not to open it. He looked back at Long awkwardly. Okay, It would be great to have you with me. Long nodded and took the lead in pushing the gate of opening into the office. Cheng Cheng then opened his legs and stepped into the office. As soon as his right foot entered the room and touched the ground, he heard a familiar voice. Congratulations, Uncle. The mission of the Revolutionary Army base has been completed. Close black lens bracket. Reward, seeing and hearing domineering. Close black lens bracket. Cheng Cheng raised the corners of his mouth and revealed a smile. Done. The moment he successfully punched in, an indescribable consciousness appeared in his mind. He felt that his mind was much clearer, but he couldn't describe the clarity. Then he closed his eyes, and the auras and positions of all the people within a radius of 300 meters appeared in his mind. Even the buildings of the base and the structure of the rooms above and below the ground created a three-dimensional model in his mind. In the three-dimensional model, each red dot represents a person's aura, and the size of the red dot represents the strength of the aura. Some people's aura is like a weak candlelight. When Cheng Cheng's consciousness feels this office, the light is like the sun in the sky. Long's eyes narrowed slightly. He noticed the unusual changes in Cheng Cheng, and without hesitation he took a step forward and punched out. Before that, Cheng Cheng slowly moved his body half a step to the left without warning. Chapter 34 Revolutionary Army Chief Instructor. At this moment, there were only 3 of them, Sabo, Long, and Cheng Cheng in Long's office. Sabo was very confused when he saw the scene in front of him, and he had no idea what the 2 people were doing. Is this acting? What he saw in his eyes was that Cheng Cheng casually took a step to the left, and then Long stepped forward and punched, hitting the spot where Cheng Cheng originally stood. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration occurred, and he thought of an ability that Long once told him, and said in shock, "This is..." Yes, this is the domineering power of seeing and hearing. Long took Sabo's words and couldn't hide the admiration for Cheng Cheng in his eyes. He looked very happy and continued. Furthermore, Cheng Cheng's awakened hegemony is still at a super level, but it's not anyone can predict my attack based on his or her knowledge. And the most important thing is that Long Neng can clearly feel that Cheng Cheng's domineering power has just been awakened. Can the hockey of knowledge and color that was awakened a moment ago be so strong? It's really hard for young people nowadays to understand. Long stared at Cheng Cheng, his pale golden eyes lost in thought. For Cheng Cheng himself, what he did just now was completely subconscious and did not go through his brain at all. It seemed that at that moment he felt that he should move his body, so he did. He also realized it later, and now he realized that he had escaped the dragon's attack unintentionally. Of course, he also knew that Long was obviously a lot more merciful in his attack this time. Accident, just an accidental awakening. Cheng Cheng chuckled and could only explain it this way. Sabo pouted on the side and muttered, "Did I awaken because I entered here? No, if this could awaken the hockey of the awakening, I would have awakened it many times." Cheng Cheng, who was still standing at the door, suddenly had lightning eyes, and then raised his right foot to the height of his knees. As soon as he raised his foot, Sabo raised his leg and kicked him over. As a result, Sabo's calf hit Cheng Cheng's soul, and Cheng Cheng kicked him back. This ability is too perverted. What a fool. Sabo was about to cry, knowing that he had no hope of defeating Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng didn't care about Sabo's provocation and comforted him casually. "It's okay, you will wake up in the future." Advertisement, for a truly strong man, there are no surprises in this world. Long said flatly, which was regarded as the final evaluation of Cheng Cheng. Long took off his gray robe and sat down, revealing the red square tattoo on his left face. He had no eyebrows or beard and looked very fierce. He looked at Cheng Cheng quietly. To him, Sob's strength was already the top among the younger generation, but what he didn't expect was that Cheng Cheng was actually stronger and growing at an unprecedented speed. If he continues to grow at this rate, this child will probably reach the heights of the 4 emperors in a few years, right? What kind of hellish training did this kid who had been at the Marine headquarters for 10 years undergo? Even if the old man personally trains him, the height of Sob will be the best. Cheng Cheng looked calm and pretended to look at the layout of the room. It was as if he himself had actually come to visit the room. The room is very small, only about 15 square meters. The 4 walls are covered with bookcases, and the accumulation of various books looks a bit messy. There was only a square wooden table in the middle, and it was empty except for a rectangular photo frame. As soon as he saw this photo frame, Cheng Cheng couldn't help laughing. Goose goose goose. Inside the photo frame, there was a bounty order issued by Luffy with a grin on his face. In the lower left corner of the bounty order was Usopp's back. Sabo covered his face in embarrassment, pretending not to see the reward order inside the photo frame. "You must be an Esper who ate the space fruit, right? I really want to thank you for delivering food to the Eastern Front this time." Long's expression was extremely sincere, and he continued, "I just don't know if there is any way to separate your spatial ability. Even when you are away, we can still use your method to transport food and grass." "No, I can't do this at the moment." Cheng Cheng shook his head firmly. There was nothing wrong with being misunderstood by Long as a space fruit ability user. Long's expression didn't change at all, as if he had expected this. He just asked because he didn't want to let go of the possibility, and continued. "Last time in Loguetown, I invited you to become the commander of the Revolutionary Army, but you refused. Now, as the leader of the Revolutionary Army, I want to invite you again to serve as the general instructor of our Revolutionary Army." Long Ji looked at Cheng Cheng seriously. "Don't refuse in a hurry, just listen to what I have to say. Advertisement, even if you serve as the chief instructor of the Revolutionary Army, I will not restrict your freedom. And if the war you mentioned really happens, although I cannot be there in person, I can promise you to give you 6,000 revolutionaries. Army soldiers, plus any 2 revolutionary army cadres to join the battle. For a moment, the whole room became quiet. After Sabo heard about the war, his face became very ugly. He just clenched his fists and said nothing. Make a deal. Cheng Cheng took a deep breath and made a decision quickly. Now with his strength, it is still difficult to truly resist Marine General, let alone save Ace during the war. And the seed of the fantasy beast spirit tree has yet to find a suitable place for cultivation. With the addition of 6,000 revolutionary troops, they will definitely be a force that cannot be ignored in that war. But what do you want me to teach them? Cheng Cheng asked. Long said calmly. When we were in Loguetown, I saw you using a strange breathing method. I understand, I will teach everyone in the Revolutionary Army, but whether they can learn it or not depends on them. Cheng Cheng readily agreed, and at the same time he had to admire Long's unique vision in his heart. Breathing with total concentration is a technique used in Demon Slayer world to greatly strengthen body functions. If even 10 people in the Revolutionary Army learn it out of 10,000 people, then there will be 10 more strong men in the Revolutionary Army. For a long time, the impact on the development of the Revolutionary Army's overall strength is absolutely immeasurable. However, this kind of development was obtained by Long at the expense of the lives of 6,000 Revolutionary Army soldiers. Thinking of this, Cheng Cheng couldn't help but look at the ferocious-looking man in front of him again, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. One battle was enough to kill all the bones. At the same time, there was a very simple reason why he did not choose to reject Long. The world should need more strong people. If by chance these strong men also have justice in their hearts after becoming stronger, that would be a great blessing. I have one more request. Cheng Cheng said solemnly. I can only stay here for 7 days. I will guide them carefully. Whether they can learn it depends on themselves. In addition, they must not reveal my true identity. Long sat on the chair, closed his eyes and looked solemn. He kept tapping the table with his fingers, making dull sounds. After tapping for the 7th time, he suddenly opened his eyes and said, yes. Chapter 35 Teaching that afternoon. After giving Cheng Cheng a farewell party, the generals in the Revolutionary Army, including Kurla, sent Cheng Cheng out of the base gate together. Everyone watched Cheng Cheng leave here on somersault clouds. Early the next morning, Sabo led the generals to the seaside closest to the base. Everyone was confused, no one knew what they were doing here. Soon, a small raft appeared on the distant seaside, drifting along with the sea breeze. Standing on the small raft was a man wearing a Prajna ghost mask, with a white face and fangs, 2 horns on his head, and a huge broad sword on his back. When everyone saw this man, they only felt shudders in a wave of fear. A cold breath spread across the floor. I saw the Prajna masked man approaching the shore, stepping on the void, and falling directly to the shore. This will be the chief instructor of our Revolutionary Army from now on, Sabo introduced to everyone calmly. At this time, the other generals realized that they were waiting for this man. Pretending to be a ghost, Intelligence Control Officer Terry Kildale looked at the Prajna masked man with disdain and sneered. I really don't know what kind of virtue and ability this big man has to serve as the chief instructor of our Revolutionary Army. Even Army Commander Bello Betty was frowning at the moment and his face was a little unnatural. Only Kurla carefully looked at the Prajna masked man with a puzzled look on her face. She thought she had seen this man somewhere. This is personally invited by the leader. You should weigh it in your own minds as to how to do it, Sabo said in a deep voice without explaining too much to them. The Prajna masked man took a step forward, his voice was hoarse and low, and he said slowly, it doesn't matter, anyone who doesn't accept it can come. Then he added, it's no problem if we go together. After he finished speaking, he took off the broad sword from his back and inserted it into the ground. Very good, I just want to try your hand. Kildao's face darkened, and he pulled out the 2 swords from his waist. The swords turned black the moment they were unsheathed. The aura on the blades continued to gather, and everyone felt a strong sense of oppression. After the sword was wrapped with purple light, it slashed towards the Prajna masked man. Purple light slash. 2 purple sword lights intertwined rapidly in the air, like 2 purple dragons roaring towards the Prajna masked man, with an astonishing momentum. If you can't catch this move, stop being a general instructor and go back where you came from. Kildao snorted coldly. He really showed no mercy at all with this blow. If a vulgar person who only knows how to pretend to be a ghost becomes the chief instructor, he doesn't know how many soldiers will be killed on the battlefield in the future. Advertisement. Everyone's eyes were turned to the Prajna masked man, watching how he would respond. The masked man is none other than Cheng Cheng, who has gone and returned. He had already expected that this instructor would not go so smoothly. Under the mask, the corners of his mouth were raised. No one knew that he could smile so easily when facing such an attack. Cheng Cheng casually pulled out the Zhenhai sword. The moment the Zhenhai sword came into contact with his palm, the entire sword body turned pitch black. At the same time, he adjusted his breathing rate to a strange state. It was as if the sea behind him and the air flowing in the surrounding space were all integrated with him. He raised his Zhenhai sword and struck out with his sword. Armed color breath of water cut the sea. A huge green sword energy tore through the ground, leaving a 2-meter deep ravine on the white ground, and swept forward. There was a bang, a loud noise. The green sword energy collided with the 2 purple dragons in the air, instantly cutting off the heads of the 2 purple dragons into 2, and a bright glare erupted in the air. The purple dragon dissipated, but the power of the green sword energy remained unabated, and it struck Kildao directly. Gildeo's face was horrified, and he hurriedly turned his body into black and armed himself with domineering armor, but he was still knocked 50 meters away. When Gildeo stopped, a mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth, and he said in shock, "What a strong swordsmanship." At this time, Cheng Cheng had already disappeared. When everyone saw him, they only saw behind Gildeo a man in a prajna mask holding a broad sword and holding it on his neck. "I'm convinced." Gildeo smiled bitterly, and with a clang, the two knives fell to the ground. Army Commander Bello, Betty and Kurla both looked shocked, as if they were petrified, and then they both laughed happily at the same time. What an honor it is for the Revolutionary Army to have such a strong chief instructor. Although Sabo had already judged Cheng Cheng's strength in his mind, when he actually saw this extremely domineering sword, he still couldn't help but open his mouth. He knew that there was a big difference in strength between himself and Cheng Cheng. He smiled bitterly. Before he saw Cheng Cheng, he also thought in his heart that he had no rival among his peers. Now he finally knows that he is nothing more than a frog in a well who says the world is vast. Advertisement: the eldest brother is always the one he cannot surpass. Secretly clenching his fists, he knew that from now on, he would have one more person to surpass. At noon, the sun was scorching hot and the atmosphere was very dull. At this moment, a large number of people have gathered on the coast. There are mid-level and above generals in the base, including Chief of General Staff Sabo, Army Commander Bello Beatty, Intelligence Control Officer Terry Gildeo, and hundreds of generals within Kurla. They all stood under the scorching sun, ready to fight. In front of them, there was a person wearing a prajna mask, whose true face could not be seen clearly. But they all know that this is the chief instructor invited back by the leader. Those generals who did not come to greet him in the morning only heard that their chief instructor was extremely domineering and defeated Gildeo with a single sword. He was a master among masters. Everyone was looking intently at the chief instructor in front of them. Cheng Cheng also looked at them quietly. After everyone arrived, he glanced at everyone and said calmly, "My time is very precious, and I will only be here to guide you for 7 days. If you can learn the concentrated breathing I teach you in these 7 days, then your strength will make a qualitative leap." Everyone was suddenly in an uproar and talking about it. What kind of ability can increase your strength in a short period of time? Why do I feel unreliable? Cheng Cheng ignored their comments. Time will tell. The next thing I want to teach you is to focus on breathing. This is a breathing method mainly used to strengthen the cardiopulmonary function. It allows the blood throughout your body to absorb a large amount of oxygen, instantly greatly increasing your physical ability and bursting out with amazing strength. Of course, at the same time, the price you need to pay is that your body will be extremely weak after using it. Cheng Cheng scanned the crowd and continued, "My request to you is that not only you must learn this breathing method yourself, but after you learn it, you must teach it to everyone in the Revolutionary Army. Look at it carefully first. Remember, the most important thing is to feel the changes in my body." After Cheng Cheng finished speaking, he took a deep breath, and abundant oxygen was instantly integrated into every cell in his body. Outside his prajna mask, everyone could see with the naked eye a stream of white air spurting out of his nostrils and mouth.